Diarin is just like any other job worker who is forced to take on all types of terrible jobs. But this time, the girl might have bitten off more than she can chew. The morning calmness is interrupted by a loud scream coming from inside a huge mansion, and even the poor birds are frightened away. The ground is covered with broken glass, and Diarin's sweat could probably fill a bucket. The priestess is facing a crisis as she tries to calm the furious beast. Except, this beast is a shirtless man who is currently pressing the girl against a wall. This would be a romantic scene if the man didn't look like he is about to rip Diarin into several pieces. And not in a good way. The priestess stares at the furious man, certain that this house is her battlefield. She uses her holy power, causing the raging beast to turn into an obedient dog. He even buries his head on her shoulder. Diarin is relieved and has once again completed her daily task of taming the mad dog. She praises the man for taking less than 10 seconds to calm down, then shoves his huge body away from her in the next moment. The man immediately shivers like an abandoned puppy, staring at her with pitiful eyes. Diarin secretly curses this scheming dog before asking what he wants. The man pulls her closer, begging the girl to stay with him. Diarin is frustrated because the crazy dog only speaks when he is asked a question, and even after confessing, he still doesn't have the courage to hug her. She sighs, thinking it might take forever to get this mad dog back into society. She agrees to stay by his side, and the man immediately gives her a big hug. Meanwhile, the priestess just has a burning desire to quit her job. She looks depressed as she recalls how she ended up in this mess. It all began with a single mission that she was forced to take. Now, back to a few days ago, Diarin is summoned by the chief priestess, who has a very bright smile on her face. Our heroine smiles like a dying pig as she faces the head of the temple. In Lecleon, the temples have a very strict ranking system. The highest authorities are the 7 children of God, also called the high priests. Next are the archpriests, who oversee all the temples in each region. The chief priests are next, and they control and rule each temple. And our heroine? Well, she is just a little cog in the system, and an ordinary priestess. Diarin recalls how happy she was to meet the chief priestess when she was just a newbie. Later, after spending a year at the job, she would panic like a crazy woman when she was called for a meeting, thinking that she had done something wrong. After working for 7 years, our heroine is now as cool as a cucumber. After all, she has faced all types of shit at this job because she has no connections. Diarin already knows this annoying old priestess is about to give her another sheety task. The girl is depressed but still has to smile and ask for the chief's request. She is always stuck with the rough jobs because she has no background. At first, she had tried to protest by throwing tantrums, but she soon realized that nothing would change and was forced to accept her fate. The old priestess praises the girl for being understanding, and Diarin knows the crappy job is about to arrive. She is prepared to take on the task, but after hearing that she will be assisting a traumatized soldier, her confidence immediately shatters to pieces. She screams and rolls on the floor, refusing to take this sheety job. Well, at least she imagines herself doing that. Diarin is still standing obediently in front of the chief, who says she should be able to handle this task since she has been to the battlefield twice. She keeps insisting that the man needs God's protection, even after Diarin says she can't treat trauma. The priests are only sent to the battlefield to treat the physical and mental injuries of the soldiers so they can return to the battle. Diarin has absolutely no experience in guiding an injured soldier back into society. She immediately guesses that he must be a high-ranking noble, which makes her even more unwilling. She is afraid a loser like her with no connections might go there and die without even a grave. The chief urges Diarin to help the injured, and the girl finally admits that she is afraid of dying. But instead of comforting her, the woman says she will find eternal peace in heaven. Diarin understands that the woman truly doesn't care about her life. Since she will still be forced to take this mission, she is determined to get some benefits. Our heroine refuses to be a pushover any longer. The chief priestess sighs, causing our girl to feel smug. She threatens to run away, thinking that the woman would finally offer her some tempting rewards. Instead, some strong knights appear and immediately grab Diarin. The chief even wishes her good luck, asking her to come back alive. Our heroine falls into total despair after hearing those words and begs to quit her job. Unfortunately, it is too late and she is taken to a fancy mansion where she meets the mad beast. Diarin is in deep despair. She has only just returned from the battlefield but is already being sent into another war. The girl tries to cry in her carriage, but her eyes are just like dry deserts. She can't even shed a tear because she is already used to such shitty situations. The priestess has already received more information about her patient, and he seems to be the leader of the 8th Battalion. During the war between Lecleon and their neighboring country, Sobrin, everyone thought the latter would win. The Lecleon soldiers faced several defeats, and soon lost their courage and morale. Even their own citizens never expected them to win. But just when the war kept dragging on and everyone thought all hopes were lost, everything suddenly changed. A group of strange men appeared to assist the Lecleon soldiers. Their origins were unknown, but they had formidable strength. Some might say they even fought like supernatural beings. The men single-handedly turned the war in Lecleon's favor. They always appeared out of nowhere during the battle, and just as mysteriously disappeared once the battle was over. The Lecleon soldiers called them saviors, but to the enemy countries, those men were demons. At first, Diarin was happy with the existence of the 8th Battalion and thought they were the saviors who would finally put an end to the meaningless war. Well, That opinion changed really fast. The strange men were just like senseless war machines and started attacking the Lacleon soldiers. The knights would come running to Diarin to complain, and soon the strange men stopped being called saviors. Instead, they were now known as the Mad Dogs, which seemed quite fitting because of their formidable strength. Thanks to the Mad Dogs, the war quickly ended in victory, and the Lacleon soldiers returned home in glory, especially the second prince who led the war. Because of their crazy behavior, the Mad Dogs' existence couldn't be exposed, so the second prince ended up taking all the credits for winning the war. The 8th Battalion vanished after the battle, but Diarin still feels upset for them. Since they played such a significant role during the war, the men should have been rewarded with some land or title. Instead, they were hidden away. The king had sent a command to heal the men from their trauma and train them to become future nobles in Lacleon. Diarin sighs in despair, because even 10 Lacleon soldiers couldn't defeat a single one of these men. Yet, a weak and fragile girl like her is expected to turn him into a human. She silently curses the annoying chief, certain the greedy woman had taken the job because of the money. She probably wasn't worried because she knew her subordinates would do all the work. Diarin is moaning about her impossible task when a handsome man suddenly thanks her for accepting this tough job. Our girl had totally forgotten that someone was sitting right in front of her. The man is called Robin Tarek, the third son of House Tarek and Lacleon's army chief of staff. He was quite competent during his job, but after the war ended, let's just say he became a bit useless. Right now, his main task is to clean up after the 8th Battalion. Robin keeps thanking Diarin for taking the job, which just makes our girl sigh in despair. Still, she promises to do her best. The man hands her a kind of whistle and advises Diarin to keep it on her at all times. He calls it a safety device used in case of emergencies to control their puppies when they get too excited. Diarin is stunned by their special method. She had always wondered how they could control the Mad Dogs, but never thought the men were actually being treated like animals. The priestess tries the string around her neck, just as Robin announces that they have arrived. Diarin is a bit nervous when she sees the huge mansion that will be her new home. Tarek says the rest of the household staff all commute from their homes, so cleaning and laundry is only done once a week. There are also guards surrounding the house entrance around the clock. The priestess isn't comforted because she knows the men would be useless if she is facing a threat. Robin shows his support and says the guards can help her retrieve her dead body or also join her in death. Either way, she would have some sort of support. Diarin almost loses her soul and requests to also commute. Unfortunately, the army chief has already rushed back into his carriage and even waves her goodbye with a happy smile. Diarin is abandoned with her fellow deathmates who rush over to assist her. The girl is convinced that her life truly sucks, but her opinion quickly changes when the guards pull open the large doors. Diarin is surprised to find the hallway empty because she expected a mad dog to rush at her. Immediately, she walked in. Instead, she can't find a single living soul. The girl takes a tour around the mansion and soon has a love-struck look on her face. She has totally fallen in love with this gorgeous and luxurious mansion. Diarin recalls the room at the temple where she had spent her whole life. It looked like a mouse hole and even a bed shaped like a coffin. She cries in happiness because she thought the mad dog would also be living in a doghouse. But this doghouse is totally worth it. The girl dances around the mansion, feeling like Cinderella entering a palace. She even flies through the air, demanding to know who would block her way. Well, probably the real house owner. Diarin bursts into the mad dog's room, announcing her dazzling entrance. But instead of loud applause from a stunned audience, she sees a strange man holed up on the floor. The man reveals one scary eye, and Diarin's happy bubble immediately cracks. She has finally met the mad dog. The priestess tries to calm down because she can't show fear when dealing with a wild beast. She tries to introduce herself to the mad dog, but he immediately growls at her. Diarin glances at his strong muscles and knows she would die with just a single punch from him. Still, she approaches the man who watches her in silence. The mad dog has stopped growling, causing Diarin to believe he has calmed down. She decides to communicate with him, but the moment she opens her mouth, the beast suddenly pounces on her. The girl watches her death approaching with wild eyes as she realizes that she made a massive mistake. She really thought she could communicate with someone called a mad dog. Seconds before Diarin is sent back to her maker, she finally closes her eyes and blows the whistle. A strange symbol appears on the mad dog's neck and he suddenly falls to the ground. Diarin hears the loud thud, and when she opens her eyes, she finds the man collapsed on the floor. The girl has no idea what just happened and glances around in confusion. She crouches by the man's side to take a look, only to find out that he isn't breathing. Our heroine flies across the room, scolding herself for getting close to the man who almost killed her. She probably wishes she could fly to Mars, but after keeping a huge gap between them, the man still doesn't move. The girl tiptoes over like a sneaky thief, asking if the man is dead by any chance. She secretly thinks he is playing dead just to catch her, but remembers he is just a foolish beast. Diarin pokes his shoulder, wondering if she can quit now that the man is dead, or she will probably be blamed for his murder. Just then, the girl notices the strange choking mark around the dog's neck. It looks like the man was strangled, but she could swear the injury wasn't there earlier. Diarin realizes that the whistle must have some kind of divine power that could knock out the wild beast. She feels sorry for the man and keeps the whistle away, determined to only use it as a last resort. Our female lead studies the pitiful man who is lying on the floor and decides to make him more comfortable. She rolls him around to lie on his back, but soon discovers that his huge back muscles are stopping his head from reaching the ground. Dia grabs a pillow from the ruined room while trying to convince herself that she isn't a pushover. She can barely breathe after all that work and wonders why she is helping this man. Well, at least he is now snoring, so that means he is still alive. The priestess begins to worry when she notices the fresh scars on the man's chest. She sinks into despair because she is really a pushover who can be taken advantage of. Darren decides to go all out, and after straddling the sleeping man, she rips open his shirt. She is amazed when she sees his body, which looks just like a work of art. Our heroine feels bad when she sees all his scars and decides to heal the man's injuries. She is only doing this because she is certain the mad dog wouldn't be able to tell anyone else. You see, the girl actually has a little secret. She was born with a huge amount of divine power. Darren had kept her abilities hidden because she was young and powerless, and would only be used as a pawn if she revealed the truth. While a normal priest would need half a day to treat just one scar, Darren is able to heal a bunch of them at once. But the consequence is that the girl ends up starving. She believes the mad dog must have a lot of good food in his luxurious mansion. Darren is curious about the man, so she studies his handsome face. She has to admit, he looks just like a noble prince when he is asleep. Just then, the noble prince suddenly opens his eyes, glaring right at Darren. The girl is stunned and doesn't move away, which turns out to be her greatest mistake. The mad dog sits up with force, and his great strength sends our heroine flying away. The girl is even pushed out of the room, and as blood pours down her nose, she realizes that this might be her end. Thankfully, Darren survives, although she does end up with a swollen and injured nose. She yells at the culprit who is covering his chest and watching her with a look that screams, "Trying to protect my innocence." Darren explains that she was just trying to heal his injuries, but the man still looks devastated. The girl pulls out her nose plug, glad that the mad dog still has a little sense. But her nose still hurts a lot. Darren approaches the trembling man with her divine power, telling him to stay still so they can complete the treatment. The mad dog is stunned by the glowing light and his guarded eyes become soft. Darren watches him with a smile because her power seems to be very relaxing. She is sure her arrival must have been too noisy for the man's super senses, causing him to freak out. The girl notices that her power makes him calm and thanks God for this little blessing. She decides to ask the cute puppy some simple questions and finds out that his name is Ceres. But when she asks how he got the name, the man has no idea. Darren wants to know if he often gets aggressive, but that question is too much for our little puppy. The priestess decides to keep talking to him, but her hungry stomach suddenly interrupts with a loud growl. Ceres immediately becomes wild, causing the poor girl to nearly die from fear. She quickly explains that she is hungry, so she has to find some food first to stop her stomach from growling. Darren offers to bring the food back so they can share it, and the innocent Ceres happily agrees. The girl realizes that he can answer simple yes or no questions, so she urges him to remain seated while she goes out to get the food. Darren watches as the obedient puppy heads to the sofa and thinks that her job might actually be easier than she thought. She is still afraid the man might rip her apart at any moment, but believes he will remain gentle as long as he is calm. Darren can smell the delicious food which she has never tasted before, and she rushes over with a happy smile. The girl has no idea about the dangerous situations she is about to face because right now, in the palace, a strange woman is talking about her arrival. She plans to visit the Mad Dog's manor with her little son Sevian, and they are both excited to see the so-called savior. Meanwhile, Darren trembles in shock as she stares at Ceres, who is completely covered in blood. Our heroine freezes in shock as she watches the Mad Dog cough out blood. She immediately flies to his side, desperate to treat his injuries. Darren is about to use her divine power, but suddenly notices a funny smell. The girl takes a sniff and realizes that this isn't blood but some kind of very red juice. She feels relieved, thinking the man spilled the juice because he was nervous. Or maybe, he just choked because he ate too fast. Darren tries to explain herself because the wild beast is glaring at her again. The man looks like he is about to end her life. Ceres grabs her shoulder, and the priestess truly believes this is her end. She even clasps her hands together as she says her final request to God. Darren really wants to get her severance pay so she can build her own mansion in heaven and have a nice garden. She is about to faint from fear when Ceres suddenly mentions poison. The girl is confused until the man suddenly spits out the remaining juice. He reveals that the meals have all been poisoned. The two stare at the abandoned food, and Darren is secretly relieved that the man is immune to poison. She wonders how he found out, and Ceres says the food had a weird taste. The girl had felt bad when saw Ceres devouring their meal alone, but now she feels grateful that he started eating first because she clearly isn't immune to poison. She stares at the food in despair as her stomach rumbles, but Ceres insists that she can't eat any of it. Our poor girl hasn't eaten all day, and she still has to deal with a certain man glaring at her stomach. She either has to starve to death, be poisoned to death, or be eaten to death by a hungry mad dog. What a wonderful set of choices. Darren sighs in despair, but knows she has to remain calm. There is only one solution to their problem, so she urges the grumpy lord to trust her skills. Darren vows to make him something impressive and rushes out of the room to begin her new task. The abandoned Ceres is left alone, and he listens in shock as everyone keeps screaming around the house. A few minutes later, Darren stomps into the kitchen holding a basket of fresh produce. She grins like an evil genius because she thinks the newly picked vegetables won't have any poison. Beside her, the guard who had picked the produce looks extremely worried. After all, apart from the vegetables, there aren't any seasonings. The man has already informed Lord Robin and urges Diarin to call him if she needs anything. Our female-led panics once she is alone because she has no idea how to cook. The only experience she had was doing a little bit of housework before she joined the temple. All she knows is that she has to wash the vegetables and stir the soup. Diarin is ready to begin her great feast, but the poor ingredients are about to rot from fear. They really didn't sign up for this. Meanwhile, Sir Robin finally arrives just as the sun sets. The man races into the mansion, afraid the mad dog might have killed someone again. Or even worse, escaped. Instead, he sees Diarin warning him to lower his voice so they won't piss off the hungry and angry lord. She is about to reveal why she called him over when they both perceive a burning smell. Diarin races into the kitchen, while a confused Robin follows her into the room. The man stares at black mess, which is supposed to be a chicken, and is convinced the girl is practicing some sort of voodoo. The priestess is heartbroken, so the chief changes his tune and calls the meat cute and small. Diarin proudly says the mad dog caught it, which surprises everyone. We definitely want to know how that happened, so we'll go back to a few hours ago. Diarin spends way too long cooking her pitiful soup and is afraid the dog might have dropped dead from hunger. She peeks into the room, only to see the man holding a candlestick and leaning against the window like some sort of model. Diarin is once again stunned by his handsome and noble face and thinks he might just be able to debut as a genteel lord. She is a bit confused by the candlestick, but the next second she understands its purpose. Ceres turns around and throws the stick out the window, stabbing the innocent bird who is enjoying its day. Immediately, our heroine's image of a gentle lord crumbles into dust. Back to the present, Diarin says the lord wanted some meat, so she is remaking his dinner. Robin is glad to see them getting along and praises Diarin's progress. He is impressed with her skills and believes there will be no problem when Lady Charlotte comes to visit. Diarin is shocked and trembles in fear, while a nonchalant Robin apologizes for forgetting this news. He tells the girl that the royal family will be paying a visit in the near future, as they are very interested in the mad dog. Diarin isn't expecting this news, and she can feel her whole world collapsing. The girl can almost see her life flashing before her eyes. Now, who is Lady Charlotte? The current emperor of Lecleon had 2 empresses. His first wife died a horrible and mysterious death, so he made his mistress Penelia, the queen. However, his love for Penelia didn't last long, and the emperor was soon attracted to another woman. That is the young and beautiful Charlotte. Even though the current empress is still alive, the people call Charlotte the 3rd empress because the king cherishes the woman so much. The mistress and her son Sevian are basically the apple of the king's eyes. Diarin tries to imagine the royal couple visiting the mad dog. After just a greeting, Ceres would probably devour the 2. Our poor girl is frightened by that imagination and wonders why the royal family would come visit the mad dog when he is known to be dangerous. The girl is seriously stressed and even bites her nails like a crazy person. She will definitely be executed if anything goes wrong, and can already imagine her head being chopped off. Robin quickly stops the girl from getting a heart attack and points out that the favored mistress will definitely arrive with plenty of guards. Our girl isn't worried about them and is just trying to save her own head, so Robin promises to protect her when the time comes. The chief glances at the black paste bubbling inside the pot and says he can't defend Diarin if someone dies because of the toxic substance she just made. The man is even afraid the place might just explode. Our heroine stirs her evil potion without shame, and Robin can't believe the mad dog would eat that. The girl says it might not look good, but will definitely taste better than eating poisoned food. The chief doesn't look surprised to hear that the mad dog was poisoned and even says it happens quite often. Diarin is annoyed by his dismissive attitude, but the man thinks it isn't a big deal. He offers to send the girl some fresh ingredients every day, so she can keep making her own food. Diarin keeps stirring the black paste, and all she needs is a pointed hat to look like a real witch. She already has the cauldron and the evil potion. Robin is horrified by the sight and suddenly grabs the pot, determined to pour away this evil spawn of Satan. Diarin grabs his waist, begging him to taste the soup, but the man refuses to feed the mad dog this garbage. Even poisoned food would be better than this frozen soup. Robin even sheds tears because this soup should never be tasted by humans. Diarin cries that she hasn't had her first meal, and the man advises her to eat the raw potatoes instead. He thinks her cooked meat might be better, but just then, the dead bird suddenly rises back to life with a loud scream. Robin wonders if the girl's cooking skills can create life, and even our heroine is stunned by this scene. The chief insists on pouring the soup away and promises to send the girl a cooking book with some fresh ingredients. Diarin tries to protest, but he calls the soup an insult to all food. The 2 are still fighting when they are startled by a loud sound. The angry mad dog has arrived with a demonic gaze and asks for his food. The 2 are frightened and have no choice but to serve the lord the soup. Although right now it looks like a piece of jelly, Ceres glares at the abomination in front of him and immediately gobbles it up. Even the 2 horrible chefs are frightened by this scene. Diarin nervously asks the mad dog if he likes the taste, and the man even demands for more. The priestess rushes off to feed her new lord while Robin watches her with adoring eyes. He thinks the girl must really be a holy maiden. The chief wants to know what poison was added to the food, and Ceres obediently lists their names. Diarin appears with her evil cauldron and is surprised that the mad dog knows the different types of poisons. Robin says the 8th Battalion were trained to identify and resist toxic substances, so they can recognize all kinds of poisons. Our heroine is shocked and wonders if the men's sharp senses were also a result of training. Tarek reveals that the training was just to enhance the men's abilities. The 8th Battalion were children who were chosen because of their excellent bodies and sharp senses, and were even trained with special spells. Diarin is shocked to hear this news because in Lecleon, all divine powers are managed by the temples. Aside from the warrior priests, those powers should only be used to save people. Instead, the divine spells are being used to turn children into beastly weapons. The girl asks if the temples are involved, and Robin has a guilty look on his face. The next second, the man suddenly laughs and asks if she really wants to know. Diarin freezes and doesn't even know when the mad dog snatches away the evil cauldron. She trembles in fear and immediately refuses to know more. She calls herself an average priestess, and Robin is pleased with her response. He reveals that there are no failures among the 8th Battalion because the children that failed all disappeared as if they never existed. The chief says they don't keep records of useless individuals and advises Diarin to do her job well. The girl trembles in fright and vows never to let the man down. Evening arrives, and the scary Robin finally leaves. Diarin watches him from her window while thinking about her long day. After seeing Ceres devour her food, the two decided to taste the soup, only to discover that it was really toxic waste. The priestess immediately escaped from the scene, leaving the poor chief alone to wallow in his suffering. Now, she jumps into bed and tries to ignore her rumbling stomach. Diarin thinks about the mad dog, wondering if he is already asleep. She scolds herself for worrying too much and decides to enjoy the soft bed, which is the only good thing in this terrible mansion. The girl vows to have a nice rest, but she might have spoken too soon because the demonic warlord is standing right behind her. Diarin is planning to slack off and sleep in tomorrow when she suddenly feels an evil aura all around her. The girl turns around, only to see the furious mad dog. She feels frightened because this time the man looks really ready to end her life. Our heroine quickly pulls out the evil whistle, and the mad dog immediately flinches. He turns into a sad and abandoned puppy, causing Diarin to realize that he is really afraid of the whistle. The girl still doesn't want to torture him, so she decides to question the man first. Ceres huffs and puffs as he glares at her, and Diarin can tell he is holding back from tearing her into pieces. He finally complains that she is being too noisy, so he can't fall asleep. The man can hear her voice, footsteps, and even her breathing. Diarin wasn't expecting such a straightforward complaint, so she feels very guilty. She apologizes to the man and promises to be very quiet. Suddenly, the girl freezes in shock as she recalls that Ceres' room is miles away from hers. They are practically divided by an ocean, so how could the man hear her footsteps? The mad dog is still upset as he reveals that he can even hear her breathing. Diarin remembers Robin's words about their training and is really amazed. She knew the men were sensitive, but this is too exaggerated. The girl realizes that the Lord wouldn't be able to sleep even if she sent him back to his room. Even with his dark circles, Ceres still looks wide awake. Diarin gives up on sleeping and decides to accompany the man for a chat. That way, they would probably feel sleepy again. She asks the Lord to join her for some tea and even pulls out a chair for him. Ceres takes a seat, looking like a majestic lord. He could totally be put in a museum for having such a perfect and straight spine. The priestess realizes that the tea she brewed earlier has gone cold. She really should go down to heat it up, but our heroine can't be bothered. She warns Ceres not to be surprised and suddenly uses her magic to boil the tea. The mad dog wonders if she is a warrior priestess, but Diarin says she is not. In Lacleon, the priests are divided into 3 categories. The lowest ranks are the common priests, who apply for a position and undergo normal training. The next ranks are the natural priests who are born with divine power and are scouted into the temple. The highest ranks are the warrior priests who have unique divine abilities and are therefore sent into war. Usually, divine power would manifest as healing abilities, but sometimes it might manifest as telekinesis or firepower. A priest who shows such powers becomes a warrior priest and is sent to the front lines without any exception. Basically, they just shoot arrows or cannonballs faster than others, yet they end up gaining more popularity and get promoted quickly. Unfortunately, our heroine has no plans to have an early death and asks Ceres to keep her secret. She stares at the man who is fascinated with the teacup and knows he won't be able to tell anyone. She just wants them to bond quickly over some secrets. Diarin is still daydreaming when the mad dog suddenly pours the cup of hot tea into his mouth. The girl quickly leans over to heal the man whose face has already turned red as he opens his mouth wide and complains about the heat. She pours him another cup of tea and this time advises him to sip it slowly. Diarin was already a common priest when her divine power suddenly manifested one day, but she knew her life wouldn't get better even if she revealed her crazy powers. She compares herself with Ceres, who went through all that training and risked his life to fight the war, but the girl is soon distracted by his very steamy body. Diarin slaps those filthy thoughts out of her head and quickly lights the candle before her thoughts get even more nasty. At first, the light upsets the sensitive Ceres, but the man soon becomes calm. He says he is feeling better, which makes Diarin relieved. She is curious about the sounds he can hear until Ceres describes even the birds and mice moving outside the window. The priestess is terrified of their training because hearing such sounds would drive anyone mad. She finally understands why the mad dog was so upset. The naive girl wonders if she can block his ears and immediately reaches out with her evil claws. The warlord immediately releases his demonic aura, and Diarin quickly pulls back. She gives him a thumbs up instead, promising to help him out for a brighter future. Meanwhile, Ceres is probably thinking that the girl must be crazy. Diren asks about the man's hobbies, but the mad dog spends all his time training, eating, and sleeping. Soon, morning arrives, and we see a very miserable Diren. She had spent the night talking with Ceres and sent him back to bed with a boost of her divine power. The man must have slept well, but our poor priestess couldn't sleep at all. She was wide awake all night, feeling guilty because Ceres could hear every breath she took. Diren almost pulls out all her hair, because her problems keep increasing. She was worried about being poisoned to death, but now she could also be torn to pieces just for breathing too loudly. The girl immediately covers her mouth, afraid her little tantrum would upset the Lord and make him come running. She tiptoes out of bed, ready to prepare some breakfast. But while she is trying to be quiet, a loud voice suddenly echoes from outside. Diren looks through the window and sees two noisy farmers who are here to deliver the ingredients. They keep talking with loud voices, and Diren almost yells at them to be quiet. Suddenly, she looks terrified as she sees the mad dog crouching on a tree right above the men. The farmers are still gossiping when they suddenly hear the growls of a wild animal. But it is too late as Ceres immediately attacks. The unfortunate farmers who arrived to deliver the ingredients to the mad dog's mansion have totally forgotten about Robin's instruction. They forget to walk quietly and even run around the huge mansion while screaming at the top of their voices. They have no idea that they might die if they fail to follow the chief's instruction. Robin is already used to cleaning up after the mad dog, so he will just get rid of the men's dead bodies. The ignorant farmers are about to face their unfortunate fate as a dark shadow looms over them. Just then, the desperate Diren, who wants to stop the men from dying, suddenly jumps out of the window. The priestess only realizes her mistake while she flies through the air and wonders why she didn't blow the whistle from her room. Thankfully, before she falls to her death, Ceres rushes over and catches her. The couple crash to the ground and end up scattering the basket of food. The farmers are amazed by the girl's act of jumping out of the window. Diren turns red from anger as she screams at the culprit. She scolds them for forgetting their employer's instructions and urges the men to escape immediately. The farmers refuse to leave because they were ordered to deliver the food directly to the doorsteps. Diren burns with fury, telling them to leave if they want to save their lives. The men glance at Ceres and notice that the man is about to rip them apart. The workers shiver in terror and speed away even faster than lightning. The couple are left alone, and Diren is relieved that she saved those men's lives. She recalls how the mad dog saved her and thinks he might have regained his sanity. Diren looks over to thank him, only to see the man's murderous face. He definitely hasn't regained his sanity and probably only saved her out of instinct. The girl is sure Ceres must be a demon from hell. The mad dog tries to chase after the men, causing Diren to wrap around him like a snake. She urges the man to let them go while wondering if she should use her whistle. Just then, Diren hears a loud thumping sound, which turns out to be Ceres' racing heart. She glances at the furious warlord, finally realizing that the man must be feeling anxious. The priestess lets him go, while gently explaining that the men only came to deliver some food. She promises Ceres that they aren't in danger, and the man immediately calms down. Our heroine realizes that the mad dog is just a man with heightened senses who has spent his whole life fighting on the battlefield. He even has to deal with poisoned food, so he must see all foreign objects as threats. The girl feels sorry for the poor man and decides to treat him like a human being. That way he might learn how to live beyond the battlefield. Diren praises the mad dog for holding back, while leading him into the mansion to finish treating his scars. Just then, we see the missing guards who are still yawning and stretching from sleep. The furious priestess smiles as she scolds them for slacking off, and the guards eventually apologize. The couple return to the room, and Diren tells Ceres to get into bed. The man keeps staring at her with a blank look, so the girl has to force him into the bed. The priestess plans to treat the scars on Ceres' back, so she turns him over. Unfortunately, the poor man's face is buried in the pillows, so he might first die from lack of oxygen before the healing even begins. Diren realizes her mistake, but even after adjusting his head, the man says he is still uncomfortable. The mad dog really thinks the cold floor will feel better. Our heroine realizes he isn't used to a soft bed, and says he will get more comfortable once he gets used to it. She reminds the man that the war is over, so he doesn't have to feel anxious anymore. Ceres responds with a nod, while the girl thinks of ways to make him speak more often. She is still confused by the king's instructions, because she has no idea what it means to be a genteel lord. Diren is disgusted as she thinks of all the lords she has met because they are all mean scumbags. She doesn't want her sweet Ceres to become like them and vows to turn him into a kind-hearted gentleman that all the girls would chase. The priestess decides to stop worrying about the future, and while she heals Ceres' back, the man soon falls asleep. The girl leaves him there to get used to the bed and sneaks off to the kitchen. Now that the lord is asleep, our heroine puts on her battle armor. She is prepared to begin the war of cooking for that handsome hunk of muscle. Diren is ready to prepare some food for the handsome hunk, but doesn't expect Ceres to wake up even before she starts. The man joins her in the kitchen, and Diren plans to use him as a poison detection machine. She feels bad for using him as a dog, but after seeing his sparkling gaze after his brief nap, the girl decides that she also has to fight for her survival. She hands the ingredients over to Ceres with a smile, and after a brief sniff, the man announces that everything is safe. Diarin has no idea what to cook and takes a glance through the cookbook. The next moment, she shuts it closed with a look of total despair. Diarin could swear that she learned how to read and can even write up an explanation letter, but after taking a glance at the cookbook, she can't understand a single word. The priestess decides that cooking is an alien culture and hands the book over to Ceres. The warlord stares at the book with a serious face, and our happy heroine assumes that he can read. But in the next second, the dogman sniffs the book and happily says there is no poison. Diarin is disappointed but still urges the lord to check out the content. As a result, we see Ceres turning the book upside down, while bending at 45 degrees. Our female lead turns blue in frustration as she realizes that the man was never taught how to read. Ceres says it wasn't needed in battle, which makes the girl upset. She really wants to scold the trashy person who raised those children and ruined their lives. Diarin makes up her mind to give Ceres some reading lessons, but the man looks totally confused. He doesn't say a word, but Diarin can tell he isn't upset. She guesses that the lord is used to simple questions, so he doesn't even know what he likes. The priestess is filled with despair because now she has to teach the man about preferences, while also training him to read and sleep on a bed. Her job keeps getting worse. The girl decides to skip the lessons first because Ceres won't become a lord if he starves to death. She reads the instructions but has no idea how to chop the vegetables. Ceres says he can, and the girl guesses that he got his experience from chopping people up. She slides the vegetables over to the lord, asking him to give it a try. Ceres grabs the shining knife and is suddenly filled with a murderous aura. Our heroine panics because she has just given a sharp weapon to a man who used to be a serial killer. She immediately flies backward to keep her distance and is even prepared to run away. Diarin has forgotten about the vegetables because her life comes first. The poor ingredients are abandoned and have to face the evil Ceres alone. The lord slices the vegetables in midair, and with his skills, he could totally audition as a swordmaster. Meanwhile, Diarin watches him in awe while thinking that she might have entered another century. The warlord has completely turned the vegetables into liquid form, and he might even be better than a blender. Diarin is stunned speechless and wonders where the man learned his chopping skills. The mad dog says he practiced on his enemies' bodies, and the girl immediately swallows some air. She stares at the deceased vegetables, saying a quick prayer for their sad death. The couple work together to prepare the meal, and our heroine prays that she survives the day. Our chefs are done cooking and are watching their creation with proud faces. Diarin is already drooling because she hasn't tasted something delicious in days. She secretly glances at Ceres because, thanks to him, the soup didn't end up as another black mess. The girl wants to know if cooking was fun, but Ceres doesn't even understand what that means. Diarin has no idea how to explain and simply asks the man if he would want to cook again. Ceres is still confused, so she says he doesn't have to force himself to do it again. The girl suggests that she continues cooking, and the man immediately panics. He says he wants to keep making their meals, and Diarin can almost hear her heart breaking. Days pass, and Ceres' social skills continue to get better. But there is still one problem the couple can never resolve. The two are sitting on the bed as Diarin questions the man about his likes. Ceres seems to like vegetables, but still finds the bed uncomfortable. Our female lead suddenly looks serious and wants to know if the mad dog also likes her. The mad dog doesn't think twice as he reveals his dislike for Diarin, and the girl secretly scolds him for being rude. She is very upset by his speedy answer, because even a dog would show love for the master that feeds it. She thinks Ceres is just an ungrateful human being. Diarin wants to know why he dislikes her, and the man says she is too noisy. Our heroine is filled with guilt and immediately tapes her mouth shut. She can't argue with Ceres because the man had almost ended her life several times while she slept. Our heroine is a very messy sleeper and always grinds her teeth or snores in her sleep. The girl feels upset because she really can't control herself. She always has bad sleeping habits after a long and tiring day. Diarin boasts that her sleeping habits have improved, but the man still calls her noisy. The girl feels defeated because Ceres might be a fast learner, but they still haven't found a way to stop his heightened senses. The man has learned all the etiquettes needed to make a debut, but he still can't tolerate loud noises. He can barely stand the sounds Diarin makes alone in the quiet manner, so he would definitely panic if he attends a ball. The priestess tries to convince the man that her breathing isn't a threat, but Ceres still calls her noisy. She insists that she needs to breathe, but the man gives her a cold gaze as if urging her to just die. Diarin still wants to know what the man likes, but soon discovers that he hates all living things. She is almost consumed by despair and finally agrees to stop breathing. The girl glares at Ceres and secretly vows to make him like her one day. The mad dog is enjoying the silence when he suddenly hears a strange sound. He immediately glances at the source, but only sees a swaying tree. The man grabs the strange object, while Diarin explains that it is just a leaf. She even mocks the warlord, wondering if he is going to fight an ordinary object. Ceres notices Diarin's stunning face and is amazed by her beauty. The lord can even feel his stony heart racing. He tries to calm down by practicing the girl's breathing exercise, and our heroine praises him for learning quickly. The mad dog still thinks the woman is noisy, whether she is asleep or awake, but he feels peaceful when he is by her side. The man recalls his rough days on the battlefield where he could only get some peace through some sleeping drugs. He decides not to get rid of these strange noises because they are not a threat to his life. The mad dog listens to the sound of the swaying leaves and the noises of the cute birds before deciding that he likes these noises. Everything makes him feel peaceful. Diarin is regretting her foolish decision. After her stupid vow not to make any noises, she has been stuck in one spot for several hours and her poor legs have already become numb. The girl had been acting like a maid to Ceres, so he could adapt to the noble lifestyle and get used to the respect. But the pushover finally realizes that she shouldn't be acting as a maid. Even in the social hierarchy, she is still a baron's daughter. The girl refuses to be submissive to a man who isn't a noble and immediately relaxes her posture. She glares at Ceres, saying she has no reason to treat him with any respect. The dumb man immediately agrees, and the girl's raging volcano is immediately quenched. She keeps asking if the man doesn't mind, but he stares at her with a disdainful look. Diren can tell that he despises her, so she decides to act casual with him. The mad dog agrees, and then the two spend the next minute staring at each other in silence. The priestess, who has no idea what to say, decides to change the way she addresses the man. She tries to think of a good title, but neither master or young master seem to fit. Diren decides to drop the title and happily calls Ceres by his name. Suddenly, the man looks very upset and even reveals his murderous aura. The priestess almost loses her mind as she wonders why the man agreed in the first place. The next day, the guards deliver the ingredients to Diren, and the girl thanks them with a bright smile. The men think Ceres is a young lord with some mental issues and feel sorry for Diren, who has to care for him alone. They are almost blinded by the girl's holy light as she says she finds joy in helping the suffering souls. The guards stare at her with sparkling eyes and ask for a blessing, which is basically just a simple greeting with a touch of divine power. The mark has no real purpose and is only used by people to show off their divine influence. The citizens are obsessed with this mark, and even disturb the overworked priests just to have a touch of divine power. Diren is already used to such situations and already knows what to do. Just when we think the girl would act like a saint, she asks the men to pay 20 silver for a simple blessing. The men clearly don't expect it to be a paid service, so they turn into frozen ice blocks. Diren isn't ashamed and even plans to continue her deceptions. Religion is about faith, so she just has to convince the men to trust her. The priestess tells the guards that their money will help more people around the world. She insists that the 20 silvers is God's will, and the men are soon convinced. Diren secretly calls them idiots, because the priests have always used their sly words to earn more money. She urges the men to receive God's will, and they immediately fall to their knees. Our heroine seals the deal by saying she would give them a little discount. She asks them to pay 10 silvers, and the guards quickly hand over their money bags. The priestess gives them her blessings, and the men immediately feel their body becoming lighter. Diren is proud because she doesn't use fake divine power like some other priests. She heads back inside while the men keep thanking her with bright faces. Our heroine shuts the door, thinking that she deserves some reward. After all, she is risking her life to work here and almost died yesterday over a very simple issue. Diren becomes teary as she recalls what happened after she spoke casually to Ceres. The girl calls the mad dog's name, causing the man to scowl like an angry dog. She wonders if he is upset, but the man doesn't seem to have a problem. He even asks Diren to keep repeating his name. The priestess notices that he isn't angry and guesses that he feels strange. This must be the first time that someone is calling his name because no one would want to call the members of the 8th Battalion by their first name. The mad dog suddenly says the bed is uncomfortable and moves over to the ground. He rests his huge head on the girl's delicate lap while asking her to keep repeating his name. Diren starts to laugh because the man looks like a little puppy playing with a toy for the first time. The girl covers her mouth in fright as she realizes that she just called Ceres a dog. She is terrified that the man might attack her, but instead, he leans against her lap again. Ceres looks like a cute puppy as he asks Diren to repeat her actions. The girl is dazed by his beauty and calls his name, but the man suddenly pokes her cheeks. He wants Diren to laugh again, so our heroine gives a nervous laugh. The man is upset, so she explains that she can't laugh alone. She says Ceres must also learn how to laugh so he can fit into society. The warlord would rather head into the army camp alone to kill their commander than try to laugh. He looks very bothered, and the girl guesses that he hasn't laughed before. She tries to cheer the man up, and the two share a silly moment. Diren is done recalling the past and now plans to teach Ceres how to smile. She feels sad whenever she thinks about the man's sad life and is afraid he might not blend with the normal people. The girl decides to focus on her job and stop worrying about the mad dog's future. She steps into the man's room with a smile, ready to practice some laughing skills. Instead, she feels herself flying through the air as Ceres rushes outside. He says there is someone downstairs and suddenly jumps off the terrace. Our heroine screams at him to stop, but it is too late as they crash into Robin. The chief leans against the floor, looking like a beautiful white lotus. Diren is shocked by his new settings, but the man says he has to do something to catch their attention. He glances at the furious Ceres, who is holding Diren like a handbag, and wonders why the man is walking around with his bare feet. The mad dog tries to attack the chief, while Diren tries her best to calm him down. The girl is already used to such situations and was only a little surprised when he suddenly grabbed her. Diren urges the mad dog to do his breathing exercises, while Robin watches them with sparkling eyes. He finds their interaction touching, but the girl scolds him for coming over without a single noise. Robin protests his innocence, saying Ceres must have noticed his arrival as soon as he stepped through the gates. The mad dog soon becomes calm, and the chief praises Diren for her amazing job. The priestess cries in happiness because someone has finally noticed her hard work. She says she poured her whole soul into her job, and the chief praises her spirit. The girl glares at him as she pats her chest, while declaring that she is irreplaceable. Robin finally understands her hint and promises to reward her properly. Diren immediately pretends to be innocent, claiming that she is just doing God's will. She wonders why Robin rushed over so early, and the man hands her a book with a happy smile. Diren glances at the cover, but it says something about welcoming the imperial family. The girl stares at the book in horror, while feeling its evil energy. The chief tells her not to worry and even asks the girl to celebrate. Tomorrow, Lady Charlotte will be arriving with her only son, Sevian. Diren immediately protests, but Robin says he can't change the imperial family's schedule. The poor girl has a heart attack and collapses to the floor in pain. The chief urges her not to worry while the ignorant Ceres watches them in confusion. Our heroine returns to the mansion, advising Ceres not to upset the royal family so he won't lose his precious life. The man says his life is always at risk, and the girl wonders what perverted training the children were forced to take. She reminds the man that he only has one life, so he should try his best to cherish it. Ceres is silent, and our heroine is sure he can't understand a single word. Still, it would be better to tell him, so he would remember her advice during the important moments. Ceres agrees with a nod, causing our heroine to feel proud. She had taught the man to always nod if he doesn't understand a single word. The girl decides to postpone their laughing lessons because they have another important mission. Just when we think the two are about to become spies, we see the couple dressed in cleaning clothes. Their important task is to clean the entire mansion. Diren is afraid the royal family might cut their budget after seeing the messy house. She orders Ceres to clean the room upstairs while she focuses on the hallways. Robin had arranged some staff to clean the house, but after her first day, Diren learned that the mad dog would attack the woman whenever she tried to clean. The two aren't bothered about the messy house, but she is afraid the nobles have only seen a shiny hallway. Our heroine is enjoying the peaceful task of sweeping while feeling proud about Ceres' progress. Suddenly, the girl freezes in shock and she realizes that the mad dog might have no experience in cleaning. She recalls the damaged rooms when she first arrived at the mansion and immediately rushes off to find Ceres. Our heroine is afraid the man might try to wipe the paint off the paintings. The girl is still panicking when she suddenly notices the sparkling rooms. She even has to shield her eyes from their brightness. Diren glances at the culprit who is obediently cleaning under the rug. She quickly stops him, advising him to only clean the visible areas. He needs to kill the enemy forces, using only the fewest weapons. Somehow, the two have turned cleaning into a serious battle and plan to exterminate all the evil bacteria. Rest in peace, little viruses. Finally, the next day arrives and the couple welcome the royal carriage. Diren's gorgeous face is covered with band-aids and she looks very battered. To understand the priestess' suffering, we'll have to go back to a few minutes after their cleaning exercise. The mansion is sparkling thanks to Ceres, and our heroine is almost blinded by its brightness. Instead of becoming a noble lord, the mad dog can just open a cleaning service. Unfortunately, the girl has no time to admire his hard work because they have to move to their next mission. Diren tosses off her apron and immediately changes into a tutor's dress. It is time to teach Ceres some etiquette so they might survive. Robin had given Diren the latest textbook, but the girl decides to use her experience from 5 years ago. After all, the rules shouldn't have changed too much. Because the temple would also receive some nobles or royal family, the priests all had to undergo extensive etiquette training. Our heroine also happens to be the best in her class. Well, she actually worked hard so she could get the money bonus, but still. The girl asks Ceres to copy her moments as she teaches him how to greet the royals. Diren looks extremely graceful, but she is simply no match for Ceres. The man glows with a golden light as he performs the greeting, and our poor girl is nearly blinded. The man is covered with a golden aura that only appears after serving the royals for a full decade. The priestess nearly goes mad as she sits in a corner while biting her clothes, wondering why life is so unfair. She hasn't even mastered this skill. The mad dog calmly says it is just basic body movements, and the girl rips out her cloth from jealousy. Thanks to Ceres' fast learning and cleaning skills, the preparations went very smoothly. But there was just one thing they couldn't control. A few minutes before the nobles arrive, Diren has to grab the mad dog to stop him from chasing the little sounds. The girl looks extremely battered, but the real culprit is still as handsome as ever. Diren explains that most of the sounds are made by birds and wonders why the man's sharp senses haven't faded a bit. They had done a little practice yesterday, but Ceres became more sensitive immediately. He stepped out of the mansion. He turned into a crazy dog, flinching at the slightest sounds and attacking everything that moves. The priestess had spent the whole day chasing after him in tears and begging him to stop. Eventually, she had fallen face first into the ground, but the man still didn't spare her. As if stepping on her wasn't enough, he even picked her up a little handbag. And so, that is the story behind our heroine's battered fave. Of course, Diren could heal herself, but she has to make it obvious that she is trying her best. The girl decides to abandon all elegance and shows off her pitiful state. That way, the nobles would see her hard work and might even increase her pay. What a little money grubber. The royal carriage finally arrives, and though Diren might not know the purpose of Sevian's visit, she is sure that Charlotte is here for political reasons. If she finds Ceres useful, the lady might show them some support. Our female lead has already measured the distance the mad dog can handle, so she tells him to stay behind and greet the nobles from afar. The girl heads over as the nobles step out, ready to greet her future source of money. But when she sees Charlotte's face, our heroine almost drops to her knees in awe. Forget about money, just staring at the woman's face is already an honor. The two perform their greetings. Then Darren introduces herself and Ceres. Lady Charlotte is stunned to see the girl's battered face, while Robin wonders what the hell happened. Darren secretly smiles because the fishes have taken her bait. She pretends to be pitiful, saying she just faced some suffering while doing God's work, but it won't stop her from fulfilling God's will. Charlotte is amazed and feels sorry for the suffering priestess. She asks her son, who says he also feels the same way. He praises Darren for doing a good job, causing the girl to almost faint from his cuteness. The mother and son look more like siblings because of Charlotte's young face. The boy resembles his mother completely, except for his sparkling eyes. At first glance, his blonde hair and green eyes are just like his mother's. But under the sun, they reflect 5 shades of light. Those eyes are known as jewel eyes and are the hallmark of the Lecleon imperial family. Sevian wonders why Ceres is standing so far away, and the priestess explains that his sensitive ears might burst if he gets too close. The young boy is disappointed, but she says he will get another chance to greet Ceres. Darren isn't really worried about the man's ears, but is more afraid for the royals' lives. She offers to show them around Ceres' home, and the young Sevian is immediately excited. Our heroine leads the way, feeling relieved that everything is going smoothly, but the girl might have celebrated too soon. Darren is still smiling proudly when an arrow suddenly flies by her cheek, slicing her face open. The weapon pierces the carriage right about the prince's head. The whole place is thrown into chaos as the royals surround the nobles. They notice an assassin inside the mansion and are ready to chase after him. Robin panics, urging them to stop screaming because they might startle the mad dog. He wants Darren to blow the whistle, but when he glances at her, the girl is already running away. Except, Darren isn't escaping to save her life, but is trying to stop the mad dog from chasing the assassin. Our female lead scolds herself for making a mistake. She was worried that the assassin might attack Ceres and assumed the noble family would be safe with their multiple guards. The girl chases the mad dog into the forest, but soon loses sight of the man. She is still panicking when a guard suddenly appears and asks her to leave immediately. The priestess yells at the man, scolding him for remaining behind. The guard looks confused, so she explains that the soldiers must stay far away from the 8th Battalion if they suddenly lose their senses. The soldiers are supposed to stay with the noble family and escort them to their safety. Darren wouldn't be so terrified if Ceres could stop after catching the assassin. The girl is worried because, after killing the intruder, the smell of blood would make the mad dog more excited. Imagine what would happen if a member of the 8th Battalion returned to his combat mode. The man would probably go crazy and start running around like a total maniac. He won't even be able to differentiate between his friends or foes. Darren is afraid he might attack the royal family or their guards, which will just seal their miserable ending. She asks the soldier to leave, but it is too late as they hear a sharp scream coming from the forest. There is the sound of struggling before a masked body drops in front of them. Our heroine looks terrified while the soldiers all prepare for battle. They can already hear the mad dog's growls, so Darren clutches her necklace. The next moment, she drops the weapon and turns around to face Robin, who has just arrived. He begs Darren to blow the whistle, but instead, the girl decides to screw everything and runs straight towards the mad dog. Our female lead hugs Ceres and uses the chance to wrap herself around his waist. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop the mad dog who keeps running towards the soldiers. The men are all worried for Darren, and Robin even begs her to blow the whistle. That is the only way the girl can save her life. Our heroine knows she might end up dying, but she chooses to use their special method and asks Ceres to do his breathing exercise. The girl even caresses his head, and the strange feeling makes the mad dog stop. Darren is happy and urges him to calm down before they get killed. The mad dog says he isn't afraid of dying, so he immediately continues chasing the soldiers. The priestess yells at him to stop and even slaps his shoulders a few times. Unfortunately, her punches are too weak and the crazy lord can't even feel the pain. Ceres is lost in bloodlust and thinks he needs to kill so everything would be over. The man has no idea who he would attack, but knows he has to eliminate everyone because the enemies are dangerous. He has to rip them apart before he can find his peace. Just then, the mad dog hears a voice begging him to calm down, and the man finally stops. He can still feel the enemies surrounding him, but this time, he also hears a voice desperately calling his name. The girl pulls back to check that he is calm, and Ceres can hear her racing heart. Darren thinks the sound is too loud, but just as she is about to let him go, the man suddenly hugs her tightly. He presses his huge head against the girl's chest, desperate to hear the sound again. Darren is faced with another problem when she returns to the noble's side. The soldiers all point their swords towards her, and the girl knows they are in trouble. Just when she thinks they will spend hours explaining and apologizing, Lady Charlotte smiles after seeing Darren covered in blood. She thinks the girl's job is way tougher than she imagined. Our heroine immediately bows and apologizes for frightening the lady. Except, the queen doesn't look bothered and even gives the girl a bright smile. Once again, Darren is nearly blinded by the woman's golden aura. She immediately pretends to be a saint, saying she was just following God's calling. The girl really plans to present herself as a devoted priestess dedicated to serving God. The poor queen is deceived by her act and offers to support Darren in her divine mission. Our female lead is happy to gain the queen's support, but she is upset that things have gone off track. The poor girl is about to pass out from exhaustion and can't even think about what she wants. Dairin is worried that little Sevian might be traumatized, only to hear the boy praising Ceres for being cool. He is amazed by the mad dog's strength and hopes to have a proper conversation with him one day. Dairin can't understand the child's weird taste, but promises to make his dream come true. Charlotte reveals that everyone around her always doubted the priestess' skills. But after seeing Ceres' progress, the lady is feeling very excited. She also wants to have a chat with the mad dog, and Dairin promises to make that happen. Charlotte holds out her hand to Dairin, asking for a handshake, and our heroine's mind immediately goes blank. She finally reacts a few years later and quickly wipes off the blood, before holding the queen's hand. Dairin thinks the woman is very brave, even though she hasn't been to the battlefield. The queen didn't even panic when she saw the two covered in blood and bits of flesh. Suddenly, the girl's eyes widen in shock because she can feel a strong amount of divine power coming from the queen. Charlotte moves closer to whisper to the priestess, urging her to keep up the excellent job. The queen is ready to leave, but Dairin is still staring at her in amazement. In Lecleon, divine power is a mysterious force that can never be measured. Only a few possess it, and even fewer can fully manifest their power. Dairin knows some people might not notice their divine ability throughout their whole lives, but the queen's power is just too strong to ignore. The girl stares at Charlotte, wondering if it's a good thing for the king's lover to possess divine power. Just then, the lady glances at her, and our timid heroine decides that it is none of her business. She will just leave this important matter for her superiors. Dairin bows as the royal family leaves while thinking she might have stumbled upon a top secret. The king's lover possesses divine power and is interested in the 8th Battalion. The priestess glances at the culprit, who has been very quiet and calm. She notices his blank stare and is afraid he passed out while standing. Dairin didn't want to send the man back to his room, and, afraid he might cause more trouble, she overdosed him with her divine power. As a result, the two stand under the blazing sun for a few hours. Our heroine finally returns to the mansion, dragging with her a dazed Ceres. She takes him to his room and even shoves him into a chair, but the man shows no reaction. Dairin leaves him alone, relieved to finally have some private time. But just then, a harsh voice demands that they need to talk. Lord Robin doesn't look pleased as he questions the girl for not using the whistle. He points out that everyone in the mansion could have died today because of her mistake. Dairin feels no remorse and even steps closer. She reminds the Lord that they have to treat Ceres like a human if they want him to become one. The girl was confident that she could handle the mad dog and stop him from causing trouble. Robin is convinced by her words because everything worked out perfectly. He immediately becomes upset when he thinks about the mountain of jobs waiting for him. He has to investigate this incident and might probably die from overworking. Robin promises to visit as he steps out of the room. He feels guilty because even though he asked Dairin to make Ceres human, he never treated the mad dog like a real person. The chief wonders if they are supposed to turn Ceres into a real nobleman or just make him into a fake pretender. He still doesn't understand the king's true intentions. Dia staggers into Ceres' room, feeling disgusted with her dirty body. The mad dog is finally awake, and when she asks, he says he is okay. Our heroine is irritated because he also looks dirty and tells the man he isn't at the battlefield. She grabs Ceres' shoulder, saying they have a new mission. The man immediately looks serious, but his new task is just to wash up. The mad dog looks like an abandoned child as he huddles inside the bathtub. Our heroine tells him to wash up and advises him to take off his clothes. She is afraid the man might just bathe in his suit. The girl happily sings a song as she leaves, promising to see Ceres after their bath. The mad dog watches the girl in confusion, wondering why she looks so happy. He steps out of the bathtub to take off his clothes and suddenly notices a strange-looking object. Of course, it is just a bar of soap, and the naive man decides to have a touch. Ceres is unused to the soft feeling and immediately flinches in fear. He thinks everything in this mansion seems too delicate, as if they would crumble with just the slightest pressure. The warlord still thinks that having good food or proper hygiene is unnecessary, and even thinks it is useless to have a proper rest. The man recalls Dairin asking about his preferences and decides to find out what he likes. Turns out, our male lead hates the bathtub but likes the soft-looking soap. Ceres also hates the tap because the sound of the water is annoying. Every noise irritates the mad dog, and he wishes he could get rid of them. The man rinses his hot body with some water while trying to think of a sound he likes. The warlord recalls the sound of Dairin's racing heart and decides that he likes that sound. He rubs off his still dirty body with a towel before deciding that he needs to hear the sound again. The mad dog rushes out of the bathroom, desperate to hear his favorite sound. Meanwhile, Dairin has no idea that her chastity and poor eyes are going to be in serious danger. The girl enjoys her warm bath because she deserves this luxury after her tough job. Our heroine thinks about the rest of the 8th Battalion, wondering if they are also being trained by a priest. She is afraid the other groups might all be having a difficult time. The girl decides to stop worrying about others and focus on her lovely bath. She is about to splash some cold water on her face when Ceres suddenly barges into the bathroom. Dairin stares at the intruder, who is completely nude and still dripping from his bath. The girl remembers that she is also nude, and her screams almost tear down the entire mansion. Ceres is expecting a warm welcome, but instead a basin is thrown at his face. The man could have dodged the weapon, but he has enough sense to remain still. Dairin orders him to close his eyes, while she stumbles around trying to find a towel. The poor girl's heart is about to fly out of her chest, and the sound makes Ceres' ears bleed. Our heroine finally realizes that she just attacked the mad dog and immediately feels terrified. While she is panicking, the evil culprit suddenly approaches with his eyes closed. Diren quickly jumps into the bathtub and questions the man. She is still trying to protect her innocence when the mad dog suddenly says she is too far. He grabs her shoulders, saying he likes to hear her heartbeat from a close distance. Dia is stunned by the mad dog's confession. For the first time, Ceres just admitted that he likes something without her having to ask. The girl is touched by this change, and would definitely give the man a treat if he was a puppy. Unfortunately, Ceres is a human and a very naked one at that. Diren immediately shoves the man away, warning him to close his eyes. The obedient Ceres complies, and the annoyed priestess orders him to get out. The mad dog leaves, showing off his very firm butt. Our heroine is left alone, and she steps out of the tub, thinking that her luxury bath has been ruined. Dia is willing to let the mad dog listen to her heartbeat as long as it makes him calm. A few moments later, the girl is all dressed up and staring at Ceres, who is still naked. The priestess glares straight ahead, trying to prevent her eyes from looking downwards. Still, she fails, and her disobedient eyes get another look at Ceres' third leg. Dia takes a few more glances because the mad dog's body is really amazing. She had seen a lot of men's bodies during her time on the battlefield, but Ceres is still the best. The man would definitely be popular when he becomes a noble lord. TNS girl is still admiring the view when she notices something shocking. Sarah says he is done bathing, but our heroine can still see several places covered in dirt. There is even a load of dirt under his fingernails. She thinks the man only splashed himself with water, and the mad dog says that is his bathing routine. Dia is about to go mad, wondering why the 8th Battalion commander never taught his men how to bathe. He must have thought the men would die during their missions, so teaching them to bathe was unnecessary. Our heroine screams in agony because she is the one who has to clean up this mess. She finds a short towel and orders Ceres to wrap it around his waist. Yet, the girl can still see that long banana and firm apple in her mind. Diren staggers, praying to God to erase this embarrassing memory. The culprit is unaware of his crimes and even asks the girl why her heart is racing so fast. She must definitely be sick. The two finally arrive at Ceres' bathroom, and Dia notices that the tub has barely been used. She fills the tub while teaching Ceres how to turn on the taps for cold or hot water. Dia guides the mad dog into the bathtub, but the man immediately looks upset. He says he doesn't like the bath, and the girl is afraid the water might be too hot or cold. Ceres explains that it dulls his senses, so he won't be ready for attacks because his reaction is slower. Dia realizes that the man doesn't really dislike the bathtub, and, just like the bed, he is unused to such comfort. She tells Ceres that his senses need to be dulled, but the stubborn man refuses to relax. The girl guesses that he was probably on edge during his time on the battlefield and is eager to see Ceres lose all his military training. Our heroine begins her bathing lesson by teaching Ceres how to wash his hair. She advises the mad dog to keep his eyes closed, but he looks very uncomfortable. The priestess says he can keep them open, but his eyes soon turn red from the painful soap. Diren is afraid the man's eyes might fall off and quickly rinses out his soapy hair. Ceres immediately sparkles like the sun, almost blinding Dia with his stunning beauty. The girl changes his position to wash his hair, and the mad dog soon becomes drowsy. Suddenly, his eyes widen in shock as he feels the girl rubbing his face. Dia teaches Ceres how to wash his nails and clean his body with soap. She thought it would be hard to treat the mad dog like a human, but is impressed by the man's steady progress. The girl decides to celebrate this little progress with some fruits and immediately imagines the naughty banana and apple again. Dia glares at the culprit, warning him to cover himself with a robe this time. An hour later, the man is done with his bath, but our heroine has another problem. The naughty Ceres insists on changing rooms. Diren has no problem with the mad dog changing rooms, but the man has just picked a room covered in pink. The girl is surprised because Ceres always chooses a white room to avoid overstimulation. She watches him with suspicious eyes, thinking the man must have gone crazy after years of simplicity. Diren asks Ceres again, but this time the man doesn't sound too confident. Since he plans on using this spot, she points out that it is right next to her room. She says it might be too noisy, but Ceres insists that it is fine. The girl recalls the times her terrible sleeping habits had disturbed the mad dog, and instantly thinks aloud that he wouldn't be okay. She seems to have forgotten that the man can hear her. Diren wonders if there are any better rooms out there. Ceres had spent the remaining time after his bath searching for another room. They had seen all sorts of fancy rooms and had even stumbled on some stinky rooms that looked like torture chambers. Even worse, Ceres even wanted them. Dia says they have searched enough for today and suggests that they go looking tomorrow. Unfortunately, the mad dog would rather sleep on the roof than repeat that horrible process. The man heads to his pink bed, asking Diren to go to sleep. The girl gives him another traumatized look before she heads off to bed. Hours pass, and Ceres is still lying awake in bed. Well, who would fall asleep when the girl next door is snoring even louder than a saw? The mad dog can hear her heartbeat and slow breaths, and even though it is noisy, he doesn't really mind. In fact, the man even uses them as a lullaby and soon falls asleep. The next morning, Dia is filled with joy because her student has just taken his first official bath. As always, the man looks stunning, but there is just one problem. Our lazy heroine had used her divine power to dry him off yesterday, so the man doesn't know how to dry himself. His hair and clothes are all soaked, so their new mission for today is to give him some drying lessons. Dia sniffs the man's chest, enjoying his sweet and refreshing scent. She smiles proudly, because her student only needs a little more training before he makes his debut. Ceres is dazed by the girl's pretty smile and immediately says he likes it. Unfortunately, our ignorant girl thinks he is talking about bathing. Ceres tries to explain, but the priestess just assumes he is hungry. She starts to dry the man's hair and wants him to close his eyes. Our heroine recalls that it makes him uncomfortable, so she says he can keep them open. Instead, she would just be more careful. Ceres always refuses to close his eyes because on the battlefield, that means death. He always had to stay alert and watch his sides during the war. The enemies weren't the only thing the man was worried about. Their commander had ordered the 8th Battalion to die during the war, but Ceres, who had always followed all orders, couldn't obey that command. And so the man became terrified to sleep because he didn't want to die. He had always done everything to survive because those who fail would also lose their lives. The man who had always lived a rough life is now receiving head rubs from a certain priestess. Diren says he can keep his eyes open while bathing once he gets used to the process. She stares at the stack of used towels, wondering just how thick the man's hair is. Ceres still thinks that closing his eyes is scary, and the more he keeps them closed, the scarier it gets. However, this moment with Diren makes him comfortable, and he even thinks that he could stay here a little longer. Sadly, the next moment, the girl lets go of his hair and runs around searching for something. She soon returns with a large mirror and wants Ceres to see his own reflection. The man looks stunned, and Dia is sure he has never seen his own face since he spent all his time on the battlefield. She praises his good looks, but our male lead is unimpressed. The priestess says he doesn't understand it yet, but when he joins high society, he will recognize the true value of his handsome face. Dia says his parents must also be very good-looking, but frowns when she recalls that Ceres joined the 8th Battalion as a child. She guesses that his parents sent their young son into the battlefield. Our heroine starts to worry about the rest of the team, wondering how they all ended up in such a brutal unit. She recalls Robin's stern warning and decides to focus on her own business. Meanwhile, the army chief is facing a huge problem. A priest has just been murdered and the culprit is watching them with red eyes. Robin smiles in agony because he has no idea how to handle this. Back at the mansion, Dia is about to die from awe. She stares Ceres, wondering how this could be possible. The man is dressed up in a coat and his stunning beauty almost blows our heroine away. The man's handsome face is more blinding than the sun and the poor girl can't even take another look. She keeps praising the mad dog, but he can't understand why she is swearing and exclaiming at the same time. The girl calls it a compliment and the man responds with a polite smile. Dia is filled with pride and praises her excellent student. She helps the man adjust his coat, advising him to always pay attention to the little details. The girl changes her mind after glancing at his handsome face because his beauty would distract anyone from noticing those details. Ceres begins to practice his walk, and our priestess has to hold back her tears. She is sure her student would stun everyone in high society and no one would doubt him if he claimed to be an imperial prince. Dia is sure Ceres must have been very cute when he was young and wonders how he ended up at the 8th Battalion with such a handsome face. Ceres can hear Dia's murmurings and replies that he doesn't know. The girl thinks he was too young to remember, but the mad dog reveals that he can't recall anything from his past before he joined the army. He doesn't know how old he was when he joined the battalion and can't even remember how he got his name. Dia wonders if all the men in the army have lost their memories, but Ceres says some of them still remember their past. Our heroine recalls Robin's words about the spell training and asks Ceres to lower his head. She is sure the men didn't wipe everyone's memories because spellcasting is also very dangerous. Therefore, something must have happened to make them erase the mad dog's past. Dia knows she shouldn't be searching for the truth, but tries to convince herself she is just doing this so teaching Ceres can be easier. The girl uses her divine power to scan the man's head and, just as expected, finds a complicated seal inside his brain. She decides to do some research before breaking the seal because the spell looks very old and complicated. She is afraid a wrong move might turn Ceres into a permanent idiot. The mad dog recognizes her divine power, and Dia praises him for staying still. Since she can't deal with the seal, she plans to work on his social etiquette. The girl turns into a crazy monster, promising to make the man study without mercy. Unfortunately, Ceres is still as calm as ever and even promises to prepare himself. Dia feels defeated because she wanted the man to show more reaction. She thought Ceres would look sad or annoyed and even hoped he would jump out of the window in protest. The twisted girl thinks that since she can't make him laugh, she would be the reason behind his tears. Dia advises Ceres to learn the social skills, even though most of them seem useless. Although his handsome face will stun everyone, there will always be a few people ready to cause trouble. Our heroine is speaking from experience because her social debut had been a total disaster. During her brother's debut, the whole family had pooled money together to buy him a nice suit. Dia was also expecting a nice dress for her debut, but the family claimed they couldn't afford one. Instead, all she got was an old and ugly dress from a relative. The girl showed up dressed like an old woman and was also clueless about the rules. Because of this, the other ladies had gossiped about her all through the night. Dia doesn't look bothered as she tells Ceres her sad story. She thinks everything is in the past and doesn't want the boy to suffer the same way she did. Dia has been criticized many times, so she already knows all the ropes. She even says Ceres must be glad to have her around. The mad dog suddenly stops walking, causing the girl to turn around. He looks very serious as he promises to make her proud. Dia is amused by his sudden behavior and really can't understand what the man is thinking. She assures Ceres will drive all the girls crazy, and the man wonders if that is his new mission. Unfortunately, as soon as they step into the study, our heroine's smile disappears. She stares at Ceres in shock, wondering how this could be possible. Dia's whole world has just been turned upside down. The girl almost sheds tears as she studies Ceres' gorgeous signature, wondering how he could create such a masterpiece on the first try. Diaren might just be an ordinary priestess, but she can tell that this signature is remarkable. The girl always knew Ceres was different, even when he was learning how to write. Dia didn't have much expectations for him and had only given him a few words to copy. She had just taught him how to hold a pen, yet the man could correctly write a few words. The girl had almost dislocated her jaw and had given him an even harder word to copy. Still, the results had left her in awe. Ceres quickly learned how to write, so our heroine moved on to some reading lessons. The man only had to glance at a few pages and could already read the words and even describe their meanings. Dia thought she could humble through this signature lesson, yet the man had come up with a perfect autograph right on the spot. Our heroine thinks about her own miserable signature, which is just her name written in block letters. The servants always have to hold back their laughter every time they collect her autograph. Dia suddenly looks serious as she recalls that the nobles pay a lot just to create a signature. The greedy girl is already thinking of turning Ceres into a signature-making machine. After all, she was the one who discovered his talent. Our heroine believes she will be promoted to chief priestess once Ceres makes his debut, and is already thinking of making a fancy signature for her bright future. The priestess keeps frowning and pouting, making Ceres worried that something is wrong. Dia slams the table and asks the mad dog to do her favor. The man agrees, so she begs him to create a signature for her. However, a few minutes later, our heroine regrets her decision. Dia stares at the autograph, which looks more like a chicken's writing. She tells Ceres he could just have refused, but the man says he did his best. The priestess clearly doesn't believe him and says he could just have rejected the favor. The mad dog insists that he did his best and decides to try again. He grabs the pen, vowing not to fail because this paper is a battlefield. Failure will only mean death. Therefore, when the next signature turns out to be even worse than the first, our male lead immediately collapses and dies in pain. Alright guys, thanks for watching. The mad dog is dead, and this is the end of our story. Just kidding, folks. Our heroine still hasn't gotten her pension. A few days later, Dia admires the flying birds and enjoys a peaceful morning. The girl even thinks she might just be in heaven. Every morning, she only has to wake up and get dressed. Ceres will already be waiting with her breakfast, which is always on a chef's level. The man even cleans the mansion in his free time, so Dia gets to enjoy every meal in a very clean house. At first, our heroine had thought she was entering into the deepest part of hell. But right now, she thinks she might have entered a special heaven. All she has to do now is eat, relax, and give Ceres some lessons. Our heroine stretches like a lazy cat, wondering what she will teach Ceres today. The man can already read most of the books himself, so she has to wait for Robin to deliver more books. The little foodie wants them to try baking again because Ceres' last attempt was a total disaster. She has even found a dessert recipe from somewhere and goes off to find her personal chef. Diaren finds the mad dog in his room and is once again amazed by the beautiful sight. The handsome man is sitting by the window, enjoying a cup of tea while reading a book. The priestess shivers in pride as she admires her greatest creation. The man even blends in with the pink princess room. Just then, a loud crash disturbs her imagination and the priestess finds the mad dog standing by the window. The man is growling and the girl thinks something might be passing by again. She approaches Ceres and tries to calm him down with a hug. The man might be a fast learner, but he still can't control his senses. Usually her hugs would calm him down, but right now the mad dog is still upset. Dia is stunned and wonders if something is really out there. Before she can look outside, the couple suddenly hear a loud banging sound coming from the door. The couple are startled by the sound and Diaren shivers in fear. No one would visit the mansion except for a few people and none of them would bang in the door this way. The girl takes a look though, the window, but can't see anything from up here. Dia pulls Ceres, saying they have to go downstairs and check it out. She reminds the man about the rule she made, where he has to check who is knocking by their voice and decide whether to let them in or not. However, the mad dog already knows who it is. Our heroine believes it must be an assassin, because several attempts were made on the 8th Battalion members right on the battlefield. She has been expecting an attack because things have been too peaceful lately. The girl wonders what she should do if an assassin really shows up and imagines herself commanding Ceres to bite them. Dia immediately shakes away those thoughts, refusing to turn the man back to a dog after all her efforts. She shoves Ceres behind her back, promising to handle everything that happens. The man has a huge question mark above his head, while the girl can already feel his disdainful gaze. She shows off her firepower, boasting about her experience on the battlefield. Since no one is looking, our heroine plans to throw the men into the fire pit. Anyways, no one is going to know. The girl notices that the guards haven't made a single sound and is worried about their lives. She approaches the door only to hear a familiar voice. Dia opens the gate and sees Robin. The man apologizes for showing up without warning and asks the girl to let them in. Dia agrees, but has totally forgotten that trouble will always come. And this time, it shows up through a certain redhead. Our heroine agrees to let them in, but Ceres refuses. The two turn around in shock and see the furious Ceres staring at them with angry eyes. The man releases a murderous aura, and the timid Robin begins to sweat. Dia is also nervous and says Ceres might just rip them apart as soon as they step inside. She doesn't want to upset her precious student, but she can't ignore the guards looking at her with puppy eyes. They are all crying for her help. Our heroine decides to let them in first before she plans her next move. She hugs Ceres, trying to calm the man down. Robin is shocked by her bold move and watches them in shock. Dia gives him a simple glance, and the men immediately sneak the unconscious redhead past the angry Ceres. The girl notices the man's physique, and from Ceres' reaction, guesses that he is part of the 8th Battalion. She strokes her student's head before leading him back to his room. Dia hopes it is just a simple issue, but it turns out to be something very serious. Our heroine sits on her throne, stroking Ceres' head while the man buries his face in her laps. She immediately refuses Robin's request while the man begs her to give it a second thought. The girl feels sorry for the chief and decides to reconsider. She enjoys the lovely weather and Ceres' soft hair, and after a second, rejects Robin's offer again. Our heroine absolutely refuses to take care of another member of the 8th Battalion. The man isn't even as nice as Ceres and almost killed another priest. Dia uses the mad dog as her shield, saying the man doesn't like the idea. Ceres glares at Robin with evil eyes, and she says the man can't stand the idea. The chief begs her to change her mind because the redhead will die if she refuses to take care of him. The girl is stunned, so he explains that they can't let the man go because he is too dangerous. They also can't lock him up because he is one of the country's heroes. Dia is going crazy and wonders which ridiculous person ordered the man to be killed. The girl thought her life would be easier now that Ceres is obedient, but the universe refuses to give her a break. Robin persuades the girl to agree, saying she will only babysit the redhead until they find another priest. Plus, he doesn't need to make a debut like Ceres, so she only has to keep an eye on him. Dia's little devil refuses to take this job, while her angel says she will feel very guilty. The devil isn't moved until the angel whispers that Robin will definitely reward them. The little angel is right as the chief promises to double Diarin's salary. The girl stares at him blankly and isn't moved by his cheap reward. Robin says that is just the base salary and promises to pay her 4 times her bonus money. Little angel gives a thumbs up, while Diarin shoves the poor Ceres away. She immediately smiles like a holy thief. Sorry, I meant a holy saint, and says she has to help everyone in need. Robin immediately bows in reverence, calling the girl his goddess. Diarin also grins, secretly thinking that money is her only savior. The chief finally leaves with his men, and the priestess pulls Ceres along to visit their new friend. She pulls the door open while the mad dog advises her not to get too close. Dia says the redhead will still be sedated, but Ceres announces that the man is awake. Just then, we see a sneaky shadow trying to attack Dia. Dia freezes in fear as she watches the evil aura approach. The girl is prepared to meet her end, but Ceres jumps to her rescue. The man shoves the redhead to the floor, holding him down in a chokehold. Hart complains because the mad dog always escapes from his trick. Our male lead warns him to shut up, causing the furious Hart to kick him away. The men separate but look ready to tear each other apart in the next minute. Hart insults Ceres, causing the two to begin another round of fighting. Dia is in awe because the men are fighting so fast and still have the strength to curse each other. She wonders if she should stop them, but thinks this might be their way of communication. She had also received another whistle for Hart and can still remember Robin's warning to use it when things become dangerous. The girl glances at the fighting men, noticing the redhead is being beaten up and screaming in pain. She decides to just leave the men alone since she isn't the one in danger. The fight finally ends a few minutes later as Ceres beats the redhead until he becomes silent. Dia is worried about her precious student, but the man shows off his prize, which is the tattered redhead. The girl is still worried that he might be hurt, but our male lead doesn't even have a single scratch. Dia is surprised because the 8th Battalion never fought each other during the battlefield. Ceres explains that they were ordered to play nice, plus the redhead wasn't so annoying before. The girl is worried that the men might have a wrestling match every day, but Ceres has worse news for her. He might have subdued the redhead, but the battalion members hardly get tired. Hart is also a very petty man who is good at surprise attacks or assassination. He is also very persistent, so it would be hard to ignore him. Ceres has always dealt with the members who go out of control, so if Hart continues to misbehave, he will have to get rid of him. Dia panics because her job is to take care of Hart, so he doesn't end up dead. She glances at the redhead, but the man looks almost dead. Ceres has practically destroyed him. The priestess says killing him would be the last resort and begs her student to treat him gently. Our male lead has always been a good boy, so he decides to find the softest rope for Hart and give him the most gentle punches. Just then, the redhead wakes up, causing the two to panic. Just like he promised, Ceres chases the man with love and even gives him a punch filled with sweet bubbles. What an obedient boy. A few hours later, we see tattered Hart tied up and having his meal. He can't believe the mad dog made such good food and praises Diarin for teaching him well. Our heroine accepts the praise, even though Ceres learned everything himself. She wonders if Hart can taste the food, and the man says he also has taste buds. Dia asks Ceres, but the man remains silent. He eventually says he can, but the priestess knows he is lying. The mad dog can always list the ingredients used to make the food but can never enjoy the taste. Dia always thought the other members of the 8th Battalion were the same, but Heart seems to be different. She questions the man who confirms that he can hear her heartbeat and the sounds of flying birds. The girl wonders why he isn't bothered, and a confused Heart says he never thought about it. The girl is surprised that he can think, and the man accuses her of treating him like a dog. Our heroine apologizes, explaining that he is just different from Ceres. Still, she doesn't think he is a real dog. The redhead suddenly stops eating and calls Dia a cool person. He keeps staring at her in a daze, saying her cool behavior makes him amazed. The priestess is impressed by his social skills and thinks calling him a mad dog would be wrong. The man is clearly a cunning fox as he tries to convince Diren to take off the ropes. Our heroine wonders why the men are so different even though they had the same training and spells. Heart explains that they all have different backgrounds. He is also different from his other members because he joined the battalion when he was older. Dia is excited because Ceres has gone through different training and spells, but even Robin, the army chief, didn't know what they were. He explained that the commander of the 8th Battalion was from the Imperial Army, so he couldn't interfere. The spells and training were also an unofficial order, so they had no records. The only ones who know the truth are the sorcerer and the spell receivers. Dia is happy because she had listened to Robin complain for 3 hours but didn't get a single clue. Maybe this time, Heart might give her some clues about the spells. The girl happily questions the redhead, but he also has no clues and says only the sorcerers would know. Meanwhile, Ceres watches the two discuss, and he doesn't look very happy. Dia wants to know what the spells were used for, but the redhead only recalls the one that made him sensitive. He had tried to avoid the spellcasters at first, but life in the battle became too tough to handle. The redhead had finally given up and told them to do whatever they wanted, so he could survive. Those that couldn't endure the spells always went crazy, and were usually killed. But the ones they thought were too valuable to kill were taken away and had their memories erased. That is probably what happened to our male lead. Dia thought things were going well. Her conversation with Heart turned out to be very useful, and even though it wasn't enough to figure out the truth, the man told her everything he remembered. Ceres also seemed to be getting along well with the redhead, even though he found him annoying at first. Our heroine thought she just had to relax until the next person could take charge of Heart. So why is she currently being sandwiched between the two men? The girl screams at them to let her go, but the redhead keeps crying while Ceres just looks upset. The jealous student wants Heart to let go of his master, while the redhead says he is too scary. He begins to cry again when Ceres calls him a crazy dog. The two totally ignore Dia, who is about to lose her life. Okay, we definitely can't understand what the hell is going on, so we'll take a quick flashback to understand the situation. Back to a few days ago. The couple eventually set the redhead free, but the man is still amazed by Ceres' chef skills. He praises Dia, but the girl says Ceres is just a quick learner. She also thinks the man might have had some experience before his memories were erased. Heart suddenly smirks like he knows a secret and says the boy might have lived in a giant mansion before joining the 8th Battalion. He quickly explains that Ceres was good-looking even when he was a kid, so he always wondered why such a handsome guy ended up in the army. Everything would only make sense if Ceres was a noble. Dia also thinks her student was born handsome and wants to know how he was when he first joined the army. Heart still recalls the first day he met Ceres because his memory was already erased when he first arrived. He even assumed that the mad dog must have been in some other battlefield before joining their battalion. Dia is desperate to know more, but Heart says there was nothing remarkable. Ceres had already turned into the idiot he is now and had forgotten how to talk, eat, or sleep. He was always blank but would turn into a crazy monster when he arrived at the battlefield. Others who turned into a beast like him would eventually go insane or have their memories erased again. Yet Ceres was always different. Dia is stunned and wonders if things never went wrong after the men's memories were erased again. Heart explains that they always turned into idiots and would end up being killed on the battlefield. The redhead doesn't seem to be bothered by the cruelty and even says the men would eventually die anyways. Dia wonders why he isn't disturbed by his comrade's death until Heart says they would even kill their comrades if they were given an order. Ceres also nods and Dia is horrified by their terrible environment. The girl is upset, but the people involved are nonchalant, so she has no right to say anything. Heart says Ceres was just like a baby when he first arrived, so he always thought he would soon chop off the man's head. He suddenly releases an evil smirk because the mad dog survived until the very end. Dia is terrified by Heart's sudden hostile behavior and glares at him as she protects her student. Ceres also releases a murderous aura, so the redhead urges them to calm down. Dia can't understand why the men are suddenly wrestling when they never fought back at the army. Heart also can't explain and says he just has an urge to fight Ceres every time he sees him. Dia thinks the man might be having a seizure because the look in his eyes suddenly changed out of nowhere. She is worried about her student, but when she tries to grab Heart's whistle, she discovers that it is missing. The redhead is definitely going crazy because he keeps scratching his head and even says Ceres' eyes seem to be picking a fight. He suddenly turns around with a murderous air, saying he can't hold back because the mad dog's lips and nose are asking for a beating. Our male lead immediately steps forward and pushes the priestess behind him. Dia is worried that the men might jump out of the window if they start a fight. So when the redhead makes his move and tries to attack Ceres, she hugs the man's waist and begs him to stop. The girl hears a loud smack and thinks it is too late, But when she opens her eyes, Ceres is still standing still. The man turns around and we see a red mark covering his cheek. Dia almost loses her soul, but she isn't the only one shocked. Hart is also terrified, and the two nervously ask Ceres if he just got punched. Our male lead says he did, and the redhead almost loses his soul. Dia has to ask why he is so surprised when he hit the man himself. The girl is proud that her little puppy held back, but she knows his patience might soon run out. She decides to take charge and approaches Hart, asking him to calm down. The man yells at Dia, saying she can't control him, but the girl suddenly grabs his hand. Our heroine has an evil smirk on her face as she says she can try. Just when we expect the priestess to do something awesome like flinging the man away, she suddenly beams like a sun and calls him brother. The girl thinks that Ceres might be a beast, but the redhead is even worse. The man has no idea, but our heroine has already grouped him among the obnoxious humans. Dia always meets all kinds of people when they visit the temple, and 2 out of 10 are always obnoxious. They are always irrational, and refuse to change their different requests, making it impossible to reason with them. Still, Dia thinks it is easy to deal with such people because all she needs to do is overwhelm them with praises. The girl uses this trick on Hart as she grabs his hand, praising him for being brave and surviving all the hardships on the battlefield. She even calls him brother and says she believes in him. Dia's sparkling eyes are filled with Hart's reflection, and we can almost see the man's terrified face. Our heroine grabs his hand, saying she has to find his inner peace with her mental strength. Of course, Dia is actually using her divine power to calm him down. The redhead is deceived and is curious about this mental power. Because Dia isn't done with her treatment, he can't feel the effects and wonders what it is used for. The girl claims that it calms people down and says the man must now be feeling relieved. Hart thinks for a minute and is surprised because he actually feels relaxed. The man is stunned because it has been ages since he felt this way. Our heroine pretends to be calm, but her proud smile gives her away. Hart grabs the priestess and twirls her around in happiness. He hasn't been this calm since he joined the battlefield, so he praises Diarin's awesome skills. Our heroine feels very proud and her shoulders could almost touch the sky. Right now, her self-esteem is fatter than a pig, and even though Ceres has shown great progress, it feels better to see someone improving right before her eyes. Suddenly, Dia's joy is cut short as someone grabs her from the air. Ceres snatches his teacher back and growls at the redhead. The man is immediately upset, and the two are about to start another fight. The priestess quickly separates the two and instead asks the good puppies to talk over a snack. Her words stun the men, and Hart turns away in shock. Dia takes that as a sign of agreement and looks at Ceres with hope. Unfortunately, the mad dog looks upset, causing the girl to wonder if she went too far. After all, they are both grown men. Days pass and Hart's temper grows even worse. This time, the man is yelling at some innocent birds. Dia is already used to this because the man always throws a tantrum at every moment. Just like now, he stops bothering the birds and switches to yelling at Ceres. Our heroine is filled with despair as the men begin another argument. At first, she thought the redhead was just touchy because he was smarter than Ceres. But after she saw him fighting with a rock, that opinion changed very quickly. Dia doesn't care if the man fights with a rock, but his negative emotions always influence Ceres. She even thought he was provoking her student on purpose, but when she looked back, the redhead was picking a fight with a cloud on top of the trees. At that moment, our heroine realized that the man was just really mad. This time, he is trying to fight Ceres, but our male lead keeps hugging his teacher. He even buries his face in her shoulders, causing the girl to feel bad. The mad dog has to put up with Hart's horrible behavior, but it causes him to act like a baby. Dia rubs his head, wondering when her little puppy would stand on his own. It is probably because of his tough life, but Ceres always enjoys it when she pets him. The girl promises to comfort him later because right now, she has to calm Hart. The man agrees and Dia approaches the redhead. Before she can get close, Ceres suddenly pulls her back and rushes in front of her. He announces that someone is coming, but our heroine thinks it is just Robin. She tries to peek outside but doesn't see anyone. Suddenly, the window crashes as an arrow flies inside, heading straight for Diarin. Thankfully, Ceres comes to her rescue and quickly grabs the girl, pulling her out of the way. The two crash to the floor and Dia stares at the steel arrow stuck to the floor right next to her head. She is still worrying for her life when she suddenly sees Hart jumping out of the window. Our girl tries to stop Hart, but Ceres blocks her path because he believes chasing after him is too dangerous. However, she explains that she already knows the risk, yet she still has to stop him because it would be even worse if he ran outside in that condition. She keeps insisting, even shouting at him. Realizing she will never change her mind, he suddenly grabs her by the shoulders, lifts her up, and jumps through the window to chase after him. We are left just as shocked as she is because she planned to run after him herself. Nevertheless, she decides that it does not matter who catches him first, as long as someone gets there quickly. As they race through the forest, she feels like nothing more than a piece of luggage being carried around. Suddenly, he comes to a stop after hearing a strange sound that seems very familiar. As both of them pause, Diarin feels relieved that at least Hart has not jumped over the fence. Even so, she realizes she cannot depend on luck like she did during Ceres' last episode. She becomes even more worried that the mad dog might lose control too, and she remembers the whistle she has been trying not to use. However, as she reaches for it, she realizes it is gone. Sweat covers her body as she remembers she left it at home because she had not needed it for a while. She blames herself for such a careless mistake, yet quickly forces herself to think of another solution. Meanwhile, Ceres decides to move closer to the crazed man. She begs him to wait and even wonders if she should send him back while she gets the whistle. However, she realizes that would only make things more confusing. Therefore, she gives him permission to move forward, but pleads with him to stay careful. In the next scene, we see Hart in a terrifying state as he takes down several soldiers. Then he charges at the last guard, determined to kill him because he believes they all tried to kill him first. Diaren is horrified because she realizes the situation is even worse than she imagined. She notices he is badly injured after fighting swords with his bare hands. For a moment, she even thinks about running away. However, after taking a deep breath, she realizes she cannot leave because there is still something she can do. She immediately stops Ceres from getting closer and assures the mad dog that everything is all right. Then she boldly steps forward and attacks the soldier with a fireball, leaving everyone stunned as the man rolls on the ground, crying that his eyes are burning, while Hart simply stands there. She remembers that this fireball technique was her last choice on the battlefield whenever there was no other option. She also recalls Ceres pushing her away from an arrow that almost hit her, believing her actions now are nothing more than self-defense. Afterward, she checks if he is all right and realizes she has to get both men back to the manor. As Ceres angrily tries to confront the crazed man, she calms him down and hopes a hug will calm the other man as well. She notices he is still shaking and first thinks it is from anger, but soon wonders if it is something else. As she carefully calls his name, she remembers he was always more aware than the others during battles, even while having an episode. She also realizes that knowing danger beforehand only makes fear stronger, and people who have faced death become more careful. Therefore, she gently reaches out, tells him there are no assassins left, and hugs him tightly while assuring him that nobody can attack him anymore. At last, Hart returns to his senses and asks if she defeated the assassin. She confirms that she did and happily realizes he understands her again. However, she is completely shocked when the grown man suddenly bursts into tears like a little child. Meanwhile, Ceres quietly watches everything unfold and realizes there are still many things he never understood before. Hart continues crying and admits that he was terrified. Diaren gently comforts him and assures him that everything is all right now. She realizes that hugging and comforting the big man is actually working, so she tells him to return home and get some sleep. She keeps reassuring him that although everything happened so suddenly, as long as nothing frightening happens again, everything will be fine. However, he suddenly pushes her away, leaving her stunned. Ceres catches her just in time and glares at the other man with an angry look. She immediately realizes he is about to do something reckless and quickly tells him to stop. Then she struggles to breathe because his grip on her is too tight. She begs him to calm down, and although he refuses at first, he finally lets go, allowing her to catch her breath. She tells everyone to head home while both men continue staring at Hart, who still cannot stop crying. She smiles at him and asks if everything will be all right now. He assures her that it will. She feels relieved because she manages to calm him down without using her whistle. Before long, both strong men hug her so tightly that she can barely breathe, although they let go just before she completely stiffens. As they return to the manor, Robin praises her for her hard work and says he has finally found someone worthy of her. He also thanks her for stopping Hart from running outside and says it is a relief that the crazed man at least did something good before leaving. He asks how her time with him was, leaving her speechless. She then sees him tied up like a dog. Robin explains that it is only a safety measure and admits things could have ended much worse if she had not calmed him down. He adds that they will leave once he receives the whistle from her. The young man quietly hands it over after speaking with her, still confused about why he cried so much because he believed he had been holding himself together ever since arriving at the manor. He tries to brush it aside, but she knows he has been struggling inside. He admits he used to lose control without thinking, but now he feels like he can stop himself if he concentrates. He also says his mind has never felt this clear before. Afterward, Hart turns to Ceres and says he even manages to stay calm despite the fight he started. Diaren quickly steps in and tells him not to take things too far. He says he is going to sleep because for the first time since arriving there, he can now sleep for more than 3 hours, leaving her completely shocked. Ceres explains that his work always involves stakeouts and ambushes, so getting only a few hours of sleep is normal. However, the other man rudely asks why the mad dog is answering for him, leaving him speechless. She watches them argue and even imagines them as two cute dogs. Then she realizes he is probably upset because she hugged Hart, and she reminds herself that becoming attached to a priest is common while asking both of them to stop fighting. Before leaving, Hart turns with a fierce look and tells him he is not some child who can be ordered around. Diaren notices he has gone from calling him a bastard to calling him a kid, and wonders if their relationship is getting better or worse. She then gets his attention and asks if he wants her help, but quickly decides she would rather not know anything about whatever is happening between them. She then tells Ceres to go inside, and although he agrees, she still worries about Hart. Meanwhile, Robin reports back to the king and says he successfully brought him back. The king praises him, but admits it would have been better if Hart had gone wild and caused chaos. However, he knows that did not happen because of Diren's ability. When Robin asks if he should send the knights back, the king refuses, saying it is not time yet because she will remain alert unless she is foolish. He orders him to wait for the right chance to persuade her and, if that fails, to send someone else instead. He also says it is unfortunate she has not had the chance to stand by his side simply because they have never met, adding that it may even be a blessing from God. Then he tells Robin to stand up because he can barely see his face, and the knight gratefully obeys. The king says he hopes to keep seeing him for a long time, and he replies that he is deeply honored. Before dismissing him, he orders that next time nobody should leave any trace of the imperial palace. Then a new day begins, and Robin returns to the palace, completely surprising Diarin and Ceres. Finally, he announces that a new servant will be assigned to the so-called noble lord. Robin brings a new chef and a new manager to meet Ceres. In addition, the manager happily greets him, while Robin suddenly grabs Diarin and thanks her. He explains that if it was not for everything she had done, they would not have gotten extra help, and they were now one step closer to turning him into a proper noble lord. She appreciates the praise. However, she politely asks him to keep some distance from her, which shocks him. He quickly steps back, saying that Ceres must still be very sensitive. This surprises her, and she tells him that she did not mean he had to move that far away. He then explains that once the manager finishes checking on him, even more staff will arrive at the manor. He also praises her as a heaven-sent priestess. She happily asks him to make sure he writes that in his evaluation report, and he promises to choose his words carefully before saying goodbye. As time passes after the incident at the manor, Robin and Diarin naturally grow apart. They now see each other as nothing more than colleagues. Her attention soon returns to Ceres. She realizes that the once dangerous mad dog has become very sensitive. His condition is still serious, and she even earns extra money from the guards because of it. Until recently, she could only speak to Robin while he held her tightly in his arms. Since she cannot leave him like that, she keeps training him. However, as he continues clinging to her, she asks if he plans to stay attached to her forever because no still means no. He even puts on an adorable puppy-like expression, but she refuses to give in. Just then, the manager suddenly appears behind them. She instantly realizes that she forgot to treat him like a noble lord in front of other people. Surprisingly, the manager says she completely respects his personal preferences. She even says that some young lords like being led around on a leash, so there is no need to hide anything because she will keep their private life secret. Diarin quickly tries to explain that it is only a dog leash, but the moment those words leave her mouth, she regrets saying them. The manager calmly agrees, leaving her so embarrassed that she mentally scolds herself. After that, the manager explains that she needs to take Ceres' measurements so she can find the right professionals for him. Diarin is confused until she learns that this includes checking his nutrition, skin, body size, and many other things. She immediately realizes that all of it requires touching him and asks if that is really necessary. The manager confirms it is, so she turns to him and asks if he is comfortable with that. She even tells him they can do it another time if he is not ready. Since he stays silent, the manager asks if he dislikes strangers touching him. Diarin quickly admits that he does because he is very sensitive. However, the manager explains that her work requires physical contact, which is exactly why she is paid so well. She then suggests doing everything together with Diarin because having someone familiar beside him may help him stay calm. Although she tries to avoid the extra work by saying he will probably get used to it, the manager insists that clients should not be forced to adjust and that the best method should always come first. After asking him one last time, he agrees if it is in order, leaving her completely speechless. The manager praises both of them for their attitude, brings out her toolkit, and announces that she will show them true professionalism. She begins with a skin elasticity test, a skin type analysis, and finding the colors that suit him best. He even asks if this is some kind of torture training, but Diarin tells him it is not. Even so, by the end of the long session, he feels completely drained and realizes torture does not always involve blood. The manager thanks them for cooperating and promises to choose the right escort before leaving. She had checked every little detail, even his palms and every strand of hair. He complains that he had to go through things he would never normally do and asks if this is really part of becoming a noble lord. She guesses it probably is, and even wonders why hair care and styling need different specialists, especially since noble ladies already spend so much time on their appearance. Just then, the chef announces that dinner is almost ready and offers them hot chocolate while they wait. Diarin is shocked because she never even noticed the chef standing there. She asks Ceres if he saw her earlier, and he admits she has been nearby for quite some time. She apologizes for not showing her to her room, but the chef kindly says dinner comes first. The chef then offers both of them a sweet to keep their energy up and politely asks Diarin to show her the kitchen afterward. Her eyes immediately lock onto the desserts because she knows sweets made by a professional chef are a rare treat. She offers one to Ceres, but he refuses to open his mouth. She quietly asks if he thinks it is poisoned, but he says it is not. Instead, he only finds the smell unfamiliar and is not even sure it is food. She suddenly realizes he probably never had the chance to enjoy sweet things while living on the battlefield. To encourage him, she takes the first bite herself. She keeps eating happily, while he silently watches her. A sudden sound from her startles him, but it is only because she is overwhelmed by how delicious it is. She excitedly tells him it tastes amazing and encourages him to try it too. Diarin is still trying to adjust, yet she remains determined, so she offers Ceres the piece of sweet she gets. We even get a funny moment where the sweet almost seems to beg him to eat it, leaving him wondering what is going on. However, the maid misunderstands everything and thinks she is simply trying to be friendly to the mad dog. Soon, The wait is finally over, as the cook serves them a full 5-course meal. Diren happily thanks her for the food because she knows the desserts alone cost as much as a family's living expenses for a whole month. Still, she doesn't mind since it is someone else's money. Ceres, on the other hand, stares at the food and wonders if it is mud or dried blood. Before he can continue, she quickly stops him because she doesn't want him to disgrace the food. He admits that he is simply not used to this kind of meal and only needs to try it first, and she agrees. Just when we think nothing else can surprise us, he touches the cake and freezes after feeling the icing melt on his hand. She calmly explains that it is only chocolate, and that it becomes sticky sometimes. At that moment, she realizes it is his first time eating dessert. Therefore, she tells him to lick the chocolate from his hand and even shows him how to do it. She even tries to feed him like a child, but he stubbornly refuses to open his mouth. Even so, sweat begins to roll down his face as he struggles to resist her constant pleading. Eventually, he gives in, looking just like a cute little puppy who has no idea what to do with the cake in front of him. Diren cannot help finding it adorable and wonders how such a rough and raging mad dog can suddenly become this gentle. She then puts a piece of cake into his mouth and makes him chew, and to her surprise, he actually likes it. She patiently waits for his opinion and even asks if he dislikes it, adding that he can spit it out if it tastes bad. Instead, he realizes the taste is simply strange. His hands feel itchy, his body feels different, and he notices he only gets that feeling whenever she reaches out to him. After swallowing the cake, he stays silent. Even so, she becomes happy because at least he does not hate it. She immediately tries to feed him another sweet, while he quietly wonders if this is what delicious food in their land tastes like. Before long, she keeps moving around the table, feeding him one sweet after another until his mouth is completely full. He cannot even explain why he keeps accepting everything she gives him. Somehow, every sweet makes his eyes twitch, his mouth moves slightly, and even his breathing become uneven. Yet he still chooses to eat them. Then, to everyone's surprise, a faint smile finally appears on his face. Diren quickly realizes that sweet food is the only thing that makes the mad dog feel good, and she happily says that this must be what sweet food feels like. Meanwhile, Ceres remains completely lost in his own thoughts, and soon she even catches him licking his hand while continuing to persuade him to eat more. I can't even blame her because I'd probably do the same after seeing that reaction. However, the cook soon returns with their main lunch and explains that everyone has already become used to having her around in such a short time. She serves a vegetable salad and crouton soup as appetizers. Diren cannot help wondering if appetizers are even necessary, since their appetites already seem to be growing. Even so, the cook politely tells them to let her know if they need anything else. She thanks her once again while Ceres lets out an even bigger sigh than before. The maid explains that it is because there is now one extra person living in the palace. Just then, Robin suddenly appears and greets Diren, completely startling her. She angrily asks when he arrived, and he explains that both she and Ceres were too focused on the cook to notice him. Ceres clearly dislikes his sudden appearance, and she points out that he should have at least announced himself. Robin then reveals that he plans to add another staff member since they have already gotten used to having a cook. However, Ceres immediately rejects the idea, insisting that he does not want any more staff and that he should not even bother coming to the palace anymore. Robin is amazed because he says all that without doing anything. Diren realizes the situation has become a little awkward, so she quickly changes the topic by saying that the cook fits the palace perfectly because she quietly does her job without caring about who eats the food. She also remembers Robin saying he picked the person least likely to cause problems, so there is nothing to worry about. Nevertheless, as she continues eating, another concern crosses her mind. She remembers that beauty staff are experts in hospitality and wonders if it is really safe to let them get close to Ceres, especially when he has no sense of beauty at all. Even worse, that is not even her biggest worry. Robin notices her concern and tells her not to think too much about it. She asks if he carefully chose the new people the same way he chose the maid, but he explains that they had already been hired, so they had to be sent to the palace no matter what. He also says that worrying will not change anything. As a result, they continue their meal, and before long, a new day begins. We are then introduced to one of the beauty staff trying to style Ceres' hair. She politely asks if he has any hairstyle in mind, but the mad dog simply sits there with the kind of look that makes it seem like he wants to kill someone. At this point, anyone brave enough to touch his hair deserves an award. In the next scene, we see the beautician getting ready to cut Ceres' hair. However, Diren suddenly rushes into the room in shock, wondering if she is trying to kill him. She immediately grabs the scissors from her, leaving the woman completely startled. The beautician quickly asks what is wrong, saying it is dangerous to hold the blades with bare hands. However, our female lead reminds her that she had already warned everyone that no sharp objects were allowed near him because he has bad memories connected to edged weapons. The beautician suddenly remembers and tries to act cute after forgetting such an important rule. Fortunately, she quickly brings out a pair of special blunt scissors and explains that they cannot hurt Ceres or anyone else. She repeatedly opens and closes them to prove they are safe and asks if they are acceptable. Meanwhile, he simply keeps staring ahead as if he could lose control at any moment. Then, just when the tension reaches its peak, he suddenly lets out a laugh, immediately calming everyone down. The beautician feels relieved because he seems to like the scissors, although Diren feels it sounds more like the laugh of someone who is completely exhausted. Even so, She calms herself because at least the scissors help him relax. The haircut finally begins, and as the woman works, she cannot stop thinking about how amazing he will look when she finishes. She already believes he looks perfect, yet she feels the haircut will make him even more handsome, and the thought alone makes her blush. Before long, she finishes her work and everyone is left speechless. Even Ceres wonders what is happening because he is not used to receiving praise. Diren struggles to hold back her tears because she thought she had already gotten used to his appearance, but this new look is on another level. The beautician also cries with joy because she believes she has achieved something no one else could. She excitedly shakes Diren and says Ethan God will surely be impressed by her masterpiece. She even says she must have been born to become a hairdresser for this very day. Then, she begs her to call only her whenever he needs another haircut because if another hairdresser touches his hair, she might end up killing them. At this point, she is treating that haircut like the greatest work of her life. While the two keep talking, they completely fail to notice Ceres standing behind them. Wanting the conversation to end, he simply agrees with her request. Even then, she still asks if there is anywhere else he wants trimmed and whether he likes his hair. He walks to the mirror, freezes after seeing himself, and quietly says he does not want to do it anymore. However, she mistakes that as him being satisfied. She then points out that he looks far more handsome than the image she had imagined before, leaving Diren confused. That reminds her of the earlier question about what style she wanted him to have, and she had answered that she wanted him to look like a kind-hearted young lord. The beautician explains that he already has a neat look, while his hair also seems to have been dyed with a light polish. That completely shocks Diren, who immediately asks Ceres if he dyed his hair. He replies that he is not sure because he usually shaves it due to heavy hair growth. The beautician becomes confused and asks if shaving was necessary because he served in the army. However, she quickly changes the subject because that is not the real problem. Instead, she explains that he simply received many treatments at once. Deep down, she knows she cannot allow anyone to discover that he belongs to the 8th Battalion, because if rumors spread, the beautician could lose her life. As she escorts her out, she still asks why she believes he dyed his hair. The woman explains that his hair is completely black without any lighter shade, even under bright light, while naturally dark hair usually shows a different color in sunlight. However, he insists it has always been pitch black. She also adds that dyeing hair was once a popular trend among young lords around his age. That finally puts Diren's mind at ease because she realizes the beautician does not suspect anything strange. After the beautician leaves, Diren cannot shake the feeling that something is still wrong. She remembers everything she learned about the spell on Ceres. According to the book, the head is a very sensitive place, and any spell cast there could easily fail or become dangerous. However, she cannot find anything about his situation. She also knows divine power can be dangerous, yet all she can do is gently tap his head. She even wonders if the spell was mistakenly placed on his hair instead of his head. Just then, the beautician mentions one last thing, explaining that hair coloring usually damages the scalp, but for some reason his scalp looks perfectly healthy, so he never has to worry about losing his hair. Diren realizes that such healthy hair is a huge advantage, and she even thinks people would probably become jealous if they found out. She also learns that his hair grows very fast, and that he will likely need a haircut every single week, which she accepts. Soon after, the beautician nervously asks if she can take a day off the following week. That surprises our girl, although she has no problem with it. She simply asks if something special is happening, and the woman happily reveals that she wants to attend the upcoming birthday festival of the 2nd Imperial Prince. Diren immediately gives her permission and says she only needs to return for one day to cut Ceres' hair anyway. In return, the beautician happily promises to bring her a gift. That conversation makes Diren realize that festivals have become very rare because of the ongoing war. She also finds it strange that people are celebrating the prince's birthday, but not the Imperial Foundation Day. The beautician explains that the festival will last for a whole week, and that nothing like this has happened in years. As she keeps talking, Diren's thoughts drift away. She remembers that, as a child, her parents never took her to festivals. Later, after arriving at the temple, festival season always became the busiest time, so she never had the chance to enjoy one. After saying goodbye, the beautician heads back to her room. Meanwhile, Diren realizes she cannot look forward to something when she has no idea what to expect. She then turns to Ceres and explains that the other workers will probably take time off for the same reason, so she needs to speak with Robin about it. She also realizes he will have to meet many new people throughout the week, so everyone should be given permission to leave whenever possible because the treatments already exhaust him enough. She gently strokes his forehead, says he must still be tired from the previous day's session, and praises him for enduring it. She then tells him they will continue with his skincare the next day, just as they always do. Since the haircut, which worried her the most, goes well, she becomes sure that everything else will be much easier. However, although she believes she will complete every mission given to her, it already feels like life has completely different plans waiting ahead. Something tells me this is only the calm before the storm. We are then introduced to Ceres' skincare therapist, Chanel, as she politely introduces herself. She explains that she heard he is sensitive to sound, so she promises to be extra careful not to make too much noise. She also tells Diren that although she has been taking care of him all this time, everyone is now here to help reduce her workload. Diren quickly realizes that this new worker is just as perfect as the cook, although in a completely different way. She thanks her and says she looks forward to working with her. In return, Chanel says she should be the one giving thanks, and Diarin prays that God stays with her. As they prepare to begin, our female lead quietly watches the therapist and thinks that if she suddenly tried to touch Ceres, things could go very wrong. However, after seeing how calm and gentle she is, she decides to let everything happen naturally, because forcing him into a proper noble posture could only create more trouble. We also get to know that she intentionally lets him sit the way he normally does. Although that posture is better for his back, it does not make him look noble. As soon as he hears someone arrive, he quietly sits up anyway, even though he is still tired from the previous day and does not show it. She decides that if anything happens, she will simply explain that he can be a little childish sometimes. Even so, she still worries about whether everything will go well. We are then shown a flashback of her helping him get dressed before the appointment. She asks if he is really ready because the person coming is a skincare therapist who will be touching parts of his body every morning and evening. Ceres calmly replies that everything will be fine and promises to report anything strange immediately. That answer relieves her because she believes that if he survives every treatment before this one, then he can surely get through skincare as well. Soon after, Chanel politely asks if she can examine his skin, but he refuses to move and remains on Diarin's lap. Then, the therapist suddenly notices something that surprises her, making everyone else wonder if something is wrong. However, she quickly explains that the only problem is that there is no problem at all. His skin is already so smooth that she does not even know what treatment to give him. She says she was told he had never received skincare before, and politely asks if she can touch his skin for just a moment. Although he clearly looks uncomfortable, he stays silent. She gently says she understands his feelings and asks him to think of her as a light priest instead of another person. Diarin notices how quietly Chanel moves because she can barely even hear her footsteps. For a moment, strange thoughts enter her mind, and she even wonders if the therapist could secretly be an assassin. However, she immediately pushes that thought away because if that were true, Ceres would have smelled blood on her already. I won't lie, that thought would have crossed my mind too. After brushing those worries aside, Diarin gently encourages Ceres to stand so Chanel can do her job. Although he looks annoyed, he gets up and stands in front of the therapist. Instead of touching him immediately, she politely asks for permission and requests his hand, which surprises him because he believes she does not need permission to do her work. Chanel even calls him a cute puppy, while our female lead realizes this is the perfect chance to see if he can stop himself from biting whenever a stranger touches him. The moment the therapist reaches for his hand, she can do nothing but pray that a disaster does not happen. Fortunately, everything goes smoothly. When asked how he feels, Ceres quietly admits that he does not feel uncomfortable at all. Diarin feels incredibly proud because he stays calm even while a stranger is touching him, proving just how much progress he has made. Although he seems unusual at first, Chanel never judges him. Instead, she always asks before doing anything. She then asks if he would like to try some skincare products. He simply freezes and turns toward Diarin because she has always been the one making decisions for him. She realizes she only did that because she wanted to avoid making him answer every question, but she also knows she cannot keep doing it forever. After all, Ceres is the one who has to become a noble, not her. Therefore, she gives him a thumbs up and tells him the choice is his. Completely shocked because he has never made this kind of decision before, he quietly says that he wants to try it. Chanel gently tells him there is no need to decide immediately because she will be staying at the manor, and he can call for her whenever he wants. Even so, after he looks back at Diarin, she encourages him to give it a try now because she knows he is only anxious about what will happen. She promises to stay beside him the whole time. At last, he agrees, and the therapist assures him that she will make sure he stays comfortable. She also tells Diarin that she is welcome to remain with them, making our girl happy. Chanel then begins the skincare treatment by placing a warm towel on him. Diarin notices that the warmth feels just right, and she quietly praises Ceres because he is doing even better than she expected. She feels she is truly turning him into a noble, although seeing everyone taking care of him still feels strange. Part of her even feels like she should simply leave him there and walk away. Even so, she asks how it feels to be the center of attention now that everyone is looking after him. Ceres honestly admits that he does not know how it feels, so she gently tells him that he will understand with time. She quickly explains that she is only asking about the warm towel and nothing else. Since all these feelings are still new to him, he quietly wonders what he truly feels. Finally, she places her hand on his chest and reminds him that he should always speak up whenever there is something he does not like. Little does she know that she will end up repeating those same words to him again and again in the future. Watching him slowly learn to make his own choices is honestly so satisfying. Chanel soon takes Ceres into the bathroom for his skincare, while Diarin waits outside because she knows they need to build trust. Even so, she cannot stop wondering what is happening inside. She calls out to the therapist asking if she should come in, but the request is politely refused. The therapist explains that it is not proper for people to follow others into the bath and assures her that she will never leave him alone during the treatment, so there is nothing to worry about. She even laughs and tells Diarin to call her if she needs anything. However, our girl is not really worried about Ceres. Instead, she is worried about Chanel. Before the door fully closes, she reminds her that no matter how small the problem is, she must call her immediately. She keeps telling herself to stay calm because she cannot see what is happening inside, yet she still cannot stop worrying. Soon, we return to the present and find Dairin pacing back and forth outside the bathroom while patiently waiting. Suddenly, she hears a noise from inside and immediately rushes toward the door. Just before opening it, she realizes she never heard any sounds of struggling. Instead, she only heard Ceres calmly saying no. She forces herself to relax because she knows this is all part of the process. She decides to trust the mad dog and believes everything will be all right. As she listens from outside, she hears Chanel apologizing because she only wanted to help him remove his clothes. But he refused. After hearing that, Dairin quietly leans against the door and listens to the rest of their conversation. Before long, everything becomes completely quiet, leaving her surprised because she realizes he might actually be listening to someone else. She never imagined the day would come when he would follow another person's instructions after everything she has gone through with him. However, just when she starts feeling relieved, a loud no suddenly echoes through the room and nearly gives her a headache. Chanel calmly tells Ceres that if he dislikes her hands, she can use cotton instead. That completely surprises Dairin because she has never dealt with someone like him before. She realizes he is becoming very worked up, so she decides that if he says no one more time, she will step in. Just then, the bathroom door opens, and poor Chanel politely asks if she can help for a moment. At this point, I would have been standing by that door too. Of course, Dairin immediately agrees because helping is the exact reason she has been waiting outside. The therapist nervously admits that she is not sure the treatment can continue today, but she reassures her that this is not the first time something like this has happened. Then, Chanel hesitates before asking if she can borrow Dairin's hands. She is happy at first, but her expression quickly changes after realizing what that request actually means. The therapist explains that Ceres seems to like her hands more, so she wants her to help with the skincare routine. She says it is her responsibility to make his skin shine, but he simply does not like her touch. She even suggests that Dairin's healing powers may work better for him. Our girl becomes confused because he has been washing himself ever since she taught him how, so she has never needed to help him before. Now she is suddenly being asked to do it herself. She cannot help wondering why she always ends up doing the hardest work. Even so, she smiles and tells Chanel that he will slowly get used to her. Hearing that, the therapist quickly covers her mouth and begs her not to say such things because they could cause trouble. Dairin is completely confused, and Chanel explains that she should never expect customers to get used to service workers. Instead, service workers should only care about making their customers comfortable. Our girl cannot help smiling after hearing such perfect manners and finally agrees to help. Chanel tells her that she is free to refuse, but if she does, they will have to end today's treatment and find another assistant. Dairin quietly realizes why people at the front of the service industry are respected so much. She then notices that Ceres is still in shock and suggests ending the session for the day, which the therapist happily accepts. She promises to calm him down while Chanel says goodbye and leaves. As soon as Dairin enters the bathroom, Ceres immediately calms down after seeing her. If he really had a tail, it would probably be wagging nonstop because he looks so happy to see her. She realizes he must have hated the treatment and walks over to clean the bath oil from his chest so she can help him put on his gown properly. Suddenly, he jumps out of the water and hugs her tightly. She can only blush and smile because she misses her chance to avoid the hug and ends up completely soaked. She gently calls his name and asks if he is all right, then tells him to let go so they can leave the bathroom. However, he refuses to release her. She starts wondering if he is silently blaming her for making him go through something he hated. She asks why he disliked the treatment so much. He simply thinks about Chanel. She then asks if he does not like her and whether she should find someone else instead. When she asks if he dislikes being touched, he agrees. Even so, she gently explains that if he truly wants to become a noble, he will have to get used to people touching him because he cannot avoid everything he dislikes. Even after hearing that, he continues holding on to her for comfort, like the respectful little puppy he has become. Meanwhile, Dairin can only wonder what she should do next. Before long, a new day begins, and we find our determined girl already preparing a weapon of her own. Something tells me whatever she is planning next is going to be interesting. After everything that happened, Dairin spends the previous night talking with Ceres about the incident. She asks once again if he dislikes it whenever other people touch him. Then she suddenly asks what would happen if both she and someone else touched him at the same time. That question leaves him completely speechless. She gently reassures him that everything will be all right and patiently calms him down. She then suggests that it may be easier if both she and Chanel touch him together during the treatment. Ceres honestly admits that he does not know, but she excitedly says they are about to find out because she believes everything will be fine. Deep down, she plans to hold his hand the entire time, so scrubbing him will become much easier. We can also tell she has made up her mind that she will not back down no matter what. Before long, Chanel arrives and politely greets Dairin, saying she is happy to work with her today. She awkwardly returns the greeting, although she secretly hopes the therapist does not make her work harder than she is already supposed to. At the same time, Chanel also looks determined and promises to give it everything she has. The two then shake hands as if they are about to enter a battle together. Soon, they somehow convince Ceres to enter the bathroom, while Dairin firmly holds his hand. The therapist explains that she has prepared a smaller bathtub for him, and gently asks how he feels. She then says she is about to apply some oil to help him relax. Our girl wonders why Chanel keeps directing those questions at her, but she quickly remembers that the therapist believes Ceres is simply a timid and shy young lord because of their earlier conversation. Chanel also explains that she often deals with shy people and that all they usually need is a little encouragement. However, Diren points out that it is not that he dislikes her. Instead, he only said her touch makes him nervous, which is why she is standing beside him and holding his hand. Chanel thinks that is a wonderful idea, because a familiar touch can make someone feel much safer. With that settled, she finally begins the treatment. The moment she reaches out, Ceres immediately squeezes Diren's hand tightly, although she is too focused on watching the therapist to notice. Fortunately, Chanel successfully places her hand on him and gently rubs the oil onto his skin. I have to admit, this plan actually works better than I expected. A few moments later, both Chanel and Diren are left staring in complete shock because Ceres's skin shines even brighter than before. Then, his bathrobe suddenly slips off, revealing his body. Even the bathrobe seems unhappy about falling off, almost as if it wishes someone else had become its owner before realizing it was always meant to be taken off. As it falls into the water, it even seems to regret not understanding that sooner and jokingly wishes it could have seen his body from the front instead. Meanwhile, the two girls cannot take their eyes off him. Diren cannot believe everything has gone this smoothly because he gets through the entire session with almost no noise at all. Chanel eventually finishes applying the oil and says the only thing left is to move him to the massage bed. Just then, she remembers that she has to pick up a bottle that fell on the floor. Diren immediately offers to get it instead. However, Ceres suddenly stands up. The therapist quickly realizes she should have covered him before he moved because Diren is a priest. Meanwhile, our girl cannot help thinking that she has already seen many naked men before, so why should this be any different? However, she quickly realizes Ceres is completely different from everyone else she has seen, and that is exactly why her heart starts beating so fast. As Chanel continues admiring his body, Diren even wonders if the therapist has fallen in love with him, thinking that worrying about something so innocent would actually be nice. Suddenly, Ceres tells her to be quiet, and a dark aura immediately surrounds him. That frightens the therapist so much that she quickly turns away, apologizes, and says she will prepare everything right away. Diren gently tries to calm him, saying they can stop for the day if everything has become too much. Even though he keeps staring at her, she realizes there is nothing she can do. Chanel soon breaks the silence again by asking if he would like to lie down on the massage bed. Although everything around him feels loud and strange, he still tries to stay calm and walks toward it. Diren notices something feels wrong and asks if he is all right, once again telling him they can stop if he is too tired. However, just as she walks toward the mad dog, she accidentally slips on the fallen bottle and falls into the bathtub he has just stepped out of. Everyone is completely shocked. Without wasting a second, Ceres catches her in time and immediately asks if she is all right. She quickly assures him that she is fine and tells him not to worry, while he remains terrified because it looks like his caretaker has been hurt. Seeing him panic over her really shows how much he has changed. As Diren continues lying on the floor, she suddenly starts feeling something strange all around her. However, the moment Ceres moves closer to help her, every strange feeling disappears. She can clearly hear his heartbeat pounding loudly at such a close distance. Even though her vision is narrow and she cannot see much, she realizes everything is fine. Suddenly, he interrupts the moment by saying that he has detected an abnormality. Confused, she asks what he means. He points out that her body has become too red and asks if everything has become too noisy for her. Without waiting for an answer, he hugs her tightly and gently assures her that everything is all right and that there is no danger anymore. After hearing her heart beating so fast, he pulls her even closer and continues telling her that she is safe. Diren then asks if he feels calm now, leaving both him and Chanel completely surprised. The therapist can do nothing but quietly stand there and watch the two of them. Before long, she snaps out of it and apologizes, saying she should have been the one to pick up the bottle of oil. A few days pass after that incident, and we soon realize that Chanel has finally adjusted to Ceres because he no longer struggles during his skincare sessions. Whether he is completely uncovered or wrapped from head to toe, she calmly carries on with her work. Diren notices that the therapist has become used to his body and cannot help admiring how skilled she is. Even so, another problem starts bothering her. As time goes on, she realizes Chanel keeps becoming colder and colder. Before, she always seemed like the kindest person in the room. Now it feels like she has simply given up, probably because of Ceres' difficult behavior. Even so, our girl is happy that he has finally become more comfortable around her. She also wishes the therapist would show him a little more affection because she believes she has trained her puppy well. She even wants to tell her not to dislike him, but she knows she cannot. Then, after looking at his face, she realizes he actually prefers being treated coldly instead of being fussed over, so she decides to keep quiet. Once another session ends, she thinks about asking Chanel why she has been acting differently, but decides to leave with Ceres instead. However, she also feels bad about leaving the therapist like that and thinks they should talk during dinner. Just then, Chanel calls Diren's name. She turns around in surprise, only to see the sad expression on the therapist's face suddenly change into a smile as she simply thanks her for all her help. That leaves our girl completely speechless. She then asks Ceres to wait for her in his room. Naturally, he does not understand why she wants him to leave. To Diren, he looks just like a lost little puppy who does not want to be alone anymore. She knows it is not easy for him, but she gently pushes him toward the door anyway, promising she will join him soon and asking him to be patient. Once the door closes, she finally breathes a sigh of relief, because now she can get to the real conversation. That puppy comparison somehow fits him perfectly. She finally asks Chanel if there is something she truly wants to say. The therapist happily admits that Diren has read her mind and then surprises her by asking if she can offer her a massage while they talk. She explains that she still has plenty of ingredients left, so using them on Diren's small body would not be difficult. However, our girl quickly refuses because she is a priestess. As she stands there without knowing what else to say, Chanel gently keeps persuading her, explaining that she simply wants to take care of someone who always works so hard. Diren remembers being taught that priests should live with honesty, care less about appearance, and always show love. Before she even realizes it, she finds herself lying on the massage bed, convincing herself that she is still a good customer because she already paid before the treatment started. During the massage, Chanel reveals that she received this job because she is the best therapist around and that if she performs well, she could even become the exclusive therapist for the imperial family. Hearing that immediately gets Diren's attention. The therapist then finally opens up about what has been bothering her. She explains that what frustrates her the most is when nobles are unhappy but refuse to say anything, and that is exactly how Ceres behaves. She says she does not mind being treated like a servant, but the real problem is that he does not even treat her like a person. Diren quickly defends him by saying he has never been good with words, but Chanel gently dismisses that excuse and says she is simply too kind to him. She then shares one incident where she tried to drink some water during the night, only for him to silently take it away and tell her not to drink it. While preparing the next ingredient, she continues talking about that strange moment. As she gets ready to apply it to Diren's face, our girl realizes that anyone would naturally misunderstand him, because nobody would ever guess he only stopped her because the sound of drinking water was too loud for him. Chanel then reveals that she is not the only one with stories like that. The hairdresser told her something similar, and so did the cook and one of the guards. Instead of becoming upset, Diren starts crying tears of joy because her puppy manages to handle all those situations without hurting anyone. She is even happier because everyone now talks about him as a person, including the therapist, although she still admits he can be a complete troublemaker. Chanel immediately worries that she has gone too far and asks if Diren is all right. She simply smiles and says they are colleagues, so it is only natural to share their worries. Deep inside, she cannot stop feeling happy because everyone keeps talking about her puppy. After finishing the massage, Chanel compliments her beautiful skin and says, "It is a shame it is always hidden beneath her priestess clothes." Diren quietly realizes why she is always the best at her job, because she never forgets to flatter her customers. As she looks into the mirror, she cannot stop admiring her own beauty because she has never enjoyed anything like this before. While the therapist proudly praises her own work, Diren can only keep staring at her reflection. Meanwhile, Ceres waits alone in his room, patiently waiting for his caretaker to return. Poor guy is probably counting every second until she comes back. We see Diren deciding that it is finally time to teach Ceres the difference between humans and animals. She patiently explains that if he wants to live like a person, then he also needs to speak like one, and he quietly agrees. She knows that he still sounds like a dog that only barks, yet she simply smiles because everyone has to start somewhere. At the same time, we get to know that his bad reputation has already spread through the entire manor, from the beautician to the chef, and now even the therapist. To everyone else, he looks like a picky and aggressive lord who treats people like bugs. However, she now understands that those people only see the outside because they do not know what he has been through. She knows she cannot let him enter noble society like that. Although becoming less sensitive will take time, she decides to teach him how to speak properly first. Since he is already getting better at writing letters, they move on to language lessons. Even though she is not an expert in noble society, and only knows the manners taught to a princess rather than the etiquette nobles use among themselves, she knows she still has to do her best. She never thought it was her place to teach him these things, but she decides to at least give him the basics. She begins teaching him how to read, and the mad dog follows every word exactly as she says it. I really like how patient she is here. She continues reading a story about a small village woman named Mary. However, when the story reaches a confusing sentence, he suddenly stops. She asks if he does not understand it, but he only stands there. He tries repeating the sentence, yet fails, while she also struggles to explain it to someone as stiff as him. Consequently, Diren decides that the best way to teach him is to show him instead of only using words. She grabs Ceres like a child and takes him outside to the garden. As they arrive, she happily praises the gardeners for taking such good care of the place, while she has been busy looking after him. Meanwhile, he simply stands there without knowing what to say. She begins complimenting the flowers and decides to teach him their names. Before long, they stop in front of a beautiful rose bush, and she wonders when the gardeners managed to create something so lovely. She explains that it is called a rose bush, and he understands right away. As he quietly stares at the flowers, he wonders why they are so attractive. She happily asks if they are pretty, and he finally answers by calling them pretty. She quickly tells him that those are exactly the right words to use in that moment. However, he suddenly says that flowers do not last long. He explains that anything that cannot move dies easily, because it cannot grow unless it leaves, and after carefully putting his thoughts together, he concludes that the roses seem peaceful. That answer is a lot deeper than I expected from him. We see Vivian noticing the look on Peter's face and quickly realizing that he finally understands the feeling she has been trying to explain. She asks if he gets it now, and he quietly agrees while admiring the beautiful roses. However, she suddenly remembers that his eyes are probably very sensitive and immediately asks if they hurt. She apologizes for not thinking about that sooner, but he calmly tells her that it is fine and that no real harm was done. As he keeps blinking, tears suddenly begin to fall from his eyes. This completely shocks her because she has no idea why it is happening. Without thinking twice, she gently pats his cheek to comfort him, even though she still does not know the cause. He finally explains that his eyes sting. She is surprised to hear that, but also points out that he is already looking at the ground instead of the sky. She asks if they still sting just as much, and then realizes that he is probably extremely sensitive to sunlight because he used to carry out his missions at night. Consequently, she immediately decides that they should return to the manor and gently drags him back through the garden. She really notices even the smallest changes in him, and I like that. After that day, we get to know that Peter's vocabulary improves greatly. Moreover, he is finally able to write properly and express what he wants to say. Although the way he speaks is still a little strange, he is now making clear progress, and it becomes obvious that all of Vivian's patient teaching is slowly paying off. Watching him improve little by little is honestly very satisfying. As the days pass, Siri's vocabulary improves at a shocking speed. Not long ago, his emotional range was basically limited to things like it, hate it, don't do it, and yes. But now, thanks to Dairin reading books to him every day, he is learning much faster than anyone expected. The only problem is that nobody can predict what will come out of his mouth next. One day, the two are sitting at the dining table when Sirius picks up a cookie, takes a bite, and proudly announces that it is chocolate and sweet. Dairin immediately praises him, feeling proud of his progress. Unfortunately, that feeling lasts only a few seconds. Without warning, Ceres calmly adds that it is sweet, just like the smell behind Dairin's ears. Our girl is instantly horrified. Why would he even smell there? But to him, the answer is simple. He is a dog. Of course he can smell it. Dairin desperately tells him to just pretend he cannot. Meanwhile, Ceres lets out a sigh like he is the one suffering and explains that she simply does not understand. It is a nice smell. There is no point talking about it. Somehow, what should have been a compliment ends up feeling like an insult. Dairin tries convincing herself that he is still learning words and is only using familiar things to describe food. Surely it will stop soon, right? Unfortunately, several days later, the nightmare continues. While eating cheesecake together, Ceres casually announces that the cake smells sweet, just like Dairin's body. At this point, she plants a hand on his head and firmly reminds him that she already told him not to do that. She has scolded him, coaxed him, explained it over and over, yet nothing works. Even worse, every time he compares food to her, her appetite disappears. Looking at the expensive cheesecake, she practically begs her appetite not to run away. That dessert costs more than a whole week's worth of food for her. She cannot afford to waste it. Determined to fix this strange habit, Dairin brings out another dish and gives him a challenge. This time, he must describe the taste without mentioning her name. The cook has been pouring all her effort into new recipes lately, and even Dairin has no idea what this dish tastes like. Maybe something unfamiliar will help him learn new words. Ceres stares at the platter, cuts off a piece, and starts eating. Dairin waits eagerly for his answer, and waits, and waits. Then suddenly, inspiration strikes. According to Ceres, the dish tastes like fermented poop. Dairin is so shocked she immediately wonders if this man has actually tasted poop before. She tries correcting him, insisting he should not describe food that way just because he is in a bad mood. Calm down and try again. Sadly, the second attempt changes nothing. It still tastes like fermented poop. Even worse, when she asks how he would know what poop tastes like, he casually explains that it was necessary to learn what the enemy had eaten. Before he can continue, Dairin practically begs him to stop talking. At this point, she is suffering mental damage just imagining it. Still, a dangerous thought creeps into her mind. What if he is actually right? Maybe she should test it herself. Gathering her courage, she cuts off a tiny piece and prepares for disaster. Meanwhile, Ceres suddenly changes his opinion and remarks that it smells pretty normal, sweet and tasty. Confused but determined, Dairin finally takes a bite. She braces herself for the worst, and then freezes. To her complete surprise, the food is actually sweet and delicious. After all that horrifying buildup, after all the talk about fermented poop, the dish turns out to be perfectly good. And just like that, Ceres once again proves that even though his vocabulary is improving, nobody on Earth is ready for whatever comes out of his mouth next. As soon as Dairin insists that the food does not taste like poop, Ceres pouts and grabs her hand. Then, with complete sincerity, he says he respects her taste for poop. And honestly, that almost breaks her. Our girl is suddenly emotional because her puppy has learned new words like taste and respect. Look at him growing up. But even while feeling touched, she quickly pulls her hand away and makes one thing very clear. No matter how sweet the moment is, she absolutely does not have a taste for poop. Then she tries another angle, reasoning that maybe everyone simply has different preferences, or maybe something is wrong with Siri's taste buds. Unfortunately, Sirius refuses to back down. There is nothing wrong with him physically. He is completely confident in his judgment. So Diarin decides to settle it once and for all by asking other people to try the dessert. The results are immediate and completely chaotic. One person happily declares that the pie is delicious, while another takes a bite and immediately recoils, asking if stale ingredients were used. What is this even supposed to taste like? Without hesitation, Ceres answers, fermented poop. And to everyone's shock, the woman practically lights up with relief. Exactly. That is what it tastes like. She has never eaten fermented poop before, but somehow that description feels perfectly right. Meanwhile, Diarin and the woman who actually likes the dessert can only stare in disbelief. How can anyone describe food that way just because they dislike it? The cook would be devastated. Instead, the unhappy taster bows towards Ceres and thanks him for the accurate description. She even admits she would have gone crazy if she had been the only one who felt that way. Naturally, Ceres agrees. The two instantly form a strange bond over their shared opinion. Meanwhile, Diarin can only groan internally. The real problem is no longer the dessert. The real problem is manners, refinement, and proper behavior in high society. Then the cook arrives to explain everything. Apparently, the dessert contains a special ingredient called runjo from the edge of the continent. People who enjoy it taste savory cheese, fresh mushrooms, and a sweet honey finish. Those who dislike it? Well, they say it tastes like fermented poop. The cook delivers this explanation with perfect elegance before casually laughing while saying fermented poop. Ceres immediately confirms that the description is correct, while the woman who hated the dessert feels completely vindicated. At this point, Diarin realizes something unexpected. Ceres' reputation has changed. He is no longer just the rude young lord. Now he is becoming known as the man honest enough to call something poop when it tastes like poop. And strangely enough, people respect that honesty. Then another thought suddenly hits her. If Ceres is so accurate about smells, what about those comments he keeps making? Immediately, she turns to Miss Chanel and asks the most embarrassing question imaginable. Does she smell like cheesecake behind her ears? Poor Chanel has absolutely no idea what she is talking about. Later, after discussing things with Lord Robin, a decision is made. Everyone in the manor will take a vacation. Ceres has been studying, learning, and meeting people nonstop. He needs time to relax and become less sensitive to everything around him. Diarin has also been exhausted from constantly living under pressure as a priestess. She should be happy about the break. She really should. Yet as she waves everyone goodbye, a sealed envelope rests quietly in her hand. Instead of excitement, only reluctance fills her heart. Because despite the vacation ahead, Diarin does not want to go. Outside, Ceres stands there with a gloomy face, clearly unhappy about what is happening. Seeing that, Diarin gently takes his hands and tries to comfort him. She reminds him of what she told him before, and when he answers that she has to go so she can be with him, she cannot help but smile. Exactly. The truth is, she does not want to leave either. She would much rather stay right where she is. However, sometimes people have to do things they dislike. She explains that he has gone through that before too. Now that he can understand his own feelings better, it only makes those situations harder. Still, sometimes you have to endure things you hate for the sake of the things you love. Ceres immediately complains that he does not like training, earning a laugh from Diarin. She agrees, but reminds him that he still has to do it. Then she opens the letter that caused all this trouble in the first place. It is a summons from the temple during her upcoming vacation. The sender is none other than the chief priestess herself. Inside, the message is simple. Come and visit. And honestly, Diarin could not be less excited. She is perfectly fine where she is, so why does she have to go? In her heart, she is practically begging not to be dragged there, but no matter how much she protests, the decision has already been made. Before leaving, she gives Ceres one last set of instructions. Stay in her room, stay still. If assassins come, let the guards deal with them. Do not leave the manor under any circumstances. After he nods obediently, she praises him and finally turns to leave. Meanwhile, Ceres is left standing there looking lonely, while Diarin climbs into the carriage with a heavy heart. She keeps thinking about how much he resisted when she tried explaining that she would leave and return soon. All he could say was, no, no, no. And honestly, it is not just difficult to leave him behind. She is worried too. The guards have already told her that assassins targeting Ceres are more common than she realized. Thankfully, they never let any of them get inside the manor. They even gave up their own vacation to stay and protect him. They assured her that they are always prepared because such attacks happen often. Remembering their confidence helps a little, but not enough. As the carriage rolls away, her worries only grow. What if he gets hurt? What if something goes wrong? Maybe she is making too much of it, but she cannot stop herself. Deep down, she knows that one day she will have to let him go. She is a servant of God, while Ceres is a noble lord. Their paths are not meant to stay together forever. Just imagining that future already makes her chest feel empty. Eventually, the carriage arrives at the manor of the chief priestess. The moment Diarin enters, she is greeted with warm words. The chief priestess praises her devotion and says she has heard how faithfully she has been serving God. As expected, Diarin humbly answers that she is simply following God's will. But then the chief priestess continues, saying that while everyone follows God's will, some do so more devotedly than others. And just like that, alarm bells start ringing in Diarin's head. Something feels off. She cannot figure out what the woman wants, but she knows there is something beneath all this praise. The chief priestess rises from her chair and politely invites her to sit, offering tea and thanking her for coming such a long way on such short notice. To an outsider, it looks like a friendly visit between neighbors. To Diarin, however, it feels suspiciously calm compared to the battles she usually faces. As she takes her seat, the chief priestess moves closer and continues showering her with compliments. She says she always knew Diarin would do an excellent job. God chose her for this task, and she never doubted her ability to see it through. She even admits she is proud of how Diarin upheld God's name under such difficult circumstances. Yet instead of feeling honored, Diarin remains guarded. Every word makes her wonder what is really coming next. Keeping her expression calm, she simply replies that she was only following his guidance. But inside, she cannot shake the feeling that this conversation is heading somewhere she may not like at all. Diarin sits across from the chief priestess, listening to all the praise being thrown her way. Normally, this would be the perfect chance to squeeze out a few extra rewards, but honestly, her mind is somewhere else entirely. She just wants to get back to the manor. Still, when the chief priestess talks about how much God has provided, Diarin immediately picks up on what she really means and casually asks if they received a lot of donations. The reaction is instant. A cough. A dodge. A refusal to answer directly. That alone tells her everything. So she goes straight for the target and asks if the money came from the third imperial prince. The chief priestess is visibly caught off guard, and that confirms it. After all, he had promised support before. Of course he would be involved. The chief priestess quickly recovers and praises the prince for understanding God's will before turning the conversation back to Diarin. She wants her to continue her work, slowly and steadily, until God's will is fulfilled perfectly. But Diarin sees right through it. In her mind, the meaning is crystal clear. The investor is happy, the money is flowing, and now they want her to keep handling the so-called mad dog and killing machine for a very, very long time. She almost laughs at the absurdity of it. Still smiling politely, she plays along and says she would love to continue serving God's will. Unfortunately, though, the human body is weak and needs support. In other words, our girl is asking for a bonus. Thankfully, the message lands perfectly. The chief priestess immediately agrees and promises the temple will provide proper support. But just when it looks like the discussion is ending, Diarin drops another request. She wants access to the Hall of Magic. The chief priestess freezes for a moment. This is no ordinary library. It is filled with spells capable of performing miracles without divine power. Anyone can use them, which is exactly why access is heavily restricted. If everybody could perform miracles, people would stop depending on the temple. In other words, this hall is one of the temple's biggest sources of power and income. Naturally, the chief priestess becomes suspicious. Diarin already has a reputation for negotiating money and promotions. Who knows what she might do with access to valuable spells? But Diarin calmly explains that she found traces of magic used on the warrior and needs to investigate. If necessary, she can even bring him to the temple. The moment she hears that, the chief priestess changes her tune completely and grants permission. Meanwhile, Diarin feels strangely disappointed. After all, her puppy does not even bite anymore. She had almost hoped for a chance to show off how much Ceres has changed. Then again, she decides it is better to wait. One day she will present a proper, final, ultimate, well-mannered lord, and the chief priestess will be completely shocked. With her bonus secured and permission granted, she leaves the meeting behind. Yet as she walks away, the chief priestess can only stare after her and think that Diarin's nerve has grown bolder than ever. Meanwhile, Diarin follows the doorkeeper toward the Hall of Magic, completely focused on her goal. She does not care how it sounds. Threat, promise, or obsession, it does not matter. She is going to fix her puppy's head no matter what. Finally, they arrive before the massive door. The doorkeeper unlocks 5 separate padlocks and opens them with a spell before giving a final warning to follow every rule. Diarin agrees without hesitation. Then the doors slowly open, revealing the place she has been seeking all this time. For the first time, she gazes into the Hall of Magic and realizes she has finally made it inside. Inside the Hall of Magic, Diarin quickly realizes the place is not nearly as impressive as she imagined. Looking around at the shelves, she notices that many of them are completely empty and can't help feeling disappointed. Is that all? Still, she gets to work and starts searching through the books. Her target is clear: memory-related magic. Unfortunately, after checking around, she comes to an annoying conclusion. Those spells are not here at all. They must only be available at the main temple. Well, that means she will have to ask Lord Robin for help later. Even so, our girl is not about to leave empty-handed. Since she is already here, she figures she might as well find a few useful spells that could make her some money. And, because she is so smart, maybe she will accidentally memorize them while reading. What a tragedy, right? Before long, she is happily flipping through books. A spell to remove scars? That sounds profitable. Hair dyeing magic? Maybe that could even be useful for Ceres. Hours pass, and when she finally leaves, she feels very satisfied. Her purse is heavier with money, and her head is packed with new spells. Honestly, that sounds like a perfect day to her. As she walks through the market, she overhears a priest and priestess discussing festival preparations, taking bread orders, and checking wine stock. Hearing them reminds her that if she had not been assigned to Ceres, she would probably be working through the night helping with the festival. Instead, she gets to enjoy a rare moment of peace. Peace of mind, even if it came at the cost of putting her life on the line. Looking up at the bright sky, she smiles. The weather is beautiful, everything seems to be going smoothly, and maybe, just maybe, Ceres is doing well too. For once, it feels difficult to be in a bad mood. Then, because she decides she can afford one day without constant worry, she does something completely unnecessary. She asks the coachman to take a detour through 3rd Street, one of the liveliest places in the Empire during the festival. However, while passing through the area, something catches her eye. Suddenly, she asks the coachman to stop. The carriage comes to a halt in front of Baron Braddon's house. Standing there, Diren is reminded of something she often forgets. As a priestess, she wears the same robes and eats the same food as everyone else, so it is easy to overlook just how poor her family really is. Not ordinary poor, debt poor. Taking a breath, she steps inside and calls out for her mother. The moment her mother sees her, she drops the fabric she is sewing and rushes over with joy. She calls Diren her little princess and asks how she has been. After embracing her daughter, she immediately worries about her safety, relieved to hear that the war is over and that Diren no longer has to go to the battlefield. To her, nothing matters more than knowing her daughter is healthy and alive. Then, as if she cannot help herself, she starts complaining about Diren's older brother. If only he were half as capable as his sister, she jokes. She would send him off to do something useful and earn some merit. Instead, he is far too fussy and cannot even seem to sit comfortably anywhere. And just like that, after a day filled with spells, money, festivals, and worries about Ceres, Diren finds herself back where it all began, with family, warmth, and a mother who still sees her as her precious little princess. Diren can only laugh bitterly inside. Her brother is a noble simply because he was born into the family, while she, the daughter, has spent her whole life learning how to sit anywhere and endure anything. Their family became barons generations ago after their great-grandfather discovered poison in a well, but after that, nothing. No wealth, no great achievements, no special talent. Just a title hanging by a thread. Normally, a noble house that accomplishes nothing for 5 generations loses its status, but military achievements can keep a family afloat. Her mother is right when she says health and safety matter most, yet Diren can still hear the regret hidden beneath those words. She knows exactly what her mother wants. Holding the heavy purse behind her back, she gently says there are still many ways to make a name for the family, even after the war. Instantly, her mother relaxes and sighs with relief. Then comes the complaint that Diren already knows by heart. Nobles should not have to work. That is supposed to be the whole point of being noble. So why are they struggling so much? Honestly, Diren agrees. She and her mother work themselves to exhaustion while the men in the family wave around their titles. Years of hiding her true feelings have made her an expert at telling people exactly what they want to hear. So she pulls out the purse and explains that she recently took on a difficult job and earned a little extra money. The reaction is immediate. Her mother's face lights up with joy as she grabs the money and praises her. Good job. Thank you. I feel so relieved. Seeing that smile almost makes it worth it. Almost. But then, exactly as expected, her mother starts talking about her brother. Apparently, he recently joined a poetry club and has been upset because everyone else uses expensive glass pens while he still uses a feather pen. Diren is stunned. She did not even realize glass pens were that costly, but what really gets her is the thought that a noble family cannot afford one. Then, the horrifying realization hits. The money she nearly risked her life to earn is probably about to become a fancy pen for her brother. When she points that out, her mother happily confirms it. Of course. It is precious money, so it should be spent on something precious. Ouch. Diren's sarcasm comes pouring out. Right, of course. The precious prince of the family. His pride is clearly worth more than her life. Her mother immediately dismisses her frustration, asking how difficult a priest's job could possibly be. That strikes a nerve. Diren reminds her that priests can literally be asked to give their lives to God. Then, remembering the chief priestess's words, she decides there is no point continuing this conversation. She says goodbye and heads for the door, only to run into her brother. Instead of greeting her warmly, he criticizes her manners and complains that even family members should use proper etiquette. At that point, our girl is completely done. She throws out a cold, "Sure, my lord," and storms away while her mother scolds her for being rude. Before long, she is back in the carriage, demanding they leave immediately. Sitting alone inside, she mutters that her family is awful and swears she will never speak to them again. Yet deep down, she already knows she will come back eventually. That is what makes it hurt so much. Later, when they reach the road leading to the manor, she decides to walk the rest of the way alone. The coachman leaves, and Diren follows the quiet forest path. Somewhere deep within those woods is the manor she desperately wants to return to. As she walks, she finally lets her guard down, just until she gets there. Just until she reaches the manor. Tears stream down her face as she cries and sniffles through the lonely road, feeling all the anger, disappointment, and exhaustion she has been holding back. At that moment, with nobody around to see it, all she can think is how unbelievably annoying it all is. Diren keeps walking through the forest toward the manor, tears still falling from her eyes. In her heart, she keeps repeating the same thing over and over. She will cry only until she reaches the front door. Just until then. After that, she will take a warm bath and wash all these feelings away. Once she steps back inside the manor, she will become Priestess Diren again. A priest is not supposed to live for family or status. A priest is supposed to live for God's love. Poor Diren, the girl who spent her whole life cleaning up after her brother, needs to disappear. Yet the manor is still far away, and the more she walks, the harder it becomes to hold everything in. She wipes her eyes, sniffles, and keeps moving forward until suddenly she bumps into someone. Startled, she looks up and freezes. It is Ceres. For a moment, neither of them can believe it. He calls her name, and she stares back in confusion. Wait, why is he here? Did something happen? Did he come chasing after someone? Is that blood on him? But after looking closer, he seems perfectly fine. Then Ceres calmly explains that he heard her sound. Instantly, relief washes over her. So that is it. He heard her crying. Embarrassed, she apologizes and jokes that she must have been crying too loudly. Meanwhile, deep inside, she forces herself to pull herself together. She does not have time to cry. She is an adult. She has responsibilities. And somehow, just seeing him standing there has already stopped her tears. She thanks him, believing that is the end of it. But then Ceres shakes his head. No. Confused, Diren asks what he means, and his answer completely catches her off guard. He did not come because she was loud. He came because he heard her cry. Suddenly, the whole conversation changes. She asks if he really came all the way outside just because he heard her crying, and he quietly confirms it. Now she is even more confused. Why? Did it annoy him? No answer. Did it bother him? No. Was he surprised? This time he nods. Yes, he was surprised. Diren immediately tries to explain it away. Maybe he simply came out to see what was happening. Maybe he was curious. Maybe it was no big deal. But Ceres repeats himself. No. He was surprised, and that surprise brought him here. At that point, our girl can only stare at him in disbelief. Then, she steps closer, realizing what just happened. This man actually ran all the way out here because he heard her crying. Not because it was loud, not because it was annoying. Simply because she was crying. And just like that, the sadness that had been crushing her heart moments ago begins to crack. Looking at him, she laughs helplessly and teases him. Oh no, what is she supposed to do now? It seems she has tamed him in completely the wrong way. Yet beneath the joke is something warm and comforting, because for the first time that day, she is no longer crying alone. Just when Diren thinks she is finally calming down, her mother's words come rushing back into her mind. Why are you crying over something like that? And just like that, the tears return. She sniffles, wipes her face, and tries to hold herself together, telling Ceres that he did not need to come all the way out here because of her. She tries to stop crying, but she cannot. Embarrassed, she asks him to go back to the manor so it will be quieter and promises she will return once she calms down. But instead of leaving, Ceres slowly walks over and wraps his arms around her. Then, in his simple way, he tells her that her heart is pounding loudly, that she is worked up, and that it is fine because she is safe. And honestly, that moment hits hard. Diren immediately realizes what he is doing. This is exactly what she used to do whenever he became upset. If Ceres held her any tighter, she feels like her brain might burst. But at the same time, the warmth of that embrace is comforting. Without resisting, she hugs him back and cries her heart out. She cries for so long that she loses track of time completely. Eventually, the tears run dry, and when they finally let go, she assures him she is fine now, even though her face is swollen and puffy from all the crying. Ceres just stares at her awkwardly while she insists that she is really okay, and that they should start walking if they want to make it back in time for dinner. As they walk together, Diren suddenly calls him kind. That simple word completely confuses him. Kind? To her, the answer is obvious. Waiting patiently for someone to finish crying, not asking questions, stepping back when needed, and simply being there for them, that is kindness. But explaining all of that feels unnecessary, so she simply repeats that he is kind. Then another thought crosses her mind. Right now, Ceres depends on her. Right now, he is learning from her. But one day, he will become a true noble lord, and when that day comes, people will lean on him instead. Maybe someday he will comfort someone the same way he is comforting her now. With a gentle smile, she tells him not to become a cruel young lord. Instead, she wants him to become a warm and kind noble, someone people can feel comfortable around, just like sunshine. Of course, poor Ceres has absolutely no idea what she is talking about, but he nods anyway and agrees. And with that, the two continue their walk back to the manor. Then the next day arrives, and Diren stands there looking at him. She always knew he would eventually become this kind of person. She always believed he would grow into it. But now a new thought quietly creeps into her mind. Has her job really come to an end so suddenly? The question hangs there, leaving her wondering what happens next. For once, the manor is peaceful. Diren sits with Ceres, quietly drinking tea while he flips through a book. The silence feels strange. Everyone is usually moving around, talking, working, creating noise somewhere in the background. Now it is so quiet that she notices things she never paid attention to before. As she takes another sip of tea, a faint tapping sound reaches her ears. Looking toward the window, she spots a fly bumping against the glass. The moment she mentions there is a fly in the house, Ceres casually corrects her. Not 1, 3. Instantly, she freezes. 3? He calmly points them out. 1 is nearby, another is in the blue room, and the last one is in the yellow room. Diren is stunned because those rooms are on completely opposite sides of the manor. How in the world can he hear that? When she asks if his hearing has become less sensitive lately, he immediately shuts down the idea. Not at all. Then, without warning, he reaches out and knocks down the fly beside them. At that point, Diren cannot help wondering how he manages to stay so calm when even her heartbeat should sound deafening to him. Yet Ceres simply says it is okay. A moment later, the buzzing grows louder and she realizes the other 2 flies have somehow ended up in the same room. Before she can even finish the thought, a pillow goes flying across the room and takes care of both of them. Honestly, that settles it. He has not become less sensitive in the slightest. Looking into her tea, Diren reflects on how much has changed. It feels like years have passed, but it has only been a few months. She was prepared to spend years fixing him, yet now it suddenly feels like everything might be over much sooner than expected. Then, without warning, a loud explosion echoes outside. Diren nearly jumps out of her seat, spits out her tea, and whirls toward the window in panic. Meanwhile, Ceres barely reacts. It is just a firework. After catching her breath, she remembers it is the 2nd Imperial Prince's birthday celebration. But then she notices something strange. Ceres is staring at her. Immediately, worry creeps in. The sound resembles battlefield bombs. Is he suppressing his reaction? Is there a delay? Is something wrong? She carefully tells him that he does not need to pretend if he is distressed. Yet his answer leaves her speechless. Everything is fine as long as you are here, Diren. Wow. That hits her harder than she expects. She always knew she helped keep him stable, but she did not realize she was this effective. Curious, she asks whether he could manage without her now, like a normal person. Naturally, Ceres wants to know what normal even means. Her explanation is simple: not killing people because they are noisy, answering questions normally, and not throwing himself around because the world is too loud. He closes his book and immediately gives his verdict. Impossible. He needs her beside him to be like that. Deep down, Diren feels relieved, though she quickly becomes confused about why she is relieved at all. Shouldn't she be happy if her job ends? She should be celebrating promotions and bonuses, not worrying about losing her position. Still, a new idea suddenly forms in her head. If Ceres can handle anything as long as she is there, then maybe this is the perfect opportunity. She starts imagining the upcoming festival. Huge crowds, music, parades, food stalls, strangers talking to each other everywhere. It is basically the ultimate social training ground. A dangerous idea begins taking shape, and before she can talk herself out of it, she turns to him with a smile. How about going to the festival together? Ceres blinks in confusion. A festival? Diren nods enthusiastically. He has probably only read about them in books, but this one is going to be packed with people, excitement, and more noise than he has ever experienced. And just like that, a very risky plan is set into motion. The moment Diren mentions that the festival is going to be very loud, Ceres' interest drops immediately. You can practically see his enthusiasm disappear. But Diren is not giving up that easily. She jumps to her feet and explains that the festival is basically practice for the future. As a noble lord, he will have to attend parties one day, and those places will be full of people, noise, and conversations. This is the perfect chance to prepare. However, the moment she casually mentions that she probably will not be there for those future parties, Ceres focuses on only that part. He asks if she really will not be there. Scratching her cheek, Diren admits that she probably will not. After all, it would be strange for a priestess to attend a noble's social gatherings. Besides, by then he will be able to handle everything on his own. More importantly, she wants him to enjoy himself. Nobles carry heavy responsibilities, and carefree moments do not come often. This festival could become one of those happy memories he can hold on to when life gets difficult. She smiles warmly while saying it, and Ceres quietly nods. The funny thing is that he ends up staring at her smile so much that he completely forgets everything else she just said. Meanwhile, Diren switches into full preparation mode. If they are going out, then those expensive clothes from the tailor are finally getting used. First comes a luxurious outfit, and the moment he puts it on, she is completely amazed. He looks so good that she jokes they might drag him straight to an imperial ball. Then comes the armor. Once again, he looks incredible, but now she worries people will think another war is about to start. Next is an all-black outfit. Somehow he looks even more handsome, yet at the same time it gives off the feeling that something dangerous is about to happen. At that point, Diren decides simple is best and hands him a plain white shirt instead. Honestly, after all the care he has been receiving lately, he looks good in absolutely everything. She wanted to dress him up more, but this is only a town festival, so she forces herself to hold back. Even then, when he is only half-dressed, she cannot help noticing how good he looks. After telling him to finish changing his pants, she heads off to prepare herself. Meanwhile, Diren stands in her own room staring at her wardrobe. It has been such a long time since she wore anything other than priest robes that the whole thing feels strange. After sorting through her clothes, she picks out a dress and wonders if it is good enough. Then she carefully ties a ribbon into her hair. The ribbon immediately brings back a memory of the tailor, who had given it to her as a gift after having some leftover fabric, saying it would suit her perfectly. Because of that, she really wants to wear it today. Just then, Ceres knocks on the door and asks if she is ready. Instead of answering normally, Diren suddenly feels relieved he is there and invites him inside. When he enters, she immediately asks the question that every person asks after getting dressed up. How do I look? Deep down, though, she does not expect much of an answer. As far as she knows, Ceres does not really understand beauty or fashion the way other people do. But instead of responding right away, he quietly steps closer. Then he reaches toward the ribbon in her hair and gently taps it. For a moment, he simply stands there, mumbling softly under his breath, leaving Diren waiting to hear what he is about to say next. Just when Diren thinks they are finally ready to leave, Ceres suddenly reaches up and touches the ribbon in her hair. Then, after a long silence, he quietly says that watching her is like watching a flower bloom. Naturally, our girl is completely caught off guard. A flower? What is he even talking about? But Ceres calmly explains that a flower bud is beautiful, the blooming process is beautiful, and once the flower fully blooms, it becomes even more beautiful. At that point, Diren can only stare at him. Surely he is talking about her, right? She admits that if she spends a little money and dresses nicely, she can look decent enough, but comparing her to a blooming flower feels like way too much. Even so, she thanks him for the compliment. However, Ceres immediately shuts that down. He is not exaggerating. He is simply expressing what he feels, exactly the way she taught him to. The moment she remembers telling him to think about what he sees and put his feelings into words, she cannot help laughing. Well, that is true. She really did teach him well. Unfortunately, maybe she taught him a little too well. When he calmly repeats that she genuinely looked like a flower to him, Diren can only scratch her neck and wonder what kind of disaster she has unleashed on high society. Seriously, how can someone say things like that with such a handsome face, calm voice, and completely sincere expression? Ladies everywhere, please accept her apology in advance. She may have accidentally created the perfect nobleman. Still, there is no turning back now. The two head out together, and for the first time in a long while, Diren feels strangely free. In her priestess robes, she is a servant of God. Back home, she is expected to be House Braden's source of income. No matter where she goes, someone always expects something from her. But today feels different. Today, she is neither Priestess Diren nor Diren of House Braden. She is simply herself, and honestly, it feels liberating. Then reality suddenly hits. Wait a second. Does she need Lord Robin's permission to leave the manor? Her eyes dart around nervously before she decides to ignore the problem completely. She will worry about the consequences later. After all, nothing should go wrong. Probably. Curious, she asks Ceres how many people are guarding the manor. His answer nearly makes her choke. Around 30 guards are watching the place, plus 6 more stationed at the entrances. That is a ridiculous amount of security. Then Ceres casually asks if they need to sneak past them. The question instantly lights up Diren's face. Is that actually possible? Before she can think any further, Ceres scoops her into his arms. His eyes flash, and he boldly announces the start of the operation. 1 hour later, the impossible has somehow happened. They are outside. They actually escaped. Diren immediately rubs his face and praises him for successfully sneaking them out without killing anybody. Ceres, meanwhile, thinks the whole thing was a waste of time. Thankfully, Diren pats his head and reminds him that there is no rush. They only need to reach the festival by nightfall. Between the manor and the festival lies a huge forest, a mountain, a lake, and several villages. The plan is simple. Walk to the lake, find a carriage, and ride the rest of the way. As they travel, she asks about his past carriage rides. His answer is surprisingly sad. He was usually unconscious because people either put him into a deep sleep or knocked him out. Because of that, he has no idea whether he gets motion sickness. Diren patiently explains what that is and tells him to speak up if he starts feeling sick or wants to throw up. Ceres simply nods and agrees. And with that, the two continue their journey toward the noisy, crowded festival that is about to become Ceres' biggest test yet. Just when Diren thinks everything is going perfectly, fate decides to remind her that nothing is ever that simple. As she and Ceres walk along the road, they spot a coachman with a carriage. The man greets them and asks if they are heading to the festival street. The moment Diren hears that, she happily grabs Ceres by the hand and rushes over. At that point, she truly believes this will be a fun and completely normal outing. The coachman even tells them that if they leave now, they will arrive in time to see the Second Imperial Princess's parade. Diren is immediately excited. A nighttime parade? And fireworks too? She can hardly contain herself. But unfortunately, what awaits them is something she never could have imagined. As the carriage rolls forward, Diren enjoys the view outside the window. Meanwhile, Ceres sits quietly beside her. At first, nothing seems wrong. Then suddenly, sweat begins to form on his face. A strange feeling creeps over him. He cannot understand it. He has been getting better. He should be able to control his reactions by now. There are no overwhelming sights or sounds around him, so why does everything suddenly feel wrong? His breathing becomes uneven. His pulse starts racing. His instincts scream that there is danger nearby, yet he cannot identify the threat. The sound of the horse's hooves, their snorts, the creaking carriage, the turning wheels, everything begins blending together inside his mind. Then even worse, disturbing sounds and images start crashing into his thoughts. Smoke, screams, breaking, burning, dripping, a terrifying storm of sensations he cannot escape. Before things spiral further, Dairon notices something is wrong and calls his name. Ceres! The shout snaps through the chaos for a moment. She rushes over, grabs his face, and desperately tries to bring him back. Are you okay? Stay with me. But he is still trapped in whatever nightmare is swallowing him whole. Without wasting another second, Dairon asks if the carriage is making him sick. Then she sticks her head outside and immediately orders the coachman to stop. The carriage comes to a halt, and she quickly helps Ceres outside. The moment they are off the carriage, she wraps her arms around him. This isn't like his usual seizures. No, this time he looks genuinely terrified. As she holds him close and rubs his back, Ceres continues trembling, barely able to keep himself together. Inside his head, he is fighting desperately not to fall apart. No, you can't break down here, Ceres. Meanwhile, Dairon does the only thing she can. She stays with him. She doesn't understand the fear crushing him, but she refuses to leave him alone with it. After all, she was the one who brought him out here. If he falls, she will help him stand again. So she keeps holding him, keeps comforting him, keeps calling his name over and over. Hang in there, Ceres. 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 The more she looks at him, the more worried she becomes, until tears begin forming in her own eyes. And then, at that exact moment, Ceres finally opens his eyes. Suddenly, we are pulled into a disturbing memory from Ceres' past. In his trance, he is no longer standing beside Dairon. He is a child again, trapped inside a box while being transported somewhere against his will. Panic fills his mind. No. There is something he needs to do. Somewhere he needs to go. He cannot let this happen. Then two voices reach his ears. One man wonders who they should sell this pretty young lord to, while the other casually suggests drugging him first and deciding later. And just like that, the horror becomes even more real. Young Ceres is tied up and blindfolded, completely helpless. A man forces a liquid into his mouth and tells him to rest easy, because a new life will be waiting when he wakes up. Moments later, the child collapses to the floor. One of the men asks his name. Barely conscious, he struggles to answer. Ceres. The reply is met with laughter. See what? One of them cannot even be bothered to remember it. The other shrugs. He looks like a noble young lord, but who cares? Soon enough, he will be crawling at someone else's feet. It is a cruel memory, one that has clearly left scars far deeper than anyone realizes. Then, thankfully, Ceres finally opens his eyes. The first thing he sees is Dairon holding him tightly. Her presence feels bright, warm, and real. She reassures him that they are not on the battlefield and that they are safe. Tears gather in her eyes as relief washes over her. Meanwhile, Ceres simply stares at her, watching her hair move in the breeze, watching her hand, almost as if he is making sure she is truly there. Inside, he feels strangely empty. Yet when she cups his face and desperately asks if he is still unwell, he slowly leans into her hand instead. It is such a small action, but it says everything. He softly calls her name, rubbing her hand against his face. When she confirms she is there, he finally answers that he is okay, but apparently, that is not enough for this man. He places her hand on top of his head and quietly asks for more. Dairon is completely confused. Why? More. She refuses at first, pointing out that he is already fine. Unfortunately for her, Ceres has mastered the art of staring until he gets what he wants. After a long pause, she finally gives in and pets his hair. Problem solved, right? Nope. As if things were not already ridiculous enough, he immediately pouts and asks for the sparkle thing too. Dairon is absolutely stunned. What sparkle thing? She cannot just do that whenever he wants. But Ceres calmly argues that now seems like a perfect time. Honestly, if he is talking nonsense like this, he really must be feeling better. Realizing that her oversized puppy has recovered enough to be difficult again, Dairon gives up on arguing. There will be no more carriages after this. They will walk the rest of the way. And if they move quickly, they should still reach the festival before nightfall. Just when they are about to continue on their way, our girl suddenly stumbles. Her body wobbles, and before she can fall, Ceres catches her. It turns out she has used too much divine power. The dizziness hits hard, and she admits she needs food before she can even think about walking again. Ceres takes one look at her condition and immediately decides to carry her. Unfortunately for Dairon, his first solution is to throw her over his shoulder like a sack of grain. She instantly protests, arguing that she is still a human being with dignity. Ceres, completely missing the point, calmly responds with no dignity. Poor Dairon nearly loses her mind. She complains that she feels like luggage, so he tries another method. First, he carries her on one arm, too awkward, then on both arms, somehow even more embarrassing. Then he changes again, leaving her running out of reasons to object. Finally, she gives up and asks for a piggyback ride instead. When Ceres hesitates for a moment, she wonders if he is still uncomfortable about his back. However, he quietly tells her that he does not mind if it is her. And just like that, Dairon is caught off guard. She remembers the time she had to risk her life clinging to his back, but now she does not know how to feel about being someone so special to him. Settling onto his back, she admits it feels nice. His shoulders are broad and comfortable. Still, she quickly warns him not to make a habit of carrying people around like this. Only someone really, really special should get that privilege. Actually, scratch that. Noble lords should not be giving piggyback rides at all. Today is a special exception. Ceres simply accepts the rule and keeps walking. Surprisingly, they reach the festival much faster than expected. Unfortunately, a brand new problem immediately appears. Everywhere they go, people keep staring at them. One person cheerfully assumes they are on their first date. Another encourages them not to play hard to get because life is too short. Others openly praise them as a beautiful couple. And if that was not embarrassing enough already, things get even worse when they arrive at the Rache shop. The shop owner warmly welcomes them and proudly announces that he is honored to host them on their first date. Then he offers a special discount for couples and tells them to stop being shy and make things official already. Before Diren can even recover from that attack, another woman nearby raises the stakes. She loudly promises everyone a 50% discount if this supposedly shy couple finally becomes official. At that point, Diren can only stand there blushing while realizing they have walked straight into a disaster. What was supposed to be a simple festival outing has somehow turned into an entire crowd trying to push her and Ceres into a relationship, and honestly, our girl knows she has just entered a very tricky situation. After buying the rush, the two of them finally step away from the crowd to taste it. Ceres quietly takes a bite while Diren sits against a low wall and watches him with a smile. When she asks if he likes it, his answer is simple. It is sweet. That immediately makes her laugh, and she explains that Rache is a special snack sold only on certain occasions. It is nothing fancy like the food back at the manor. In fact, it is basically junk food. Then, surprisingly, Ceres asks if she likes it. That question catches her off guard. After thinking for a moment, she admits that this is actually her first time eating it. Poor Diren. When she was younger, she was always too busy. Only now, as an adult, can she finally enjoy little things like this. She explains that the snack is so sweet it can make you sick after a few bites, which is why parents do not buy it for their children often. And somehow, that information makes Ceres immediately drop his Rache. Diren nearly jumps out of her skin. Hey, why ask for it if you are just going to throw it away? But he calmly replies that he does not want it anymore. She simply laughs and tells him that even if a noble lord does not need to know these things, more experience is always better. Ceres completely agrees. The more experience you have, the better your chances of winning. Then, before anyone can react, he crumples the wrapper and swallows the entire snack in one go. Diren stares at him in disbelief. Wait, did you already eat all of it? His answer is basically that sweet food is good food. Even worse, he keeps staring at her rash like a starving puppy. Eventually, she asks if he wants hers too, and the answer comes instantly. Yes. Before she knows it, he grabs the hand holding the snack and pulls it toward himself. Diren immediately panics. Ceres, wait! We are in the middle of the street! Unfortunately for her, that calm, innocent face is impossible to fight against. She can already feel herself losing the battle. Honestly, that expression is going to be the end of her someday. Thankfully, everyone around them is too busy enjoying the festival to pay attention. She glances away for a second, and when she looks back, the Rache is already gone. Completely gone. Even she cannot believe it. Have you already finished it? Ceres simply nods, still holding the wrapper in his mouth. Seeing him enjoy the food so much unexpectedly makes her happy. In fact, it makes her want to try even more things. With new determination, she grabs his hand and declares that they are going to taste every street food they can find today. Just like that, the two rush off together towards skewers, strawberry juice, and every delicious thing they can find. Diren excitedly talks about wanting to try sweet fruit juice, while Ceres continues following beside her, still holding on to her. At that point, she can only look at him and ask the important question. By the way, when are you planning to spit out that wrapper? Before long, the food adventure leaves both of them completely stuffed. They end up sitting together on a bench, and Diren lets out a satisfied sigh. Looking at a coin in her hand, she cannot help smiling. As a child, she could not even dream of eating this much food. Having money really is wonderful. That simple comment completely confuses Ceres. Money? He honestly has no idea what she means. Seeing his reaction, Diren does not even know whether it is normal or ridiculous for a noble lord to know so little about something so basic. Still, she decides to teach him. She holds up the coin and tells him to give her his hand. Without hesitation, Ceres immediately places his hand on top of hers and closes it tightly into a fist. And just like that, while the festival continues around them, Diren finds herself teaching this strange young lord yet another ordinary thing that he somehow never learned. As the festival continues, Diren decides it is finally time to teach Ceres something very basic. Taking out a few coins, she tells him to open his hand properly instead of holding it out like a dog waiting for a treat. Once his palm is open, she drops the coins into it and explains how money works. 100 bronze coins make a silver coin, and 10 silver coins make a gold coin. The reaction is immediate. Ceres stares at the coins with wide eyes as if he has just discovered some ancient secret. Money? This is money? Diren nods and explains that people give money in exchange for things they want. That process is called buying. However, the very next question catches her completely off guard. Can I buy Diren too? Our girl almost laughs at the absurdity of it. She quickly explains that people normally cannot be bought or sold, even if some people do terrible things and sell others. Then comes an even more dangerous question. If he cannot buy her, how can he have her? Diren awkwardly explains that she is a priestess who has devoted her life to God, so she cannot give herself to anyone else. Somehow, this only makes Ceres more determined. Then I should ask God if I can have you. Honestly, this man is impossible. Diren can only tell him that it does not work that way. Besides, he does not even have enough money. That answer finally lands. Ceres looks down and admits that he has no money at all. Hearing that shocks Diren. After spending so many years on the battlefield, how does he not have any money? She immediately decides she will ask Lord Robin about it later. For now, she announces a new lesson. If he cannot buy her, he can at least learn how to buy things. Excited once again, she leads him deeper into the festival, eager to help him find something he wants. Meanwhile, the streets grow even more crowded as people gather for the second Imperial Prince's parade. Diren's excitement rises immediately. It has been ages since there was a parade like this, and she cannot wait to see it. Soon, the sound of a trumpet echoes through the streets, and the parade begins. Around them, people chatter excitedly about the prince's army and the recent war. Some praise the Imperial Prince's forces, while others argue about the role of the 8th Battalion. Before long, cheers erupt everywhere as the second prince appears. Yet while everyone else is celebrating, Diren suddenly feels uneasy. A strange feeling washes over her, like she has accidentally discovered something she was never meant to see. It feels like pulling back a stage curtain and glimpsing something hidden behind it. She cannot explain it, and honestly, she decides it is probably better not to. Pushing the thought aside, she notices how much the second prince resembles the third prince. Well, they are brothers, so that makes sense. Since the crown prince's investiture has not happened yet, he is probably trying to make his achievements known. If the second prince becomes crown prince, then the future of the third prince and the empress consort will change as well. Still, Diren shrugs it off. That is their life, not hers. Turning towards Ceres, she asks a much more personal question. What kind of life does he want to live? His answer comes immediately. He will become a noble lord, but that is not what she means. She wants to know what he truly wants. Then she gently reminds him of something neither of them likes to think about. One day, when he becomes a noble lord, they will have to go their separate ways. Maybe it is finally time for him to start thinking about a future that does not include her by his side. As the parade continues around them, Diren finds herself drifting into thought. After all, she has spent years doing this kind of work, and over time she has developed her own methods for protecting her sanity. In her experience, one of the most important skills is knowing when not to think too deeply about something. Pretend you did not see it. Pretend you did not hear it. If you can do that, you can avoid more than half the headaches life throws at you. Getting too attached can cloud your judgment. Hating something too much only creates stress. Sometimes, knowing less really does mean worrying less. Honestly, it can even make life more peaceful. Yet here she is, teaching Ceres to think for himself, teaching him to make his own choices. That realization suddenly makes her wonder if she is even the right person for the job. She wants him to love many things. She wants him to live a life where he can refuse things he dislikes. She wants him to live on his own terms, but should she be wishing that for him when she cannot even do the same for herself? In the end, she brushes the thought aside. Whatever. His world and hers are completely different anyway. Unfortunately, before she can think any further, Ceres glances at her and drops a bombshell. In a small, trembling voice, he asks if she is abandoning him. Diren is completely caught off guard. Abandoning him? Where did that even come from? However, things immediately get worse. He starts acting like a kicked puppy and mutters that Diren is throwing him away because she does not want him anymore. Suddenly, people nearby begin looking at her like she is some kind of villain. Some even comment on how handsome he is and wonder how she could possibly leave such a poor guy behind. At this point, our girl is fighting for her life. She demands to know where he even learned words like that and quickly denies everything. Internally, she is losing her mind. She is not abandoning anybody. In fact, she never asked for this situation in the first place. Technically, she was forced into taking care of him. Still, from Ceres' perspective, things probably look very different. Trying to fix the misunderstanding, she explains that if he wants to become a noble lord one day, he needs to learn how to walk his own path, but Ceres has already made up his mind. He casually announces that he will simply live with Diren even after becoming a noble lord. The response slips out of her mouth before she can stop it. Since when did I agree to that? The moment those words leave her lips, disaster strikes. Ceres freezes in shock, while Diren immediately realizes she should not have said that out loud. Covering her mouth does nothing to save her now. Looking completely stunned, Ceres starts piecing everything together. They are not going to live together. They will part ways. She will leave. The poor guy looks absolutely devastated, while Diren starts sweating under the pressure. She quickly tries to explain that it is not because she does not want to. They simply cannot. Hearing that only makes him look even more miserable. So they cannot live together? She nods and assures him that is exactly the problem. They are not allowed to. It is not about what she wants. Inside, she keeps telling herself this is just a tantrum. The problem is that it is incredibly difficult to ignore a tantrum when it is coming from a former member of the 8th Battalion. Folding his arms, Ceres carefully confirms the situation one more time. Even if she wanted to, she still could not live with him. Relieved that he finally understands, Diren praises him for being clever and explains that priestesses are supposed to live in the temple, even if she happens to be away from it right now. And just when she thinks the conversation is finally settled, this stubborn man delivers another answer she never sees coming. If that is the problem, then he will simply become a priest too. Diren stares at him in disbelief. He would really go that far just to stay by her side? For a brief moment, her imagination runs wild. Ceres as a priest. Honestly, it does not sound that bad. In fact, it is strangely easy to picture. If a man who spent years spilling blood suddenly devoted himself to repentance, people would probably turn his story into a legend. They might even give him his own parish. But before the daydream can go any further, she quickly shakes her head. No, she cannot encourage this. Crossing her arms, she explains that becoming a priest is not some easy solution. Priests are incredibly busy. Even if he somehow became one, they would both be so overwhelmed with work that they would barely see each other anyway. Unfortunately, Ceres immediately finds another answer. Fine then, she should quit being a priestess instead. Diren already expected that response. Still, she reminds him that people need jobs to survive. Money cannot buy everything, but life becomes very difficult without it. As they continue walking through the festival, Ceres points out that they currently have enough money to enjoy themselves. However, Diren insists that sometimes the best way to understand the value of money is by spending some. With a playful wink, she rattles her purse and suggests they enjoy themselves a little more. And that, ladies and gentlemen, turns out to be a terrible idea. A short while later, the purse is completely empty. Absolutely finished. Diren looks exhausted, while Ceres somehow looks happier than ever. Looking back, she realizes exactly how they got here. At every single shop, he found something that reminded him of her. One item looked like a petal on a flower bud. Another looked like gold dust resting on a blossom. Another looked like a flower dancing beneath a blue sky. The descriptions kept changing, but the results stayed exactly the same. Everything somehow led back to Diren. The real disaster happened at a cosmetics store. The attendant greeted them warmly and introduced a popular lip gloss. Curious, Ceres asked what gloss was. Thinking he was shopping for someone special, the attendant eagerly demonstrated how to use it. Before Diren could even react, he rubbed some onto his finger, called her name, and gently applied it to her lips. Then, with complete honesty, he observed that they smelled sweet and felt soft, like a banquet of flowers. Even worse, he admitted he wanted to keep touching them. Meanwhile, the attendant watched the entire scene unfold and practically melted on the spot, proudly declaring that their gloss really was something special. Just remembering it now is enough to make Diren bury her face in her hands. Eventually, she takes a deep breath and accepts reality. They are completely out of money. Looking at Ceres, she points out the obvious. He really did not think any of this through. They spent everything on things they did not need, and somehow bought nothing for him. This, she explains, is exactly why people need to think carefully before spending money. But Ceres refuses to agree. None of it was useless. He wanted those things. They made him happy. That alone made them worth buying. Then, before she can argue back, he reaches into one of the bags and pulls out a piece of lace. His reason is painfully simple. He likes seeing her wear those things. He bought them because he wants to keep seeing that. As he gently places the lace on her, Diren immediately starts warning herself not to look up. Do not do it. Do not meet his eyes. Because deep down, she already knows the danger. If she looks at him right now, if she sees that expression after hearing those words, she may not be able to turn back. And honestly, our girl is hanging on by a thread at this point. As Ceres carefully ties the fabric around Diren's neck, our girl finds herself caught in a dangerous battle with her own heart. Sure, everything feels warm and wonderful right now. He treats her like she is the most important person in the world. He always puts her first. But what happens later? What happens when he meets new people and experiences a bigger world? Will he still look at her the same way? Diren knows exactly where this road could lead. If she falls for him and his feelings change someday, she will be the one left hurting. Because of that, she quietly reminds herself to stay careful and keep her guard up. Finally, she lets out a relieved breath as Ceres finishes his work and proudly announces that he is done. Then, without hesitation, he tells her she looks pretty. That simple compliment makes her laugh, though inside she wishes things could somehow turn out the way she hopes. She does not want to push him away completely. She wants to stay close, stay friendly, and enjoy whatever time they have left together. Trying to lighten the mood, she praises how quickly he learned to tie ribbons and jokingly declares that, of course, she looks as pretty as always. She even wishes she had a mirror. Then she begins digging through the shopping bags they bought earlier, only for Ceres to eagerly start showing off the items himself. A shawl for her shoulders, shoes for her feet. And then, with complete seriousness, shoes for her flower-scented feet. Looking at the growing pile of gifts, Diren realizes just how much they bought. Once again, she quietly promises herself that she will keep her feelings under control. If she does that, then when the day comes for them to part, maybe she can simply smile and remember these moments as happy memories. Unfortunately for her, Ceres immediately makes that goal much harder. He kneels in front of her and announces that he will help her put on the shoes because it is good manners. Before she can even process what is happening, he lifts her leg and starts putting them on. Diarin completely short-circuits. Wait, hold on. When did he even take off her shoes in the first place? And just when she thinks things cannot get any more embarrassing, he finishes putting them on and calmly informs her that her feet are like sweet marshmallows. At that point, even she has no idea what he is talking about anymore. Still, as she stands there feeling overwhelmed, she realizes she does not need a mirror to know the effect is too much. Everything about this feels too much, yet she cannot bring herself to complain when he looks so genuinely happy. Eventually, she decides to stop overthinking. Festival season does not come every day after all. She might as well enjoy it while she can. A little later, the two continue walking through the festival until something catches her attention. People are gathering, music is playing, and colorful energy fills the air. Suddenly it clicks. The musicians have arrived. Curious, Ceres asks what musicians are, and she explains that they are people who play instruments. When the music starts, people simply move however they feel. On happy days, they celebrate by dancing. Then, almost before she can think about it, she stretches out her hand and asks if he wants to try. He immediately places his hand in hers and agrees. Their shopping bags are safely set aside, and together they watch the crowd's movements. Then Ceres takes hold of her and begins stepping along with the rhythm. And just like that, they are dancing. Meanwhile, Diarin starts questioning every decision that led her here. What is wrong with her? Was she getting carried away by all those silly thoughts from earlier? Why would she invite him to dance when she barely knows how herself? Then again, one day he will probably attend noble balls and formal events. Maybe this is good practice. As they continue moving together, she admits that he is surprisingly good at it. Ceres looks genuinely confused and asks if he is. Diarin honestly does not know much about dancing, but she thinks he is doing well. That naturally makes her wonder if he has danced before. Then reality catches up to her. To answer that question, he would need his memories back. And just like that, beneath the music, the laughter, and the festival lights, a quiet reminder slips back into the moment. No matter how happy today feels, there are still pieces of Ceres that remain lost. As the two continue dancing, Diarin cannot help but notice something strange. Dancing is not like swordsmanship or writing. It is not something people master instantly. Yet somehow, Ceres is not only moving naturally, he is actually leading her, a person who barely knows how to dance at all. That realization makes her pause. If he can do this so naturally, then he must have learned it when he was young, which means he probably grew up as a noble. But that only creates more questions. Noble families have plenty of problems, sure, but even when they lose everything, they usually just fall in status. They do not end up being sold into war like slaves. The more she learns about him, the stranger his past becomes. Still smiling, she asks if he wants to remember his childhood. To her surprise, he simply answers that he has never really thought about it. Do I have to? Hearing that, she admits maybe he does not. Then she asks about something else. What about his parents? His family? Even if he cannot remember them, they might still be out there somewhere. Wouldn't he want to find them? Deep down, Diarin knows exactly why that question matters to her. No matter how much her family frustrates her, hurts her, or disappoints her, she can never completely cut them off. The truth is simple. She is terrified of being alone. Yes, her family is a mess, but being pushed completely outside that circle scares her even more. Because of that, she asks if he is afraid of being alone. Once again, his answer comes without hesitation. No. Naturally, she suspects that is just his soldier mindset talking. Maybe he is the type who refuses to admit fear no matter what. So she encourages him to think about his family from time to time. He may not understand it now, but having family can change a person's life. Then suddenly another voice cuts through the festival noise. I love you. You have been my whole world since the day we met. Both of them stop and turn around. Nearby, people are already gathering, whispering excitedly. Some are convinced a marriage proposal is about to happen. And sure enough, there is a man on one knee holding a ring box. With all the courage he can gather, he asks the woman in front of him to marry him. Unfortunately, what follows is not the happy ending anyone expected. The woman immediately shuts him down. Not only had she already rejected him before, she had even tried to hint that he should stop asking. Instead, he chose to propose publicly in front of everyone. To her, it is not romantic. It is annoying. Ouch. The poor guy gets crushed on the spot. Watching the disaster unfold, Diarin can already picture him crying the moment he gets home. She feels bad for him. But honestly, she also knows he walked right into that disaster himself. Public proposals only work when both people have already agreed on marriage beforehand. Laughing awkwardly, she uses the situation as a lesson for Ceres. Relationships do not always go the way people want. Both sides have to feel the same thing. That is when one word catches her attention. Marriage. Ceres quietly repeats it. Curious, she asks what he means. He wants to know if they would have ended up together if the woman had accepted. Diarin immediately explains that they would have. That is exactly how marriage works. People talk, make sure they are both ready, and then move forward because once they are married, there is no turning back. Seems like a simple explanation, right? Harmless. completely innocent. Except the moment she finishes explaining, Siri slowly turns and locks his gaze onto her. And right then, our girl realizes something terrifying. She has just spent the entire day teaching this man about relationships, staying together, buying things for people you care about, and now marriage. The second that look lands on her, Diren understands one thing with absolute certainty. She is so screwed. The moment Diren realizes where this conversation is heading, survival instincts kick in. She turns around and runs. Unfortunately for her, Ceres immediately chases after her like a determined puppy who is locked onto a mission. Diren, how can I marry you? At that point, our girl is fighting for her life. No, I'm not marrying you. But that only makes things worse because Ceres genuinely wants an answer. Why not? I can't. I just can't. Why not? Desperately trying to explain, she blurts out that she is a priestess and priests cannot get Mar only for disaster to strike. The heel of her shoe suddenly snaps, her ankle twists, and she cries out in pain while finishing the sentence. Married! Before she can hit the ground, Ceres catches her from behind. She immediately tries to run again anyway. Priorities, people. Priorities. Still, he keeps following, asking why. Diren explains that her life belongs to God. Her ankle throbs, forcing her to stop. At least the painful shoes are no longer a problem. Taking a moment to breathe, she secretly hopes the topic has finally ended. Maybe he gave up. Maybe she survived. Then she glances sideways at him. Big mistake. Ceres calmly asks whether he needs to fight God and win. Diren nearly short-circuits. Fight God? Is he serious right now? Before she can recover, he asks if God is good at fighting. Now she is trapped in the world's most ridiculous conversation. She awkwardly admits that God is probably the strongest being in existence and casually adds that he would need to die first before fighting him. Problem solved, right? Not even close. Leaning closer, Ceres asks a much more dangerous question. Didn't she become a priestess to make a living? What if he gave her enough money to quit? What if he provided for her himself? And suddenly, for one brief moment, the temptation hits. After all, he is loyal, handsome, rich, and completely devoted to her. But Diren immediately slams the brakes on those thoughts. Life has taught her one very important lesson. Perfect men do not exist. In her imagination, she can already hear her roommate laughing at her. A handsome noble lord who is rich and interested in you? There has to be a catch. Maybe he wants a fling. Maybe his family is falling apart. Maybe he is completely crazy. Maybe he is already married. There is always something. There is no way a perfect, handsome, wealthy man could genuinely fall in love with someone like her. No way. No matter how tempting it sounds, she refuses to believe it. People with nothing to lose have to be careful. They cannot afford to fall for pretty dreams. Trying to steer the conversation back to reality, Diren explains that leaving the priesthood is not just about money. You cannot simply abandon something that has been your entire life. Naturally, Ceres asks what matters more than money, and that question makes her stop and think. The answer is simple: a reason. She likes being a priestess. Sure, every job has difficult days, but she is satisfied with the life she has built. Giving that up would require a reason strong enough to justify it. Surprisingly, Ceres understands immediately. To marry him, she would have to throw away the life she already has. There is no reason for her to do that. Hearing him reach the conclusion himself fills her with relief. Finally, progress. She even praises him for being smart. The two continue walking, and for a moment things seem peaceful. Then Ceres asks another question. What kind of reason would make someone quit? Diren admits she is not entirely sure. That is when he brings up the rejected proposal they witnessed earlier. The man had shouted that he loved her. Isn't that a reason to get married? Instantly, Diren freezes. Slowly, she turns to face him. Well, yes. Normally, people ask the person they love to marry them. Simple answer. Straightforward answer. Completely harmless answer. Or at least it should have been. Because the very next thing out of Ceres' mouth sends the entire conversation into even more dangerous territory. Looking directly at her, completely serious, he asks a question so simple yet so impossible that even Diren is caught off guard. What is love? And just like that, the priestess who has somehow survived questions about marriage, money, family, and fighting God now finds herself facing the one question she is not prepared to answer. The moment Ceres asks what love is, Diren completely freezes. Her mouth opens, then closes again. Love is. And that is where the problem begins. She realizes she has absolutely no idea how to explain it. Faith? Devotion? Those topics are easy. She could talk about them all day. But love? Suddenly, our priestess finds herself in trouble. For a moment, she considers admitting she does not know, but her pride refuses to let her. After all, she is the one who taught this puppy how to act like a proper human. How can she possibly tell him she does not know the answer? Trying to stay calm, she remembers how she used to explain it to children. Love is how God feels about you. Warm, gentle, and tender. For a second, she feels relieved. Perfect explanation. Then reality hits. Ceres is not a child, and that explanation only leaves him more confused. Warm, gentle, tender? Then the man who proposed earlier said he loved that woman. Does that mean love is something you do? Dairen fumbles for an answer and suggests that maybe it is more of a feeling, something that exists in the mind. Unfortunately, that only creates more questions. How do you love? Is there a way to do it? At this point, she finally surrenders. Pride can only take a person so far. Forget it. I don't know. The answer shocks him. You don't know? Why don't you know? Embarrassed, she turns away and starts walking. What do you mean, why? I just never experienced it myself. Yet Ceres keeps following right behind her, asking why she hasn't. Dairen becomes even more frustrated. It is not something you can simply choose. But of course, this man immediately responds with that battlefield mindset again. There is nothing you can't do if you try. Hearing that, she shoots back with the perfect counterargument. If that were true, then explain why the man earlier got rejected. Love cannot be forced. It just happens. Your heart beats faster when you are excited, but you do not order it to beat faster. Love works the same way. It arrives before you even realize it. Finally, something clicks inside Ceres' head. Love is like an abnormal state. Abnormal states have symptoms. Your heart races when you are excited. Honestly, it is a strange explanation, but Dairen has to admit it is not completely wrong. She adds that people might blush, their hearts might race, and they might want to stay with that person all the time. Suddenly, that person starts looking like the most beautiful person in the world. Those are not her own experiences, of course. They are things she has heard countless people confess at the temple over the years. Then, as if the world itself decides to make things awkward, silence falls between them. Fireworks begin lighting up the night sky. Dairen looks at Ceres. Ceres looks at Dairen. And then comes the question she absolutely does not want to hear. Do I love you, Dairen? She immediately laughs it off and brushes it aside. Love my foot. Just don't cringe at yourself for saying things like that when you become a noble lord someday. But Ceres simply keeps staring at her. Meanwhile, Dairen cannot ignore the truth. His eyes always follow her. He smiles whenever she smiles, even when he does not understand why. Yet she keeps telling herself it is temporary. It has to be temporary. That is what she believes. However, before either of them can think any further, everything changes. As they continue walking together, Ceres suddenly notices something. His expression changes instantly. The smell of blood. Dairen barely has time to react before a massive explosion tears through the air. Boom! The blast sends both of them diving aside. Thrown to the ground by the force, Dairen quickly turns around in shock. What was that? Her heart sinks immediately. The only building in that direction is the manor where they live. Then, they look toward the distant forest. And there, burning against the night sky, they see fire. Just moments ago, they were struggling through an awkward conversation about love. Now, without warning, something far more dangerous has begun. The moment they spot the fire in the distance, the mood changes completely. There is no room left for questions about love or marriage. Ceres immediately grabs Dairen and helps her up, his eyes fixed on the direction of the blast. Armed people are closing in. I am counting how many there are. Hearing that, Dairen's heart drops. What about the people at the manor? What about the guards? The answer comes back cold and direct. They are likely all dead. Worse still, the enemies are moving fast. Realizing the danger, Dairen immediately decides their priority is survival. They need to run toward downtown and avoid fighting head-on as much as possible. Without wasting another second, the two of them take off. Ceres accepts the order at once. Retreat is the priority. Understood. As they race through the darkness, Dairen's thoughts begin spinning. This is not some random fire. Nothing inside the manor could have caused an explosion that huge. If they had stayed behind instead of going to the festival, they would have been caught in it. Even more frightening, the blast happened at the same time as the birthday fireworks. No one in downtown would have noticed the difference. This was planned. Every detail, every second. A carefully prepared ambush with evil intentions behind it. For a moment, she thinks about everyone who came with them on vacation. Are they safe? But the thought quickly dies. Even if they survived, she cannot trust any of them. Desperate, she asks if there is somewhere nearby to hide. Unfortunately, the answer is no. The area is too open. There is almost no chance of hiding, and the enemies are closing in much faster than expected. At that point, Ceres reaches a conclusion he clearly does not want to reach. It looks like he will have to fight. Still, they keep running. Hearing movement behind them, Ceres decides they should cut through the bushes to stay out of sight. Dairen agrees, and they disappear deeper into the forest. Unfortunately, the enemy is already searching. Nearby, masked men riding in a carriage sweep through the area. One of them notices something on the ground. The shopping bags. The lip balm. Everything Dairen and Ceres bought during their happy day together. Instantly, the man realizes people were here. They cannot let them escape. Search everywhere. They could not have gone far. Moments later, a swarm of bandits pours out and begins hunting them down. Meanwhile, Dairen and Ceres push forward through the forest, but before long, someone spots them. There they are! Her heart skips a beat. They found us sooner than I expected. Suddenly, swords start flying. The attackers strike from behind, and one blade slices across the side of her face. Another lands ahead, blocking her path. She stumbles, trips, and falls. Before disaster can strike, Ceres scoops her up and keeps running. More swords come flying. One of them hits him from behind, yet he refuses to stop. Diren desperately tells him to put her down. He cannot fight while carrying her. They will not kill a priestess like her. He should just run. But this stubborn man ignores every word. Then one of the attackers notices something strange. Wait, these are not witnesses. They are the targets. Why are they still alive? Before the realization can spread, Diren suddenly unleashes a fiery spell. Flames erupt and engulf the two men chasing them, shocking even Ceres. Seeing that she can still fight, she finally convinces him. If he insists on protecting her, then at least put her down and fight properly. She will take care of herself. This time he agrees. He sets her down and prepares to face the enemy. And as the battle becomes unavoidable, Diren gives him one final promise. She will heal him if he gets hurt, but there is one thing he absolutely cannot do. He cannot die. Ceres looks at Diren with complete confidence and gives the simplest answer possible. He will not die. No problem. Then, before anyone can react, he charges straight at the bandits. The distance vanishes in an instant. He crashes into one of them and immediately gets stabbed, but that does not stop him. As another attack comes down, he catches the sword with his bare hand and blocks it. The bandit tries to pull away, but it is already too late. Ceres grabs him by the neck and slams him into the ground. The enemy instantly realizes what kind of monster they are facing. One of them shouts a warning to the others. He used to be in the 8th Battalion. Don't let your guard down. Coordinate your attacks. Suddenly, the bandits begin attacking together from all sides. Meanwhile, Diren watches the battle unfold with growing panic. Ceres is overwhelming them with pure combat strength, but there are simply too many enemies. The 8th Battalion fought on the front lines, so he is probably not used to protecting someone while fighting. She wants to help more, wants to throw fireballs endlessly until every enemy is gone, but she knows her limits. If she exhausts herself and passes out here, they are finished. Worse still, she may need her strength later to heal him. More enemies continue pouring in. More wounds keep appearing on Ceres. At this point, Diren realizes the truth. This plan is not going to work. If they stay like this, they will both be trapped. So she makes a painful decision. She will lure some of them away. Maybe it works, maybe it does not. But even if she fails, she believes Ceres will at least have a chance to escape. The moment she runs, the bandits notice. The priestess is running away. Split up and chase her. Suddenly, they are all racing down the slope after her. She is heading for the village. Hurry and catch her! Swords begin flying through the air as Diren runs for her life. In her mind, she cannot help but think how ridiculous this is. She survived countless times on battlefields simply by running away at the right moment. So why are these people so fast? Just how skilled are these assassins? Did they kill the other members of the 8th Battalion and the priests the same way? These are not random attackers. They are hunting down everyone connected to the 8th Battalion. But Diren refuses to give up. Her life is too precious to end here. She immediately fires blazing fireballs at two of her pursuers. One assassin becomes furious. He hurls his weapon and screams for her to die. The throw misses its target, but the blade still cuts into her leg. Pain explodes through her body. She loses her footing and tumbles down the slope. Back at the fight, Ceres hears her cry and instantly shouts her name. Helpless on the ground, Diren can only think one thing. Why are you calling me, you fool? You should be running away and saving yourself. But fate has other plans. Later, when she finally regains consciousness, the first thing she realizes is that she is no longer alone. Instead of being abandoned, she finds herself wrapped safely in Ceres' embrace. Confused and disoriented, she can only stare. Because somehow, despite everything that happened, he came back for her. When Diren finally wakes up, the first thing she notices nearly short-circuits her brain. Ceres is shirtless. Her eyes immediately lock onto his bare chest, and before she can stop herself, she even touches his abs. Then a horrifying realization hits her. Wait a second. Her chest is uncovered too. Instantly, she shoots upright and demands to know what happened to his clothes. The answer is simple. They got torn. Fine. But what about her clothes? Those got damaged too. At that moment, our girl is already fuming inside. Must be nice being so completely thoughtless. Still, she pushes the embarrassment aside and tells him she is fine now, so he can let go. Unfortunately, Ceres refuses. No. Just like that. No explanation, no hesitation. When she demands an answer, he calmly reveals that the weapon which struck her had poison on it, and he removed it. Poison? Suddenly, everything starts making sense. The dizziness. The burning feeling. The pain. He explains that he has been holding her to stop the bleeding, and only then does she realize his hand is firmly pressed against her waist. Her head spins. It is hot. It hurts. Yet despite everything, the first thing she asks is whether he is okay. After all, they survived an explosion, a chase, and a battle. It felt like a nightmare straight out of a battlefield. To her surprise, Ceres admits he is not okay at all. He was scared. When the attack happened, he could not focus on the explosion or the blood. All he could see was Diren. Then she disappeared. Hearing her scream brought back memories of battlefields, gunpowder, death, and all the horrors he knows far better than comfort or peace. And after all of that, he was terrified. For a moment, Diarin can only sniffle and apologize, even though she is not entirely sure what she is apologizing for. Somehow, it just feels right. A little later, she finally asks the important questions. Where are they? How much time has passed? Ceres explains that they are hiding in an empty house nearby, and that 4, maybe 5 hours have gone by. When she asks about the attackers, he reveals that they retreated after he killed several of them. Apparently, they decided the fight was no longer worth it. For now, there is no sign of them. The news brings some relief, but only for a second. Diarin knows better than to relax. If those people return with reinforcements, they are finished. Groaning through the pain, she forces herself to stand. Her body is exhausted, her leg is injured, and she has barely survived the night, but she still pulls herself together as if preparing for another battle. Ceres watches her and asks the obvious question. Where are they going now? The problem is that Diarin does not have an answer. After everything they have been through, after the ambush, the poison, the chase, and the fight, all she can do is look ahead and admit the truth. She has no idea where to go next. As the danger settles in around them, Diarin's mind refuses to rest. No matter where they go, nowhere feels truly safe. The temple, the Third Imperial Prince, Robin's, even the mysterious people above him, every path seems dangerous. The temple always acts in its own interest. They supported them before because it benefited them, but if a better offer appeared tomorrow, they could easily switch sides. Because of that, Diarin knows she cannot blindly trust anyone. The Third Imperial Prince seems like the safest option for now. After all, they already showed favor by giving them a huge amount of money. People with that kind of power are not easily tempted by small gains. But there is one major problem. How are they supposed to reach someone inside the Imperial Palace while injured and on the run? Robin's is much easier to approach. Over time, they have become familiar with him, and he never seemed completely heartless. Still, orders come before feelings. If they run to him without understanding the situation, they might be walking straight into a trap. Just then, Ceres calls her name, snapping her out of her thoughts. Embarrassed, she quickly apologizes and admits she was distracted. Without hesitation, Ceres announces that he will carry her on his back. When she points out that he is injured too, he casually admits that he is in pain. Even so, he is determined. Unable to ignore his wounds, Diarin uses what little strength she has left to heal him. The injury is not fatal, and she knows she cannot properly heal him in her current condition, but it still upsets her. The war is already over. Why can they not leave him alone? Why must he continue suffering? Soon, Ceres gives her a piggyback ride, and together they leave the abandoned house behind. Their goal is simple: reach safety before sunrise. Once daylight comes, everything will become even more dangerous. However, as they move through the darkness, Ceres suddenly freezes. Someone is approaching. Instantly, Diarin becomes alert. She tells him to put her down so she can hide behind the house. Then she listens carefully. Hooves. Her heart nearly stops. Is it a cleanup team? Did the attackers return with reinforcements already? The tension rises with every passing second. Then, unexpectedly, a voice echoes through the area. Priestess, can you hear us? Priestess Diarin. The call catches her completely off guard. The voice continues, desperately asking for a response. Meanwhile, Ceres has already entered battle mode. He prepares to attack, but Diarin quickly stops him and warns him not to kill them. Unfortunately, that warning arrives a little too late. The moment Ceres hears movement, he launches forward like a weapon unleashed. The approaching group barely has time to react. One of them suddenly notices someone rushing toward them and tries to speak, but shock instantly takes over. The man staring back at Ceres is none other than Robin's. Before he can process what is happening, Ceres' powerful strike lands, turning what should have been a rescue into absolute chaos. After taking a hit from Ceres, Robin finally gets a good look at the two of them and immediately lets out a relieved smile. Honestly, he looks more thankful to be alive than anything else. With a huge bump on his head, he jokes that he is glad his skull did not crack open. Then he admits he does not even want to imagine what would have happened if Diarin had not stopped Ceres before things got worse. Watching him stand there with that ridiculous bump somehow makes Diarin less suspicious. In fact, it lowers her guard enough that she walks over and heals the injury herself. A bump like that is no big deal for a priestess anyway. As the swelling disappears, Robin thanks her and quickly returns to his usual self. Seeing that familiar attitude, Diarin finally starts to relax. Maybe he really is not here to kill them after all. Then a troubling thought crosses her mind. If their manor was attacked, what about the others? The moment she asks, Robin's expression turns serious. Yes, it happened to the others too. Yesterday was likely the day everything went wrong. Every manor housing former members of the 8th Battalion was blown up at the same time. That revelation hits Diarin like a hammer. Robin explains that the festival fireworks delayed the reports, and by the time he reached their manor, it had already been reduced to ruins. For now, all that matters is that they survived. He urges them to find somewhere safe immediately. Hearing all this, Diarin studies him carefully. He came alone, and nothing about him feels threatening. Little by little, her doubts begin to fade. However, before she can fully relax, Robin reveals that he did not actually come alone. Reinforcements are on the way. Right on cue, 2 riders arrive. One of them calls out to his chief, and Robin casually points them out. The guards are visibly relieved to see Diren alive and immediately ask if she is all right. That is when our girl suddenly remembers the state she is currently in. Embarrassed, she quickly insists that she is fine. Meanwhile, Robin handles the situation in the most unexpected way possible. He orders the guards to hand over their horses. Then, without missing a beat, he demands their shirts too. The poor men do not even question it. They immediately obey. Moments later, Robin gathers the shirts and hands them to Diren so she can properly cover herself. Grateful for the help, she accepts them, though she cannot help thinking how strange it is that she has now witnessed 2 separate shirt removal scenes involving men she barely knows. Maybe this is what authority looks like. Either way, she is thankful. Soon, Robin helps her onto one of the horses. As preparations to leave begin, she finally asks the question that matters most. Where exactly are they going? Robin answers without hesitation. To a safe place, a place protected by the Empire itself. And with that, the group prepares to move, carrying their wounds, their questions, and the growing mystery behind the attack that nearly wiped them all out. Just when things seem to settle down, Robin climbs onto the same horse as Diren and playfully asks her to guess where they are heading. Unfortunately for him, there is one major problem. Ceres is watching. And this man does not care in the slightest about destinations right now. Before anyone can react, he sends Robin flying off the horse. Poor Robin crashes to the ground while Diren stares in shock. A moment later, the noble jumps back up, furious and demanding to know what Ceres thinks he is doing. Thankfully, one of the guards quickly grabs him and reminds him to calm down. Meanwhile, Ceres is still openly unhappy. He does not like it one bit. That is when Diren suddenly remembers something important. Her puppy gets jealous ridiculously fast. Trying not to laugh too much, she quickly suggests that she ride with Ceres instead. The moment she says it, the growling stops. Ceres immediately gets onto the horse like an obedient child who just got exactly what he wanted. Robin, meanwhile, is left silently regretting his life choices. After everything that happened, provoking an injured former member of the 8th Battalion is probably not the smartest idea. With no other choice, he climbs onto his own horse and leads the group forward. As they travel, Diren's suspicions begin creeping back. What if this is all a trap? What if Robin is taking them somewhere secluded to finish the job? However, those worries slowly disappear as they pass through the capital's richest district, filled with luxurious estates, before finally arriving at the Imperial Palace itself. At that point, even Diren has to admit this does not look like an execution site. Soon afterward, both she and Ceres are given fresh clothes, treated for their injuries, and allowed to bathe. After everything they have endured, the comfort almost feels unreal. Sitting alone in her room, Diren lets out a long sigh of relief. The warm bath, clean clothes, and careful treatment make her feel human again. For the first time since the attack, she can breathe. She decides to bury that embarrassing ordeal in the past and move on. Unfortunately, fate has other plans. A knock interrupts her thoughts. It is Robin. From behind the door, he asks whether the dress fits properly. She thanks him, and he mentions that it should be easier to talk face-to-face now. Instantly, Diren feels annoyed. Honestly, she would feel much more comfortable if he stopped reminding her about everything that happened earlier. Still, he did save them, so she decides to let it slide this once and invites him inside. Robin enters politely and explains that dinner is being prepared. In the meantime, refreshments will be brought in. He even asks whether there is anything she refuses to eat. Grateful for the hospitality, she tells him she will happily accept whatever is offered. Before long, the two sit across from each other with snacks laid out on the table. Notably, Ceres is nowhere to be seen. Then Robin calmly drops a surprising statement. This room will be hers from now on, Priestess Diren. Hearing that, she naturally wonders if the other servants will be staying here as well. But instead of answering directly, Robin looks at her and asks a question of his own. Would you like to know? And just like that, Diren is left completely puzzled, with the conversation suddenly taking a turn she did not expect. Lord Robin and Diren sit across from each other as the conversation finally turns to the people who used to work at the manor. For a moment, Robin hesitates. Then he lets out a sigh and delivers a statement that immediately makes the atmosphere heavier. There is no need to be curious about them anymore. There is no need to worry about them. Hearing that, Diren quickly asks the question already forming in her mind. Did they turn out to be spies? The answer that follows is not comforting at all. They were never proven innocent either. And just like that, our girl is left speechless. Trying to make sense of everything, she asks about the other manors. The response is even worse. The workers are gone, the manors have exploded, and no one except the members of the 8th Battalion and the priests were harmed. That detail hits hard. Back at their own manor, only she and Ceres had been staying there. The explosion happened during the festival while fireworks filled the sky. At first, it could have sounded like a terrible coincidence. But now, it is becoming harder and harder to believe that. Diren asks whether Robin is saying all the workers were involved. Not all of them, he explains, but whoever planned this likely sent the workers away beforehand to avoid unnecessary casualties. Suddenly, the betrayal feels even heavier. Diren lowers her head. Looking back now, she wishes she had noticed something was wrong from the beginning. Instead, she let her guard down. Seeing her reaction, Robin apologizes. He explains that he investigated the workers carefully before hiring them, but he could not stop someone from bribing them afterward. More than anything, he is simply grateful that she survived. He even bows his head. But then, in classic Dairin fashion, she completely changes the mood. Looking at him, she bluntly points out that gratitude should not be shown with words alone. The poor man is visibly confused for a second before asking what she means. Realizing how that sounded, Dairin pushes forward anyway. She cannot just sit around waiting to die. She needs clothes, food, and a place to sleep. Slamming her hand on the table, she declares that the process matters too. Honestly, priorities first. Thankfully, Robin immediately assures her that much more support has already been prepared and that she will receive far greater help moving forward. Only then does she calm down and sit back down. Yet the real problem still remains. Ceres is now the last surviving member of the 8th Battalion. Whoever orchestrated these attacks will focus on him more than ever. Even worse, she and Ceres are now staying inside the Imperial Palace itself, a place that is supposed to be safe, yet somehow feels more dangerous than ever. When she wonders whether anyone here can truly be trusted, Robin does not sugarcoat the answer. Just like she suspects, nobody should be trusted completely, especially inside the Imperial Palace. Hearing that only makes the weight on her shoulders feel heavier. Dairin is not some master schemer. She is a common priest who happened to survive a battlefield and temple politics. Now she is being thrown into a nest full of people who have spent their entire lives playing dangerous games. Out on a battlefield, Ceres can spot assassins, hear enemies approaching, and sense danger before it arrives. But inside the palace, the deadliest threats are often invisible. Poisoned words, hidden motives, secret plots. Those are enemies his sword cannot cut down. And as that realization settles in, Dairin can already feel the pressure closing in around her. For the first time since arriving at the palace, she finds it hard to breathe. Dairin stares straight at Lord Robin, then suddenly grabs her cup of tea and downs the entire thing in one gulp. The sight is so unexpected that Robin immediately calls out to her in shock. But instead of answering normally, our girl gets straight to the important question. How will the protection fees be adjusted? Honestly, priorities. Robin claps his hands as if he finally understands what matters here. 3 times the usual amount? 4 times? No, 5 times. Forget it, make it 5. The moment those words leave his mouth, the tension melts away. Dairin's fierce glare instantly turns into a smile so fast it is almost frightening. May God be with you. Deep inside, she has already made up her mind. If nobody can be trusted, then she will buy safety with money. In this cruel world, money is the one thing people always value. She feels sorry for the priests and members of the 8th Battalion who lost their lives, but right now survival comes first. Bowing politely, she promises to do her best. Robin quickly replies that he should be the one saying that. However, the conversation soon shifts to a more worrying topic. What about Ceres? Dairin glances toward the door. She honestly does not know. He seemed perfectly fine until they entered the Imperial Palace. Then everything changed. He almost collapsed as soon as they arrived. Yes, he was exhausted, but he also made strange sounds while in her arms. The more she thinks about it, the more concerned she becomes. Something seems wrong with his mind. They might have to start all over again. Both of them let out a tired sigh. What a miserable situation. Trying to move forward, Dairin asks whether they will be staying in the Imperial Palace permanently. Robin confirms it. Charlotte instructed him to bring them here after hearing what happened. They are staying in the nobles' quarters attached to the 3rd Prince's palace, and as long as she remains in her room, she will not run into any nobles. Then comes another surprise. Normally, people have to pay for accommodation inside the palace. Dairin nearly jumps out of her seat. It costs money? Robin calmly explains that residents must provide gifts to the owner, pay for food, and even cover workers' salaries. Living inside the palace costs a fortune, but the prestige makes it worthwhile. As the explanation continues, Dairin slowly realizes just how different this world of power is. Entry alone requires permission from the imperial family. It is basically a giant display of status and connections. Only distinguished households can stay in the emperor's palace. The real political battles happen around the 2nd Prince's and 3rd Prince's palaces, because those places can still be reached if someone tries hard enough. Hearing all of this only makes her more uncomfortable. This really is the center of power. Curious, she asks about the 1st Prince's palace. Robin reveals that it was shut down by the emperor's orders. For a moment, Dairin actually thinks an empty palace sounds like a peaceful place to stay. Unfortunately, nobody is allowed inside. Just as Robin is about to continue talking about Ceres and how he hopefully will not cause any trouble for now, a loud groan suddenly echoes through the room. Instantly, both of them jump to their feet. The door opens. Ceres steps inside with his eyes flashing, and the moment Dairin sees him, she calls his name with a teasing look, while the atmosphere in the room changes all over again. The moment Lord Robin and Priestess Dairin see Ceres awake, both of them jump to their feet. Dairin immediately rushes to him, worried. Is he sick? Is something wrong? But before anyone can figure out what is happening, Ceres locks his eyes on her and launches himself forward. The next thing they know, both of them crash onto the sofa together. Robin can only stand there in stunned silence as Dairin quickly checks on him. Thankfully, she is fine. Meanwhile, Ceres refuses to let go. He clings to her tightly and keeps repeating her name over and over again. Darren, Darren, Darren. Thankfully, our girl knows exactly how to handle this oversized puppy. She gently reassures him that she is right there and that everything is okay now, safe at last. As she holds him, she notices he is already soaked with sweat even though he just changed clothes. That only makes her comfort him more, telling him what a good boy he is and asking if he was scared. From Robin's point of view, however, the scene is completely ridiculous. All he sees is a giant human-sized dog lying on top of Darren while she pets him and tells him everything is fine. Honestly, what part of this situation looks fine? Meanwhile, Darren keeps praising him and hugging him like he just survived the end of the world. After a long cuddle session, the two finally sit up properly, although Darren is left completely sweaty from the experience. However, the conversation quickly turns serious again. Darren suddenly asks if she can secretly move into the abandoned First Prince's palace. For a brief moment, Robin almost sounds tempted, but immediately shuts the idea down. How would they even survive there? Darren confidently replies that Ceres can probably hunt food for them. At this point, Robin cannot help pointing out that she is starting to sound like someone from the 8th Battalion. Unfortunately, the First Prince's palace is completely off-limits. The Emperor personally ordered it closed, and anyone caught staying there could be hanged for disobeying an imperial command. Realizing she has no choice, Darren admits defeat but still worries that the Imperial Palace may be the most dangerous place possible for Ceres. She asks whether they can stay somewhere outside instead, only to learn that bringing them here was Lady Charlotte's direct order, and it was also what the Third Prince wanted. That answer immediately raises a much bigger question. If the Third Prince wants to protect them, then who sent assassins to wipe out the members of the 8th Battalion? Robin responds as if the answer should be obvious. Unfortunately for him, Darren is not interested in guessing games. She needs to know whether the order came from the Emperor or the Second Prince, because her survival depends on it. Robin starts avoiding the question, tapping his foot and refusing to answer directly. Darren grows frustrated and demands that he stop stalling. After all, she could end up dead either way. Finally, Robin admits he is only a noble who happened to become chief of staff because he was smart and ambitious. If the wrong people discover he revealed too much, he could be killed as well. He practically begs her to understand the hint without forcing him to say it outright. When she asks whether the general is really the one in charge, he reluctantly confirms it. Darren immediately connects the dots. The general serves the Second Prince. The moment she says it aloud, Robin releases a huge sigh of relief. Exactly. That is the problem. Somehow, he ended up stuck between powerful people, responsible for protecting them while answering to someone else's faction. And honestly, even he no longer understands how his life became this complicated. The moment Darren points it out, Robin's eyes widen. She has already figured him out. He serves the Third Prince, but at the same time, he is trying not to make the Second Prince his enemy. That is why he keeps avoiding dangerous answers and risky decisions. Honestly, our girl sees straight through him. Robin immediately starts sweating, while Darren calmly explains that she understands. He was only trying to climb the social ladder like everyone else, but now everything has become a disaster. She even admits she knows exactly what that feels like. Then she invites him to sit down and talk properly because, from her perspective, they seem to be stuck in the same sinking boat. That completely breaks his resistance. He slumps onto the sofa, laughs awkwardly, and thanks her. However, the moment she asks what kind of person the Second Prince is, things take a hilarious turn. Robin struggles to find polite words, scratches his head, and then blurts out the first thing that comes to mind. In short, the Second Prince is a total asshole. The second those words leave his mouth, panic takes over. Meanwhile, Darren casually accepts the answer as if she just received an official report. She even points out that he is going to be in serious trouble if the prince ever hears about this. Since he has already revealed so much, he might as well reveal everything. At this point, Robin realizes he may have ruined his own life. Since there is no going back, he starts talking. According to him, the palace is full of ears. Gossip spreads faster than fire, and most people survive by pretending they hear nothing. Unfortunately, one person cannot afford to ignore these things. The Second Prince. While soldiers were risking their lives on battlefields, he was safely camped somewhere else. Then, after victory was already secured, he would suddenly appear, dramatically shout charge, and take all the credit. Darren even recalls hearing that he slapped King Sorbin after forcing him to kneel. So, in her eyes, he showed up for the glory while everyone else did the hard work. Robin agrees completely. Power, image, and recognition are all that matter to him. Meanwhile, the Emperor keeps delaying the appointment of the Crown Prince, and nobody knows why. The uncertainty is driving the Second Prince and his supporters crazy. To make matters worse, the Third Prince has become a serious rival thanks to Lady Charlotte. Desperate people make dangerous moves, and according to Robin, the 8th Battalion itself is proof of that. That single statement changes the entire atmosphere. Darren freezes instantly and pulls Ceres closer. Even Ceres looks shocked. What does the formation of the 8th Battalion have to do with any of this? Unfortunately, Robin has already opened the floodgates. He reveals that the 8th Battalion was formed by the Second Prince. Darren practically short-circuits on the spot. She refuses to believe what she is hearing and starts rejecting the information outright. But Robin keeps going. Duke Jern, a member of the Empress's family and an ally of the Second Prince, helped create it. Archpriest Marion also played a role. At this point, Diren desperately covers her ears and begs him to stop. She does not want to know anymore. Unfortunately, Robin seems to be having the time of his life now. The more she tries to block it out, the louder he gets. He even jokes that he wishes he knew more secrets so he could tell her those too. Then comes the final blow. Laughing through his own misery, he admits that maybe they are not in the same situation after all. If he goes down, she is coming down with him. Somehow, knowing she is trapped in this mess too makes him feel a little better. Meanwhile, Diren is on the verge of tears. She only wanted to survive. That was all. Yet somehow, she has walked straight into the heart of palace politics and buried herself alive with information she never wanted to hear. Just a few hours ago, she was hopeful about living safely inside the Imperial Palace. Now she feels like she has stepped directly into hell and personally dug her own grave. While she sits there crying with her hands over her ears, Ceres quietly moves closer and tries to comfort her, the only person in the room who still seems completely focused on her, rather than the nightmare unfolding around them. Night falls and Diren sleeps off in Ceres' embrace on the bed. That night, Diren is lying in bed, shivering from a fever. Honestly, after everything she has been through, she is surprised it took this long to happen. Maybe nerves were the only thing keeping her standing. Unfortunately, being sick gives her way too much time to think, and her mind drifts back to Lord Robin's warning. He had told her the truth about the Imperial Palace and warned her not to trust the smiling faces she would meet there. But what can someone like her even do? If powerful people decide her fate, does she really have a choice? Even back then, Ceres had dropped his head onto her lap, completely confused by the heavy conversation. Looking back now, she almost envies him. At least he does not understand how frightening everything is. For a moment, she even wonders if she should run away. Maybe Ceres would never become a noble lord, but at least he would stay alive. Then she immediately dismisses the thought. She would never leave him behind. Meanwhile, her fever keeps getting worse, and as if things are not already bad enough, an old childhood memory suddenly returns. Back then, when she was sick, her mother apologized for not being able to buy medicine because her brother needed clothes. She was simply expected to endure it and get better on her own. Remembering that while lying alone in a strange palace hurts even more. The maids all seem cold and distant, and she doubts anyone would help her even if she asked. At this point, she can only laugh bitterly. Maybe this is just her fate. Maybe she is destined to live like this forever. Just then, footsteps approach. Thankfully, it is Ceres. He hates seeing her sick and, in his usual simple way, decides the solution is obvious. If she does not want to be sick, then she should simply stop being sick. When she points out that it does not exactly work like that, he confidently claims that he knows what to do. His hand feels cool against her burning forehead, and before she can react, he climbs into her bed. According to him, his lower body temperature will help. Diren is far too exhausted to argue. Then things become strangely comforting. He hugs her close, pats her the same way she used to comfort him, and even asks if she is scared. For someone who barely understands the world, he somehow makes her feel safer. It reminds her of a painful lesson from her past. As a priestess, she had once been scolded for getting sick, as if illness itself were a sin. Since then, she convinced herself it was better to suffer alone. Yet now, wrapped in Ceres' arms, she quietly admits that this feels nice. To her surprise, he agrees. For a little while, she lets herself stay there. However, peace never lasts long. Thanks to his unbelievably sharp hearing, Ceres starts listening to conversations happening elsewhere in the palace. What begins as harmless gossip quickly turns into something much worse. A group of adults is discussing a black-haired newcomer and making very questionable comments about him. The moment the conversation turns openly suggestive, Diren panics and desperately tries to stop him from listening. Unfortunately, Ceres only grows more curious and starts asking innocent questions about what those strange phrases mean. Diren immediately shuts that down. Absolutely not. Not today. Not ever if she can help it. As she struggles to protect him from information he definitely does not need, one thing becomes painfully clear. The Imperial Palace is terrifying in more ways than she ever imagined, and now, on top of everything else, she is somehow being forced to handle Ceres' sex education. Honestly, she just wants to cry. If you're enjoying this so far, please comment Ceres below for the next part. Until next time, ciao.